Chapter 1479. To chase or not to chase. Even the true spirit Laozu was an existence that this world was jealous of. At this moment, Yuanjiu Laozu was very afraid of this taboo that originated from the Crystal Palace. With this hesitation, Lu Ping had gone further into the sky of Poison Wall. Yuanjiu Laozu suddenly felt a sense of pride. This momentum even made Yuanjiu Laozu's face turn red as if he had drunk too much wine. His red nose turned red in an instant. The old man wanted to chase. If he couldn't even deal with such a junior, how could the old man have the face to be the master of the Crystal Palace in the future? Although the sky of Poison Wall was extremely dangerous, the old man only needed to kill him before he alerted the mysterious existence. Many cultivators of the Crystal Palace had entered and exited the sky of Poison Wall. As long as the old man didn't deliberately target the mysterious existence, he might not be targeted. Yuanjiu Laozu suspended the crystal tower that was temporarily trapped by Lu Ping above his head again. The crystal light curtain hung down and covered him. Yuanjiu Laozu resolutely stepped into the sky of Poison Wall that was closing after Lu Ping opened it. It wasn't the time for the poisonous mist to weaken. In fact, Lu Ping could feel that the poisonous mist in the Fallen Mountain secret ground was as strong as the poisonous mist in the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven's Golden Fallen Canyon. However, the poisonous mist still couldn't cause any harm to the two great presences. Lu Ping had the 10,000 poison source liquid, the 10,000 poison meteorite wind gang, the black prism poisonous fire, and a lot of 10,000 wonder dew. Usually, only one of these treasures could make a person immune to all poisons, let alone Lu Ping. Although the corrosive effect of the poisonous fog could still affect the light curtain hanging down by Yuanjiu Laozu, with the toughness of the light curtain and the cultivation of Yuanjiu Laozu, the poisonous fog's damage to the crystal light curtain was like scratching an itch. Lu Ping naturally knew that Yuanjiu Laozu had caught up with him. In fact, the moment he entered the sky of Poison Wall, he had scanned the fallen secret land with his divine thought. There was only one message hidden in it: I'm coming. Although Lu Ping was eager to fight with the true spirit and did not lack the courage to fight with it, this did not mean that Lu Ping ignored the strength gap between them. Since Lu Ping rushed to the fallen secret land to keep the appointment, he naturally wanted to use the power of Longhua Ancestor to fight against Yuanjiu Laozu behind him. Although Lu Ping did not know what level of strength Longhua Ancestor had reached, the fact that Lu Ping still could not detect its depth showed that Longhua Ancestor's strength was unfathomable. According to the conversation between Longhua Ancestor and Lu Ping, Longhua Ancestor's roots covered the entire fallen secret land. The moment Lu Ping entered the sky of Poison Wall, Longhua Ancestor should have known. However, until now, when Lu Ping tried to send a message with his divine thought, he did not get a response from Longhua Ancestor. Since there was no response, it should be that Longhua Ancestor did not want to respond. Could it be because of Yuanjiu Laozu behind him? A true spirit cultivator might really be able to make Longhua Ancestor afraid, so it was normal for Longhua Ancestor to not respond because he was afraid of getting into trouble. Lu Ping naturally did not know what happened to the Crystal Palace in the fallen secret land 8,000 years ago. Since he could not borrow the power of Longhua Ancestor, Lu Ping could only rely on his own strength to fight against the true spirit cultivator behind him. However, just as Lu Ping turned around, just as Yuanjiu Ancestor was about to enter the heavenly poison wall, a loud bang and a roar came from the void outside the heavenly poison wall almost at the same time. Lu Ping's heavenly poison wall was about to close up. Suddenly, a loud bang and a roar came from outside the heavenly poison wall. The surging spiritual chi was like a violent storm, and the fallen secret land was suddenly stirred up. The huge change in the weather almost affected the entire fallen secret land when the loud sound was heard. At this time, the great adepts of the various sects who were chatting happily in the Phantom Palace were suddenly shocked by the strong spiritual chi storm. All the Dharma adepts in the entire Phantom Palace fell silent for a moment. Among the Dharma adepts of the various sects in the Phantom Palace, there were many who had seen battles between pure young adepts. However, to be able to cause such a huge change in the weather and stir up the entire fallen secret land, the scale of this battle seemed to have far exceeded their impression of the power of pure young adepts. Jiang Tianlin and the great adepts of Skyrend, Sangyu Laozu and Gu Jinfei, looked at each other discreetly. They could see the deep worry in each other's eyes. Everyone knew that this time the focus of the various sects was on the three sects, the Crystal Palace, Skyrend, and the Zhenling. Everyone also knew that Xiao Baiyu and Lu Tianping were rare geniuses in this world. Even so, it was unlikely that the two of them would cause such a huge commotion, right? For a moment, the astute adepts in the Phantom Palace all looked in shock at the great adept of the Crystal Palace, Yuanfeng Laozu, who was sitting at the head of the Phantom Palace with a smile on his face. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Yuanfeng Laozu smiled reservedly. A piece of news that shocked the entire East Sea came out of his mouth. Haha, our sect has specially sent Old Man here to invite our friends from all sections. Our sect's brother Yuanjiu has successfully become a true soul cultivator a few days ago and will soon take over the position of our sect's previous guardian, Uncle Laozu Danju, to guard the Crystal Palace. After this Phantom Island conference, our sect will hold a grand inheritance ceremony. We would like to invite all friends to attend the ceremony. Boom. This piece of news instantly swept through the major and minor repairs masters of the Phantom Palace. True Soul Laozu, Danju Laozu, and brother Yuanjiu Laozu. Each of them was a figure who could shake the entire cultivation world with a stomp of their feet in East Sea or even the entire cultivation world, dazzling all the cultivators in the Phantom Palace. Many cultivators cast looks of pity, schadenfreude, worry, joy, and so on at the other two great cultivators of the illusionary spirit palace, but most of them looked at Jiang Tianlin. Yuanfeng Laozu released the news that Yuanjiu Laozu had become a true soul cultivator and that Danju Laozu was about to leave this world. There was no doubt that the trump card that the Crystal Palace had sent to deal with Xiao Baiyu and Lu Tianping was the supreme powerhouse of the Crystal Palace, the genuine True Soul Laozu. In front of the legendary True Soul Laozu, the Sky-Splitting Sword Sage and the North Sea Water Sword Immortal were nothing in front of the True Soul Cultivator. The reason why the people of the Phantom Palace looked at Jiang Tianlin was obvious. Compared to Xiao Baiyu, Lu Tianping's death seemed to be more certain. If Xiao Baiyu, who had accumulated a lot of power in the cultivation world, still had a chance to escape, then Jinling's Lu Tianping seemed to have no hope at all. Taking a step back, even if Skyren lost Xiao Baiyu, there was still a pure Yang cultivator, 8th Sister Zhu, and Skyren's tens of thousands of years of accumulation. Skyren was still an old large sect. But if Jinling lost Lu Tianping, there were countless questions in people's hearts as to whether it could maintain its status as a large sect. Worry flashed across Jiang Tianlin's face, but it could not be hidden from Yuanfeng Laozu, who had been looking at them proudly. However, when Yuanfeng Laozu was about to say something, there was another loud bang that shook the entire Phantom Palace. There was even a faint sword hum in this loud bang. However, when this sword hum sounded out, it instead caused the worry on the face of the Sky-Split Sword Sect's ancestor Blue Feather, Gu Jinfei, to become even heavier. As a sword cultivator as well, Ancestor Blue Feather was able to tell that the sword hum wasn't the sound of battle, but the wail of a sword. Sure enough, after the loud bang, an old voice suddenly resounded throughout the world. What a great sky-splitting sword sage. You can actually withstand the old man's full attack. You really live up to your reputation. However, after the old man broke your natal flying sword, how much strength do you, Xiao Baiyu, have left? The destruction of Xiao Baiyu's natal flying sword made Sangyu Laozu angry. He suddenly stood up and was about to walk out of the Phantom Palace. Yuanfeng Laozu suddenly stood up and blocked his way. He said with a fake smile, "Fellow Sangyu, where are you going?" Sangyu Laozu was instantly furious. Just as he was about to explode, he suddenly heard Xiao Baiyu's weak but clear laughter. Although I am not Senior's opponent, I have forced Senior to use his full strength as a true spirit cultivator. Yihi Tianfa is coming. Does Senior have the confidence to enter the North Ice Field before Tianfa? If you don't have the confidence, you should leave quickly. There's no rush. Old man, I'll kill you first. It won't take long anyway. Yihi, it's too late. What? A cry of surprise rang out, causing the situation in the Phantom Palace to rapidly change. Everyone could tell that the "it's too late" was Xiao Baiyu's voice. Danju Laozu, who was behind him, let out a cry of surprise. This cry of surprise was filled with fear and disbelief. Everyone could tell that the one who was pleased with himself was Xiao Baiyu. But what did Xiao Baiyu do to make a dignified true spirit cultivator lose his composure like this? Could it be that he, who had his natal flying sword broken, still have a way to turn defeat into victory? It had to be known that this was Laozu, who had become a true spirit cultivator several hundred years ago. Everyone looked at Sangyu Laozu once again. They saw Sangyu Laozu looking confused at first, then his eyes lit up as if he had thought of something. He looked at Yuanfeng Laozu, who was blocking in front of him, and gave a strange laugh. Then he turned around and sat down on the seat of honor in the Phantom Palace. Hehe, if it wasn't for Senior's help, this Xiao would need at least 50 years to reach the true spirit realm. Moreover, I don't know how long it would take for me to break through the bottleneck. But now this is all thanks to Senior's help. Although this Xiao has broken the heaven-splitting sword, I have stepped into the true spirit realm. Hee, so this is the feeling of becoming a true spirit cultivator. Even if Senior has the Overlord Hammer, what can you do to this Xiao? Chapter 1480. However, after your origin flying sword was broken by the old man, how much of your strength do you, Xiao Baiyu, have left? Before the myriad poison sky wall closed, Danju Laozu's aged roar just happened to reach the ears of Lu Ping and Yuanjiu Laozu. Following the closing of the protective wall, Lu Ping and Yuanjiu Laozu were separated from the outside world at the same time. Lu Ping's expression was very ugly. Xiao Baiyu's origin flying sword had already been broken by the true spirit cultivator, and without the origin flying sword that was refined from the broken sword Jiao Daoren used to split the sky, how much strength could Xiao Baiyu have left? How could he be a match for Danju Laozu? Even though he had accepted the 9 profound towers' true spirit inheritance, Lu Ping knew that Danju Laozu, as a true spirit Laozu, would only be able to use his full strength once in this world. If he used any more, he might immediately attract the heavenly punishment. However, Lu Ping had no way of determining whether Danju Laozu had used his full strength or not. Furthermore, even if he had used his full strength, the current Xiao Baiyu only had a few levels of strength left. Under a casual attack from Danju Laozu, he would probably be in danger. Xiao Baiyu was in danger, the Longhuai ancestor had not appeared at all, and Yuanjiu Laozu was closing in step by step. Although Lu Ping had never lacked fighting spirit at this moment, his heart could not help but sink. Yuanjiu Laozu laughed and said, "It's your turn this time." In the illusionary spirit palace, Sangyu Laozu laughed and said to Yuan Feng Laozu, "Fellow Yuan Feng, shouldn't we discuss the distribution of spirit stones for this conference?" Yuan Feng Laozu's expression was very ugly. Xiao Baiyu had suddenly become a true spirit at the last moment, and even if Danju Laozu had the Overlord Hammer, he would not be able to kill Xiao Baiyu in a short period of time. Furthermore, Danju Laozu had probably already fled to the northern ice plains to avoid the heavenly punishment. Without Danju Laozu to suppress him, Senior Yuanjiu might not be able to suppress Xiao Baiyu, who had also just become a true spirit. Furthermore, there was the 9 profound towers small thousand world. Damn it, was there really going to be a second sacred land in the East Sea? Thinking of Yuanjiu Laozu, Yuan Feng Laozu seemed to have thought of something. He glanced at Jiang Tianlin and sneered, "Fellow Tsangyu, don't be so anxious. From the old man's point of view, we should wait for news from Jinling's side." Sangyu Laozu looked at Jiang Tianlin thoughtfully. The two sects were originally united against a common enemy, but this time, Sangyu Laozu unexpectedly did not speak up for Jiang Tianlin. Yuan Feng Laozu's lips slightly curled up as he thought to himself, as expected. In the North Sea, Yuan Feifei looked at the slightly dejected old man in front of her and sneered inside. However, she maintained a respectful tone and said, "Junior will remember Senior's words. Junior will report back to the 2 great uncles. I'll have to trouble Senior to take care of them." A sliver of guilt flashed in the old man's eyes. His old voice contained a sliver of exhaustion as he said, "Don't worry. Since the old man has already promised you, he will definitely do it." Yuan Feifei nodded, then suddenly said, "But when the time comes, I'll have to ask Senior to destroy the formation on the island." What? The old man was shocked. He said, "Are you trying to force the old man to fall out with Jinling?" The old man was slightly agitated. His presence surged as he charged towards Yuan Feifei like a tidal wave. He said, "The old man has already agreed to investigate the progress of Jinling's plan for the 7-star Grotto Heaven. Now that you're clearly confident that you can find the 7-star Grotto Heaven before Jinling, why do you have to get the old man to destroy the formation on the island?" Yuan Feifei was like a rock on the shore. She allowed the waves to batter her as she looked at the old man indifferently. A while later, the old man's presence suddenly weakened, but there was still a sliver of anger on his face. He said, "Did fellow Tongtian want the old man to do this?" "The old man wants to see fellow Tongtian." Yuan Feifei smiled reservedly. "Third great uncle is currently working with 7th great uncle to search for the spatial crack to the 7-star Grotto Heaven. He has no time to attend to other matters." Anger finally appeared on the old man's face. He said, "Jinling Lu Tianping has saved my life. The old man's actions today have already brought shame to Lu Xiaoyu. The old man cannot comply with this." Yuan Feifei's expression immediately changed. She sneered, "Senior, you should think this through. Since you've chosen this path, how can it be so easy for you to go back on your word?" The old man said coldly, "Aren't you afraid that the North Sea Water Sword Immortal will take revenge once he finds out what your Yuan clan has done?" "Revenge?" Why would my Yuan clan be afraid of his revenge? Yuan Feifei seemed to have heard the greatest joke. Even if Lu Tianping wants to take revenge, he'll have to be able to escape from the East Sea alive first. Moreover, even if he's lucky enough to escape, whether Jinling still exists in this world is another matter. What awaits Lu Tianping will be an inescapable net set up in the North Sea. The old man said in shock, "What exactly do you want to do? Are you going to wage a sect annihilation war against Jinling just for the 7-star grotto heaven?" Yuan Feifei said coldly, "Senior, don't you think that after the destruction of the 9 mystical tower, there are too many sects in the cultivation world that want to become sacred grounds?" Speaking up to this point, Yuan Feifei's expression more or less carried a hint of inexplicable fanaticism. In the current cultivation world, only my Yuan clan can be mentioned in the same breath as the 6 sacred grounds. However, my Yuan clan has never had an unbroken true spirit inheritance since the beginning of the world. Even as the number 1 clan, the Yuan clan has never had a true spirit disciple. This is not fair. Yuan Feifei turned and left after saying this, leaving the old man hovering in midair. No one knew what he was thinking. After a while, the old man let out a long sigh. Then he turned into a stream of light and disappeared above the sea, leaving behind only the waves and the rustling sea breeze. Just after the two of them left one after another, a gust of sea breeze pushed a wave on the surface of the sea. A spray suddenly escaped from the wave, and then it turned into a human figure in the sea breeze. In the darkness of the night, the face could not be seen clearly. The person stood on the surface of the sea for a while. Under the dim starry sky, it was impossible to see what he was doing. Only a pair of piercingly cold eyes could be seen in the night. After a while, the figure was once again swallowed up by the surging wave. It was as if nothing had happened on the surface of the sea. In the firmament poison wall, Lu Ping held the spiritual treasure in his hands. Although he was cutting it in two, he could not hide the trace of shock on his face. The pure yang scissors, which had always been invincible in Lu Ping's hands, were being held by the Yuanjiu Laozu dozens of feet away. Although Lu Ping's real essence was continuously injected into the pure yang spiritual treasure, he could not cut the scissors in his hands. The mantis, which had always been extremely arrogant when Lu Ping controlled the spiritual treasure to cut it in two, was lying on Lu Ping's shoulder and slowly hiding behind Lu Ping's neck in the face of the Yuanjiu Laozu's strength. Yuanjiu Laozu's face was full of admiration as he said, "I have to say, as a pure yang cultivator, your strength is extremely outstanding. However, the more the old man cannot tolerate you today. I will let you experience the true difference between a pure yang cultivator and a true spirit Laozu before you die." Yuanjiu Laozu spoke casually of victory, but Lu Ping was sufficiently valiant at the moment of life and death. Even before Yuanjiu Laozu, the true spirit sword whistled out and slashed down on Yuanjiu Laozu in the blink of an eye. Yuanjiu Laozu did not care at first, but the moment Lu Ping took out the flying sword, the true spirit sword did not show off its previous sharpness. The dim light even caused Yuanjiu Laozu to lose his vigilance. However, when the true spirit sword suddenly appeared above Yuanjiu Laozu's head, the powerful power that was released in that instant shocked Yuanjiu Laozu. Pure Yang spiritual treasure, heaven-splitting artifact. Yuanjiu Laozu cried out involuntarily. He suddenly pushed his hands outwards, and Lu Ping felt a powerful force suddenly surge out from the spiritual treasure. Even with Lu Ping's current physical strength, he could not control his hands in an instant. The spiritual treasure fell from his hands, and the two indestructible blade lights were immediately annihilated in midair. Yuanjiu Laozu was shocked by the powerful sword energy that the true spirit sword had instantly erupted with. After freeing his hands, he slapped his chest with his left hand. A fiery red gourd rose from the top of Yuanjiu Laozu's head and instantly fell into the 9th floor of the crystal pagoda. A fiery red mist spread out from the crystal pagoda, drowning the powerful sword energy that was descending from the sky. In an instant, Lu Ping felt that the connection between his divine sense and the true spirit sword had suddenly weakened. It was not because there was an obstruction between the two, but because the fiery red mist had weakened the connection between the divine sense and the spiritual treasure. In Lu Ping's divine sense, the fiery red mist was like strong alcohol. When a cultivator's divine sense came into contact with it, it would cause Lu Ping to feel as though his divine sense was drunk. For a moment, Lu Ping felt that his divine sense was out of control. However, his heart was extremely clear. The moment he felt this, the jade green soul fire continued to burn in his divine sense. The invisible red mist that had fused with his divine sense had no choice but to be forced out by the jade green soul fire and condense into a ball again. However, in this short period of time, the power of the true spirit sword had instantly weakened. Yuanjiu Laozu seized this opportunity and used the crystal pagoda to collide with the true spirit sword. A series of trembling sounds could be heard and the true spirit sword had been sent flying dozens of feet away. On the light curtain hanging down from the crystal pagoda, a crack appeared from the top of the pagoda. It could not be mended for a moment. Yuanjiu Laozu's expression changed when he saw the unmended crack on the light curtain of the crystal pagoda. However, he immediately calmed down and said, No, this is not a heaven-splitting artifact. Its power is far from that. However, it is closely related to a heaven-splitting artifact. Yuanjiu Laozu seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly turned around and asked Lu Ping, What is this flying sword made of? Lu Ping had already regained control of the true spirit sword in his hand. Vigorous primary essence was continuously injected into the sword. He sneered and said, Do you think I will tell you? Yuanjiu Laozu sneered and said, Old man is talking too much. When the old man captures you, this flying sword will naturally belong to the old man. Chapter 1481. At the same time that the crystal tower hung down the crystal light curtain, it also emitted a boundless fiery red wine mist. Not only did this mist cover Lu Ping's vision, but it also hindered his divine telekinesis. It even dyed the black poisonous mist in the fallen secret land into a black-red color. Although this fiery red wine mist limited Lu Ping's various means, it was not poisonous. Lu Ping had several means to avoid poison, but in the face of this boundless wine mist, he could only use his powerful divine telekinesis and jade phosphorus soul fire to guard a radius of several hundred feet. At the same time, he used the cloud sail to protect himself from the wine mist. If the distance was any further, Lu Ping seemed to be somewhat powerless in the wine mist. Yuanjiu Laozu sneered and pointed to the crystal tower above his head. From the 8th floor of the tower, a crystal whip flew out, passing through the poisonous mist and falling on top of Lu Ping's head. Although Lu Ping's divine telekinesis was greatly limited, a distance of several hundred feet was enough for Lu Ping to adapt. Moreover, Lu Ping also had the 3 pure true pupils, which had reached the great accomplishment stage. He could see through the mist of several hundred feet. Seeing the crystal whip breaking through the air, the sword of real spirit had already slashed horizontally. The two collided with a loud bang, and an invisible airwave spread out in all directions with the two as the center. The space then became turbulent, but it immediately calmed down. However, at this time, Lu Ping focused all his attention on dealing with Yuanjiu Laozu, so he did not notice the situation. Although Yuanjiu Laozu noticed the strangeness of the surrounding space, Yuanjiu Laozu, who was already on guard against the fallen secret land, only frowned. The appearance of these movements was not out of Yuanjiu Laozu's expectation. The sword of true spirit and the crystal whip collided. One was of extremely high quality, but the Imperial Controller's cultivation was not good enough, but he used his full strength. The other was of slightly lower quality, but the Imperial Controller's strength was extremely strong, but he was restrained by the mysterious fallen tomb. This time, at least on the surface, the battle between the two ended in a draw. In reality, this attack was effortless for Origin Wine Laozu, but Lu Ping's blood was churning in his chest. It was only when he used the power of his Dharma power to calm the surging vital energy in his body. It had been a long time since Lu Ping had encountered such an overwhelming suppression in terms of strength. Yuanjiu Laozu snorted coldly. The crystal pagoda rose into the air and slowly landed on top of Lu Ping's head, trying to suppress Lu Ping with absolute strength. However, the moment Yuanjiu Laozu made his move, Lu Ping did not want to be outdone. In the black-red mist, where the poisonous mist and the wine mist blended, 12 stars suddenly began to twinkle, and the twinkle became brighter and brighter, knowing that the black-red mist could no longer be concealed. Ancestor Primal Wine's mind stirred. Even he had heard quite a few stories about Lu Tianping's rise to prominence. Back then, when Lu Tianping had used his supremely powerful life bond formation to defeat 12 mighty cultivators by the banks of the Yulon River in the Central Plains, even Ancestor Primal Wine had been stunned. Moreover, the distinctive characteristics of the life bond formation that Lu Tianping had praised seemed to be the 12 glistening multicolored pearls and the enchanting white jade lotus formation of the 9th stage. Just as Yuanjiu Laozu realized Lu Ping's response, a white jade lotus immediately bloomed under Lu Ping's feet. The rune array diagram on the petals resonated with the 12 gentian pearls around it. Lu Ping finally managed to set up the natal array before the crystal pagoda completely landed on his head. Boom! As the crystal pagoda fell, Lu Ping and the natal array were pressed down by Yuanjiu Laozu. The ground of the secret permafrost sank more than 10 feet in one fell swoop. Lu Ping finally relied on the gentian array to barely resist the crystal pagoda. However, the crystal light curtain that hung down from the top of the pagoda fell again, but this time, it was not for protection but for pressure. Lu Ping's chest and abdomen shook, and he could no longer suppress the blood in his heart. He half knelt on the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood on the ground. The sword of true spirit suddenly turned into 9 dragons and wrapped around the crystal pagoda, trying to lift it up, helping the natal gentian array to finally resist the downward pressure of the crystal pagoda. However, Yuanjiu Laozu seemed to have made up his mind to suppress Lu Ping under the crystal pagoda. He made a hand seal with both hands, and then made a pressing gesture with his palms facing down. The crystal pagoda suddenly sank down like a huge awl that was smashed by a hammer. Lu Ping knelt on one knee and pushed down with both hands, barely supporting his body again. A purple-gold auspicious cloud appeared around Lu Ping, and a distant roar came from the auspicious cloud. A golden purple-gold claw suddenly appeared from the depths of the fog and reached out to the bottom of the crystal pagoda. The entire pagoda suddenly trembled, and Lu Ping, who was supporting himself with both hands, suddenly felt the pressure on his body lighten. He suddenly propped up his upper body, and the crystal pagoda was pushed up by 2 feet by Lu Ping. Yuanjiu Laozu was furious, as if Lu Ping's resistance was a great humiliation to him. However, at this time, Lu Ping was suppressed under the crystal pagoda, and he could not see that there was a trace of fear hidden in Yuanjiu Laozu's angry expression. The fear came from Lu Ping, who had never stopped fighting under the crystal pagoda, and the fear came from the moment Lu Ping summoned the Dharma form of the dragon. Yuanjiu Laozu suddenly felt a mysterious reaction from the secret land of the fallen mound. This mysterious feeling came quickly and disappeared even faster. The primal wine ancestor even hesitated for a moment, wondering if it was just a misperception. But Yuanjiu Laozu knew that it was not an illusion, but the mysterious existence hidden in the secret land of the fallen mound had been alarmed. Yuanjiu Laozu did not know whether the mysterious existence was alarmed the moment Lu Ping summoned the Dharma form of the dragon because there was a mysterious connection between the two. Therefore, Yuanjiu Laozu wanted to completely suppress and kill Lu Ping before it happened, and then leave the secret land of the fallen mound as soon as possible. Yuanjiu Laozu simply hovered above the crystal pagoda, and a huge suppressive force descended again. Lu Ping's upper body, which had just propped up, was about to be pressed down again. At this moment of life and death, the Dharma form of the dragon in the auspicious clouds no longer showed its head or tail. The purple-gold auspicious clouds instantly condensed towards the center, and the full appearance of the Dharma form of the dragon was immediately revealed to Lu Ping and Yuanjiu Laozu. The Dharma form of the dragon hovered above the lotus formation, and strong pure yang energy filled the entire gentian formation. Yuanjiu Laozu looked at the Dharma form of the dragon with uncertain eyes. But in the end, Yuanjiu Laozu seemed to have made up his mind, and the aura around him suddenly began to fluctuate in an extremely strange manner. At this moment, Lu Ping could not raise his head to look at Yuanjiu Laozu, who was above his head. Because of the suppression of the crystal pagoda, even his divine thoughts could not break through the seal of the wine fog. But he could still feel the fluctuating and unusually strange aura coming from the top of the crystal pagoda. You, Lu Tianping, are the first person in history to be able to force the old man to transform into a real spirit with your pure yang cultivation base and use your full strength. A voice with a hint of exclamation sounded above Lu Ping's head. Then there was a sudden loud roar, and a boundless pressure seemed to descend from ancient times. What was suspended in the void at the top of the crystal pagoda was not Yuanjiu Laozu, but a giant yellow tiger. It was a true giant tiger surging with life force. It was not the condensation of a Dharma idol, nor was it an illusory divine ability. It was just that this giant tiger was different from a true demonic tiger. It was more like a brand new level of life, a manifestation of the soul, an expression of the nascent divinity, a method that was more beneficial for cultivators to continue climbing the peak of eternal life. This was the true spirit that primal wine ancestor had achieved. The giant tiger roared at the sky. The surrounding void was no longer just turbulent and shattered, but it was communicating with the outside world, shrouded by the poison firmament wall. Boundless spiritual energy shot out from the void and gathered around the giant tiger. This spiritual energy did not come from the secret burial ground, but from the outside world. It came from the place where the spiritual energy of this world gathered, which the spiritual energy of the giant tiger's real spirit communicated with the space magic power. The giant tiger was roaring, and so was the Dharma form of the dragon. The Dharma form of the dragon was only a pure Yang Dharma form, and it had not reached the sacred level of the real spirit. It was reasonable to say that when it encountered the real incarnation of the real spirit, it should be suppressed without any suspense. However, the Dharma form of the dragon did not seem to show the slightest fear of the giant tiger real spirit transformed by Yuanjiu Laozu. On the contrary, the Dharma form of the dragon hovered above the lotus array more and more eagerly, and it could not wait to fight with the real spirit giant tiger. Its roars provoked the giant tiger. The giant tiger looked disdainfully at the Dharma form of the dragon under its feet, then lifted its foot and gently stepped down. Lu Ping, who was suppressed under the crystal tower, could no longer hold on, and his whole body was pressed into the soil of the secret burial ground. Two feathers shining with a faint seven-colored light were held tightly in Lu Ping's hands. At the moment of life and death, Lu Ping was waiting for Yuanjiu Laozu's final attack to completely activate the magic power of opening the sky that Luan Daoist had personally performed in the two feathers. However, at this moment, a strange sound came from the soil. Bah, bah, bah. The dull sound came from the soil. This was not the sound of Lu Ping's bones and blood vessels breaking under the suppression of the Crystal Palace. It was more like the roots under the soil had broken because Lu Ping was pressed into the soil. At this time, the one who felt it the clearest was Lu Ping, who was completely suppressed. The sound of breaking was indeed from the roots under the soil. To be more precise, the broken roots were the two roots of the dragon locust tree that covered the entire secret burial ground. The Dharma form of a dragon. I didn't expect that after the fall of Jiao Daoren, there would still be a pure Yang Dharma form that is similar to a divine dragon in this world. Lu Xiaoyu, the old man really did not misjudge you. A voice sounded in Lu Ping's mind the moment he was crushed. This voice was none other than the Longhuai ancestor, who had never shown up. At this time, Lu Ping could finally breathe a sigh of relief. It seemed that he would not die this time. A steady stream of pure pneuma surged from the soil towards Lu Ping's body. This pneuma came from the broken roots of the dragon locust tree in the soil. The pure pneuma was also rich with vitality. It healed Lu Ping's injuries and replenished his real essence. Even Lu Ping could feel that his lifespan and cultivation seemed to have increased significantly at this moment. With the influx and refinement of the pneuma, Lu Ping even felt that he could use an incredible force to fight against the real spirit giant tiger that was suppressing him above his head. Just as the real spirit of Yuanjiu Laozu was about to kill Lu Tianping, who had been suppressed to the bottom and had no strength to fight back, suddenly raised his head. Then, a huge force that was not weaker than his own gushed out from under his feet and lifted the real spirit of the giant tiger up. This could not be the strength of Lu Tianping. Yuanjiu Laozu's heart trembled. He was immediately sure that it must be the mysterious existence in the secret burial ground that had taken action. Chapter 1482. For a moment, Yuanjiu Laozu even had the thought of escaping, but he suppressed it in the end. Whether it was his pride as the guardian of the Crystal Palace, or his confidence in his own strength after becoming a celestial spirit, neither allowed him to escape without a fight. Lu Ping knocked the crystal pagoda high up into the air, and the true spirit tiger leaped into the air. The void in front of him was compressed, and in the blink of an eye, it was already above Lu Ping's head. Before the tiger's sharp claws could stab into his body, Lu Ping could already feel his heart being tainted by the tiger's killing intent. However, at this moment, Lu Ping had the Longhuai ancestor as his backing, so he had nothing to fear. The Genshin formation operated, and the distance between the two suddenly increased. However, this method was clearly not enough against Yuanjiu Laozu's celestial spirit tiger. No matter how Lu Ping used his spatial abilities, Yuanjiu Laozu was always able to follow him like a shadow. However, Lu Ping did not expect to be able to compete with Yuanjiu Laozu in terms of spatial abilities, and he was only fighting for this moment. Seeing that there was no way to avoid it, the celestial spirit sword Moli finally displayed its magnificent power in Lu Ping's hands. The huge sword whirlpool directly sliced the space into pieces, and then countless spatial fragments gathered together with the boundless sword light at the center of the whirlpool. Suddenly, it traversed between Lu Ping and Yuanjiu Laozu's celestial spirits. At the center of the sword light whirlpool, countless spatial fragments gathered, as if a strange spatial passage had been opened, leading to an unknown place. If Yuanjiu Laozu did not stop, the celestial spirit tiger would fall into the sea of all river sword formation, and it would be cut by thousands of sword lights and devoured by the sword formation space. If it was before, Yuanjiu Laozu, with his celestial body, did not need to worry about this supreme sword ability. Although Lu Ping's sword whirlpool was powerful, it might not be able to defeat a celestial spirit body. However, the power of the Sea of All Rivers sword technique that Lu Ping used was several times more powerful. The power contained within it even made Yuanjiu Laozu's celestial spirit body fearful. At this moment, Yuan Qi was pouring into Lu Ping's body from the soil under his feet. With the help of this external force, Lu Ping could feel his strength skyrocketing, as if someone was pushing him from behind. His cultivation realm soared from the early stage of pure yang to the middle stage, late stage and peak stage of pure yang. He knew that he had touched a mysterious threshold, and then Lu Ping felt that he was being carried across this threshold in one fell swoop, and arrived at a whole new realm. At this moment, the Dragon Dharma power hovering above Lu Ping's head seemed to have a telepathic connection with Lu Ping, and it entered his head, as if it wanted to merge with Lu Ping's body to form a celestial spirit. However, at this moment Lu Ping was not a true pure yang. The moment the Dragon Dharma power entered Lu Ping's body, it finally merged with his blood vessels and fell back into the core space along with the flow of his blood. However, in the process of Lu Ping's comprehension of advancing to a celestial spirit, the feeling of the moment the Dharma power and body merged was engraved in Lu Ping's mind. In the future, when Lu Ping really crossed this threshold, this feeling and understanding would definitely bring twice the results with half the effort for Lu Ping. Now that the Longhuai ancestor had brought him into this realm, Lu Ping could feel that he could cause mountains and rivers to collapse, space to collapse, and even this world was afraid of his existence. It could not wait to expel him from this world, and did not hesitate to threaten him with the power of heaven and earth. Moreover, Lu Ping could even feel that in this world, there was a hidden threat that could destroy a celestial spirit. This threat was extremely mysterious, and a thought emerged from the bottom of Lu Ping's heart: divine punishment. Despite the rejection from this world, there seemed to be a mysterious force coming from the far north. It seemed to be guiding Lu Ping there as quickly as possible. Only there would he be able to escape the rejection from this world. Only there would he be free from the threat of this world. Only then would he be able to leave this world and be free from its threats. Only then would he be able to enter a new world. Lu Ping was doing his best to adapt and familiarize himself with this new realm. If he wanted to quickly control this new realm and comprehend the mysteries within, the most direct way was undoubtedly to fight. Only by fighting like life and death could he completely engrave the comprehension of this realm into Lu Ping's heart. And at this time, Lu Ping used the power of the true spirit realm to look back at all the details of his cultivation. He found that he had many flaws in using his innate divine abilities and that the power of his divine abilities had this much room for improvement. The Genshin Great Array could actually be improved like this, and the power of the pure yang spiritual treasure could not be used to its peak. The path of cultivation could be walked like this to avoid more detours. Lu Ping knew this was a rare chance. His cultivation had risen to the true spirit realm with the help of the Longhuai ancestor, but this increase was just an external force, it was just an illusion. After passing the current crisis, the Longhuai ancestor's external force would be withdrawn and Lu Ping's cultivation would fall back to the early pure yang realm. However, after Lu Ping survived the current crisis, this experience would surely help him accumulate a strong foundation for his future cultivation. In the end, it would become a solid foundation for his future cultivation. Just like the 100 rivers flow into the sea, that Lu Ping was casting now. The structure of the Great River Flows East Sword Art was composed of the 5 basic skills. Lu Ping could even reverse engineer the Great River Flows East Sword Art from the 5 basic skills into a brand new Great River Flows East Sword Art. However, looking at the 100 Rivers Sea Sword Art that he was using now, although it could force back the Yuanjiu Laozu with one sword, and its power could be said to be extremely strong in Lu Ping's eyes, this sword art was extremely simple. This simple did not mean that there was anything wrong with this Supreme Sword Art divine ability, but that this Supreme Sword Art divine ability was much more extensive and profound than Lu Ping had imagined. What Lu Ping had displayed now was only the most basic power of this sword art. The 5 basic divine abilities of the All Rivers into the Sea Sword technique were merely the most basic foundation of this Supreme Divine Sword technique. Apart from the 5 basic divine abilities, this Divine Sword technique could also contain more Divine Sword techniques as a framework, allowing the power of the divine ability to increase by a large margin. As the saying went, the sea can contain hundreds of rivers, and those with tolerance are great. This was where the true essence of the All Rivers into the Sea Sword technique lay. Moreover, after using the 5 great basic divine abilities to form the foundation of the 100 Rivers Sea Sword Art, if one wanted to incorporate the sword art divine ability into the framework of this sword art divine ability, it could only be done with a supreme sword art divine ability. In other words, the 100 Rivers Sea Sword Art itself was a set of sword art divine ability that could fuse other supreme sword art divine abilities into one. The more it could fuse, the more powerful the sword art divine ability would be. The reason why Lu Ping could not understand the true essence of this supreme sword art divine ability and could only use the most basic power of this sword art divine ability was because the 100 Rivers Sea Sword Art was a true spirit level divine ability. Only true spirit cultivators could truly use the 100 Rivers Sea Sword Art. Only true spirit cultivators could fuse their supreme sword techniques into the structure of the 100 Rivers into the Sea Sword Art, allowing this supreme sword technique to become more complete and its power to increase. It was not that Lu Ping did not have this idea before, but for the 100 Rivers Sea Sword Art, Lu Ping could only use the other sword art divine abilities as a reference and could not fuse them together. But now, with the help of Patriarch Long Huai's essence, Lu Ping had temporarily raised his cultivation base to a new height. At the same time, he had also discovered the true essence of the all rivers run into the sea. This also meant that Lu Ping could now truly grasp the true essence of this sword technique with his pure yang cultivation base. Over the years, Lu Ping had studied many supreme sword techniques and skills. Other than the self-created Great River flowing east, there were also the Rising Heaven Sword Art from Yingtian sect, the Rising Heaven Sword Art from Songhai sect, the Songhai Sword Art from the Koi Carp clan, and so on. He had even sparred with the Sky-Cracking Sword Saint, Ziyang Palace's direct disciple, and other great sword cultivators. Now that he had mastered the Sea of 100 Rivers Sword Art, which combined all kinds of supreme sword techniques, Lu Ping's swordsmanship would surely improve by leaps and bounds. The instant the true spirit tiger was forced back, Lu Ping once again took out the spiritual treasure and cut it in half towards the true spirit that Laozu had transformed into. This time, the true spirit Laozu no longer had the courage to fight the pure yang spiritual treasure head-on like before. Facing the full force of Lu Ping's scissors, the true spirit had no choice but to dodge to the side. In fact, at this moment, the strongest of Lu Ping's various techniques had become the two halves of the pure yang spiritual treasure. Whether it was the sword art divine ability or other magical abilities, or even Lu Ping's natal genshin formation, Lu Ping could see the path to increase the power of these techniques in the future. However, he did not have the time to increase the power of these techniques at this time. Instead, he might as well cut the spiritual treasure in half. The more essence energy he injected, the more powerful the pure yang spiritual treasure would be. It was as simple as that. When the giant tiger true spirit that Yuanjiu Laozu had transformed into dodged Lu Ping's scissors, it saw the two halves of the spiritual treasure in Lu Ping's hand open and close again. Two blades of light cut through the void and Yuanjiu Laozu had to dodge again. The thing that Lu Ping lacked the most right now was an endless supply of pure spirit energy to temporarily reach the true spirit realm. Although the two halves of the spiritual treasure was strong, it consumed a lot of true spirit energy. However, Lu Ping did not care about this at all. The scissors in his hand cut again, and this unreasonable method made Yuanjiu Laozu unable to do anything to Lu Ping. When Yuanjiu Laozu had no way to deal with Lu Ping and his heart was filled with thoughts of retreating, he heard a chi-la sound coming from behind him. Yuanjiu Laozu knew that after the giant tiger true spirit dodged the two halves of the spiritual treasure, the pure yang spiritual treasure's blade lights still closed and created a hole in the 10,000 poison sky wall in the distance. Chapter 1483. On Yankun Island in the North Sea, Linyu Laozu stood in the middle of the island in a daze. After a long time, he let out a long sigh and slowly rose from the island. In Linyu Laozu's eyes, Yankun Island looked like a huge array board that was operating. With a flash of light in his hand, the long flute appeared in his palm. With a flick of his wrist, the long flute was thrown towards the center of Yankun Island. Jijega, a series of strange sounds rang out. It was as if a few of the core talisman inscriptions of a well-used formation had been destroyed. At first, the entire formation was unable to operate smoothly. Then, it seemed as if it had broken away from its original operation and was completely out of control. The entire Yankun Island's formation began to operate in a strange manner. It seemed as if it would collapse at any moment. Seeing that the entire array on Yankun Island was about to be completely destroyed, Linyu Laozu's heart skipped a beat. He felt a cold killing intent flash by his side. Linyu Laozu seemed to have sensed it. His body suddenly flashed, and his entire body shifted 30 feet from his original position. A black light flashed in the direction where Lin Yu Laozu had previously been standing. I knew that Lu Xiaoyu would definitely not be at ease leaving the old man here, so he really sent people to keep an eye on you. However, your secret technique of concealment is so superb. Could it be that you are the famous demon sword Yin Tianchu of Jinling? A cold snort sounded in the void. Yin Tianchu seemed to have already predicted that his sneak attack would not be able to do anything to the pure yang cultivator in front of him. After his attack failed, he immediately shook the entire space as a cover and waited for an opportunity to strike again. Jinling is indeed full of talents. There is actually another late Dharma adept among the third generation of adepts. It's a pity that your sect has made too many enemies. The old man had no choice but to do so. Please forgive me. Patriarch Lin Yu extended his hand and beckoned towards Yen Kuan Island, attempting to recall the spiritual treasure flute that had destroyed the entire array formation. However, Lin Yu Laozu's expression changed. Not only was the long flute not recalled, but the huge amount of essential yuan that had been injected into the treasure in an attempt to destroy the array did not stop either. Instead, when Lin Yu Laozu recalled the treasure, the essential yuan in his body became more and more uncontrollably sucked into the treasure. At this moment, Yin Tianchu saw another opportunity. The short sword in his hand once again pierced through the void, directly piercing through Lin Yu Laozu's protective magical power. Lin Yu Laozu was still trying to recall the treasure. In the face of Yin Tianchu's fierce attack, he could only dodge again. However, the essential yuan in his body was becoming more and more uncontrollable, causing Lin Yu Laozu's body to be affected as well. Immediately after, he felt a chill on his waist. Under Lin Yu Laozu's shocked and angry eyes, Yin Tianchu had already cut a wound on his waist. The cold essential yuan flowed through the wound and into his blood vessels, but was immediately forced out by Lin Yu Laozu's pure yang essential yuan. Yin Tianchu quickly retreated after the blow. However, Lin Yu Laozu, a dignified pure yang adept, had actually been tricked by Yin Tianchu. How could he not be angry? Could it be that all the late Dharma adepts in Jinling were like Lu Tianping and had the ability to challenge those of a higher level? For a moment, Lin Yu Laozu did not even care about the long flute that was trapped by the matrix under his feet. He directly slapped the air in the direction of Yin Tianchu, who had been pushed away. The entire space suddenly collapsed. Yin Tianchu could not dodge in time and was hit directly on the right side of his chest. Instantly he spat out a mouthful of blood. Lin Yu Laozu snorted coldly and was about to rush forward to kill Yin Tianchu. Unexpectedly, as his body moved slightly, he realized that at this moment, not only had his treasure been trapped and his essential yuan was being continuously absorbed, but even his body movement had been affected. He could only watch helplessly as the heavily injured Yin Tianchu escaped, instantly hiding in the void and disappearing. At this moment, Lin Yu Laozu realized that he was in big trouble. Lu Ping was not suspicious of his sudden arrival and was on guard. This was a trap that had been specially set up for Lin Yu Laozu. Relying on his skyrocketing cultivation base and endless true essence, Lu Ping used the pure yang spirit scissors in his hand to cut at Yuan Jiao ancestor's true spirit tiger form again and again. Helpless, Yuan Jiao ancestor could only dodge the scissors. However, perhaps because Lu Ping couldn't control his skyrocketing cultivation base or for some other reason, the spirit scissors were cut in half. Even after missing the opportunity to kill Yuan Jiao ancestor, the sharp scissors didn't disappear. Instead, they continued to cut open holes in the heavenly poison wall one after another. Surging poisonous fog kept gushing out from the holes, and the heavenly poison wall that would quickly close up after being cut open seemed to have lost its ability to repair itself. Lu Tianping, what are you doing? Do you want to break the sky poison wall? Once the poisonous fog inside spreads, it will inevitably lead to a catastrophe in the cultivation world of the East Sea. Do you, Lu Tianping, have the courage to bear such a sin? At this moment, Yuan Wine Laozu could already see that Lu Ping seemed to be using the spiritual treasure scissors to prevent him from getting close, but in fact he was destroying the sky poison wall. Yuan Wine Laozu naturally knew that Lu Ping must have borrowed the power of the mysterious existence hidden in the fallen secret land to be evenly matched with him. At this moment, Lu Ping must certainly be trying to break the seal on the sky poison wall, which was naturally reasonable. When Yuan Wine Laozu saw that Lu Ping ignored his words and just blindly controlled the spiritual treasure scissors to attack him while taking the opportunity to destroy the sky poison wall, he could not help but be shocked and said, "Lu Tianping, are you already under someone's control?" Lu Ping was slightly stunned and said with a smile, "Yuan Wine Senior, since you can't do anything to me, why don't you retreat? Don't tell me you want to continue to entangle with me?" Yuan Wine Laozu looked a little exasperated and said, Lu Tianping, do you know what kind of existence is sealed in the sky poison wall? I hope you don't make a mistake. Lu Ping laughed and said, now that I am being chased by Senior, I am in a precarious situation. If I can save my life, why would I make a mistake? Senior, please don't joke. Yuan Wine Laozu said angrily, old man, please advise me with kind words. If you rashly open the sky poison wall, the existence sealed in it will definitely cause suffering to all living beings, and you, Lu Tianping, will be the culprit. Lu Ping said seriously, oh, in that case, Senior, you know what is sealed in the sky poison wall. I hope Yuan Wine Laozu can dispel my doubts. Why are you so afraid? Yuan Wine Laozu was speechless. To put it bluntly, the Crystal Palace didn't know who was sealed in the sky poison wall. Back then, the real spirit of the Crystal Palace, Laozu, and 2 pure young practitioners went missing inside, but it was because the Crystal Palace went to provoke them. Apart from that, the Crystal Palace still knew nothing about the Longhuai ancestor. The so-called suffering to all living beings was just a subconscious thought of by the Crystal Palace. Yuan Wine Laozu was stumped by Lu Ping's question, but he still said, not to mention the existence sealed in it, if the protective wall is broken and the poisonous fog is allowed to spread, the entire East Sea cultivation world will suffer. As soon as Yuan Wine Laozu's voice fell, the poisonous fog that had drifted out from the holes cut by Lu Ping began to shrink back. The surrounding black poisonous fog also suddenly began to shrink back into the depths of the secret land. Seeing this, Lu Ping knew that it would be difficult to encounter such an opportunity in the future, so he directly opened the space entrance of the Golden House. The endless poisonous fog was attracted by the 1,000 poison source liquid and condensed into golden auspicious clouds above the bluestone pool. The clouds then turned into golden raindrops and fell into the pool. At the bottom of the pool, a blue light ball condensed by the 1,000 wonder dew was rolling, as if it was extracting the essence of the pool and condensing more 1,000 wonder dew. At the same time, dozens of strange black flames burned around Lu Ping. These flames also seemed to use the poisonous fog as fuel. The more the poisonous fog condensed, the higher the black flames rose. At this time, how could Yuan Wine Laozu not know that the so-called weakening of the poisonous fog and the firmament wall of myriad poison that allowed cultivators to come and go freely was all because of the mysterious existence sealed in the secret land of the secret land? At this time, Yuan Wine Laozu could no longer stop Lu Ping. Coupled with his fear of the mysterious existence, there was no longer any meaning for him to stay. He could only say fiercely, Lu Tianping, behave yourself. Today the old man will let you go. If what you do today really brings a great disaster to the East Sea, the old man will drag you, Zhenling, to the grave even if I have to give up my cultivation. After speaking, Essence Wine Laozu withdrew his true spirit and transformed back into his human form. The gourd under his feet suddenly spewed out wine mist, and he retreated out of the myriad firmament poison wall. You come and go as you please. How rude. You really are as domineering as that tigress. Do you really think that the old man can't do anything to you? An angry roar rumbled like thunder, shaking the entire poisonous mist in the secret land. Yuanjiu Laozu asked in surprise, who are you? Lu Ping naturally recognized the voice of the Longhuai ancestor. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly felt a strange spatial turbulence coming from the depths of the secret land. Then, a root suddenly rose from the ground in front of the hole in the myriad firmament poison wall. Then it weaved into a large net in midair, blocking the escape route of Yuanjiu Laozu. Yuanjiu Laozu snorted coldly, and the crystal pagoda directly broke the large net of roots. However, Lu Ping saw a black root suddenly break the space and appear behind Yuanjiu Laozu. By the time Yuanjiu Laozu noticed it, it was already too late to dodge. His back had to take the blow, and his whole body was sent flying out of the myriad firmament poison wall. Lu Xiaoyu, next I will have to borrow the strength of my little friend. The entire secret land covered by the myriad firmament poison wall had a radius of more than 1,000 miles. It was a huge island. Coupled with the nearby sea area, the area covered by the myriad firmament poison wall was 3,000 to 5,000 miles. At this time, the black poisonous mist that permeated the myriad firmament poison wall was slowly converging towards the center of the secret land. The poisonous mist in the entire myriad firmament poison wall was thinning. At this time, looking at the center of the secret land from a distance, one could already see an indomitable object standing in the center of the secret land. The entire myriad firmament poison wall looked like a black curtain hanging down from its crown, but in fact, it was firmly imprisoned in the black curtain. Chapter 1484. Ancestor Lin Yu decisively abandoned the flute and tried to break free from the shackles of Eternal Earth Island. However, as he struggled to break free, Yin Tianchu ignored his injuries and once again forced his way back to Ancestor Lin Yu. "Brat, you're the one courting death." At this time, even Lin Yu Laozu was panicking. He could feel that every time he struggled to break free, the shackles would become stronger. If this dragged on, and the shackles became stronger, even Lin Yu Laozu didn't know if he would have the chance to break free. Just now, Ancestor Lin Yu was about to break free after accumulating power, but unexpectedly Yin Tianchu suddenly attacked, causing Ancestor Lin Yu to fall short of success at the last moment. However, at this time, 3 rays of light suddenly cut through the night sky from the direction of Tianling Mountain. Each of these 3 rays of light carried a boundless aura. It was obvious that the 3 great cultivators of Jinling who were guarding Tianling Mountain had arrived. Lin Yu Laozu was startled. He suddenly realized that not only had he been tricked by Lu Ping, but he had also been tricked by the Yuan clan. He had become the bait to lure all the great cultivators of Jinling out of Tianling Mountain. The real goal of the Yuan clan was Tianling Mountain. Before the rays of light reached Yankuan Island, one of the rays of light had already cut through the void. A long whip turned into a bolt of lightning and attacked Lin Yu Laozu from the left and right with Yin Tianchu. It was obvious that the sect master of Jinling, Lu Tianling, had personally attacked. However, at this time Lin Yu Laozu had already made up his mind. He no longer wanted to take back the spirit treasure he had nurtured for many years. He wanted to break free from the shackles of Yankuan Island's grand formation. Even when facing Yin Tianchu and Lu Tianling's joint attack, he only planned to use his defensive ability to resist. But at this time, one of the 2 rays of light that came with Lu Tianling turned into an 8-colored flame, burning through the void toward Lin Yu Laozu. Mei Tianqin was recognized by one of the 6 Wan Daoist life feathers. With the power of this life feather, she was able to quickly reach the late Dharma stage. Not only that, but this life feather also contained a trace of the Wan Daoist's understanding of fire. This caused Mei Tianqin's life spirit fire to increase from 7 to 8 colors, greatly increasing its power. Even if Patriarch Lin Yu could barely withstand the attacks of 2 great cultivators, his defensive magic would inevitably be destroyed. At this time, facing the attack of a 3rd great cultivator, he had no choice but to defend with all his might. Thus, he lost the opportunity to escape from Yankuan Island. At the same time, the 3rd great cultivator did not join the 3 who were besieging Patriarch Lin Yu. Instead, the 3rd great cultivator descended onto the Eternal Earth Island grand formation that was madly operating. The beam of light disappeared, but the person who walked out was not the Zhenling sect's great practitioner, Tianxiang ancestor, but a young early Dharma adept. However, no one knew why the beam of light had been able to unleash an aura that was no weaker than that of a late Dharma adept when it streaked across the night sky. The moment this young adept landed on Yankuan Island, he quickly flew in the direction of the spirit treasure flute that Lin Yu Laozu had inserted into the island. When he arrived at the location, Deng Tianming looked at the huge pit that was 20 to 30 feet deep and 50 to 60 feet wide. At this time, the bottom of the pit was already filled with underground water. The body of the spirit treasure had long been submerged in this small lake. When Deng Tianming saw this, he stomped his foot and a series of seal inscriptions immediately began to appear on the ground. These seal inscriptions spread along the edge of the pit, all the way to the surface of the ground that was being covered by the underground water. In an instant, the position of the spirit treasure was confirmed. The entire surface of Yankuan Island had already been connected by a formation, and most of these masterpieces had been created by Deng Tianming. Therefore, he was the only one who could understand why Ancestor Lin Yu was still able to create such a huge crater under such circumstances. After confirming the location of the spirit treasure flute, Deng Tianming's face showed a hint of fanaticism as he muttered to himself, using a formation to trap and kill a pure yang cultivator, then using the pure yang as a sacrifice to bring Fei Ling Island to the surface and merge with Tianling Island. I didn't expect such an exquisite and powerful technique to come from me. What a blessing. If I hadn't followed Brother Lu to Jinling, my formation skills would never have reached such a level. Today I will use this pure yang adept to lay the foundation for my formation skills to reach a new level. As he spoke, a purple gold scale suddenly rose from Deng Tianming's hand. On this scale, there were 9 tiny formations that were so intricate that even a Dharma adept's divine will would not be able to detect them clearly. On top of this scale, there was also a strong aura that was equivalent to that of a late Dharma adept. This scale was the reverse scale that Lu Ping had specially left for Deng Tianming before he left the North Sea. It was the scale that recorded the 9 foundation formations of Jiao Daoren. The strong aura that it carried made Deng Tianming look like a late Dharma adept, but in reality he was just a formation grandmaster who had just entered the early Dharma stage not long ago. Deng Tianming could sense that the reverse scale had accurately landed on the spirit treasure flute that was still struggling after being trapped in the pit. Lin Yu Laozu, who was defending against the attacks of 3 great adepts in the sky above Yankuan Island, suddenly lost track of his life spirit treasure. A shout that made Lin Yu Laozu's heart break suddenly rang out from Yankuan Island. Sacrifice begin. Third great uncle, since we have already ordered that pure Yang Laozu and Lin Yu to destroy the formation that Jinling used to capture the 7 stars cave heaven, Lu Tianping's fate is unknown, and Jinling is no longer a concern, why should we be so desperate to destroy Jinling? Right now the most important thing is to find the 7 stars cave heaven. Yuan Feixiang was obviously displeased that Yuan Tongtian had delayed the search for the 7 stars cave heaven. Before Yuan Tongtian could say anything, another pure Yang adept beside him had already reprimanded him. How dare you? How can a junior like you interfere with the decisions of the elders in the family? Do you know how to respect your elders? Yuan Feixiang's expression was wooden as he said, I don't dare. However, from his expression, it was clear that he was still dissatisfied. The other pure Yang adept from the Yuan clan was about to reprimand him, but Yuan Tongtian waved his hand to stop him. He smiled and said, 7th brother, don't be angry. It's a good thing that this kid has his own opinions. Yuan Daotian was clearly still brooding over this. He said, they are just arrogant. As one of the most outstanding disciples of the 3rd generation, 3rd brother and the other elders in the family have spoiled him too much. This has undoubtedly fueled their arrogance, causing them to have no respect for their elders. They even dare to question the decisions of the elders in the family. If we don't suppress their arrogance, they will really think that the current Yuan clan is under their control. 7th brother, why are you so angry? Yuan Tongtian turned to Yuan Feixiang and said in a low voice, hurry up and apologize to your 7th great uncle. Yuan Feixiang was just about to bow and apologize when Yuan Daotian waved his hand and said impatiently, there's no need. The old man has been in a bad mood these past few days. Originally, when I received 3rd brother's decree, I thought that I would come overseas to relax. Who would have thought that because of this matter, the family would be in a foul mood because of Thunderclapker and you 3. The 3 of you have your own backers. The old man originally wanted to stay out of this mess, not wanting to get involved with the 3 of you. Who would have thought that he would fall into 3rd brother's trap? How infuriating. Yuan Tongtian smiled and apologized. This is the old man's fault. 7th brother, please don't take it to heart. Yuan Daotian sighed and said, forget it. There's no point in apologizing at this time. I'm afraid that the family has already decided that the old man will stand on Feixiang's side. Even if he has a mouth, he won't be able to clear it. Yuan Tongtian and Yuan Feixiang looked at each other and looked a little embarrassed. At this time Yuan Daotian said, fortunately, compared to those 2 brats who only know how to form cliques in the family, Feixiang knows how to do some practical things. Regardless of whether this small world can really break the curse of our Yuan family of not having a true spirit cultivator, at least this is a plan for the future of the Yuan family. At least the old man's trip to the North Sea was not in vain. Yuan Tongtian and Yuan Feixiang were both overjoyed. Yuan Tongtian laughed and said, haha, with 7th brother's help, this plan is more likely to succeed. Yuan Feixiang bowed and said, thank you for your understanding, 7th great uncle. Yuan Daotian snorted coldly. His expression was still not worried, but it was not as stern as before. Only now did Yuan Tongtian remember. Yuan Feixiang explained, the small world is related to the foundation of the Holy Land's inheritance and the rise and fall of the sect. It can be said to be a matter of life and death. Jinling will definitely fight with the family to the end. If we only get rid of Lu Tianping and destroy Yankuan Island, then Jinling might raise another Zhang Tianping or Li Tianping in the future. Cutting the weeds and leaving the roots to grow again is a wise decision. Since we have this opportunity, we must at least destroy Jinling. At that time, the 7-star heavenly abode will still be in the family's pocket. Yuan Feixiang said, this disciple understands 3rd great uncle's words. It's just that Jinling once had a true spirit cultivator, Laozu. The sect protecting array also has true spirit Laozu's methods. If Jinling insists on defending, it won't be easy for us to attack Tianling Mountain. Yuan Tongtian laughed and said, that's why we have to lure them out. At that moment, Yankuan Island outside of Tianling Mountain started to shake violently. The entire sea started to shake. Not just Tianling Mountain, even Yuan Tong Tian and the others who were lying in ambush dozens of miles away from Tianling Mountain could feel the tremors. Ah, the show is about to start. If I'm not wrong, Yankuan Island must be a place that Jinling values. With such a huge commotion, how many of the great adepts that Jinling left on Tianling Mountain will rush over to Yankuan Island? Yuan Feixiang said, Jinling now has a pure Yang adept, which is Lu Tianping. Other than that, there are 4 late Dharma adepts: Tianxiang, Tianlin, Tianling and Tianqin. Other than Jiang Tianlin, who is currently in the East Sea, there should be 3 more great adepts on Tianling Mountain. Chapter 1485. Yuan Jiu Laozu had just left the sky of Poison Wall when he was startled. He then let out a sigh and reached out with his hand. There was a fluctuation in space and a crystal hammer broke through space and flew towards Yuan Jiu Laozu. The crystal pagoda above his head released a curtain of light that sucked the crystal hammer into the pagoda. When Yuan Jiu Laozu chased Lu Ping into the sky of Poison Wall, he heard Danju Laozu's loud shout. Yuan Jiu Laozu already knew that Danju Laozu could no longer stay in this world. From now on, the Crystal Palace would be handed over to him to protect. But he didn't know how Xiao Baiyu, who was being chased by Danju Laozu, was doing. This time, the 2 true spirit cultivators of the Crystal Palace had taken a risk and Yuan Jiu Laozu might have already failed. If Danju Laozu couldn't deal with Xiao Baiyu, then the situation in the overseas region would truly become a 3-way war. Just as Yuan Jiu Laozu placed the crystal hammer in his hand, there was another fluctuation in space. Yuan Jiu Laozu's face turned cold and the overlord hammer that he had just placed in the crystal pagoda appeared in his hand once again. A passage opened in space and Xiao Baiyu walked out. Seeing Yuan Jiu Laozu in front of him, he was stunned. Yuan Jiu Laozu's face was filled with disappointment when he saw Xiao Baiyu's appearance. But when he sensed the aura surging from Xiao Baiyu's body, he said in a surprised voice, "You've actually formed a true spirit body." Xiao Baiyu had clearly chased after the overlord hammer. Seeing Yuan Jiu Laozu here, he knew that the overlord hammer had fallen into his hands. He also had a slightly disappointed expression and said, "What, do you want to fight with this Xiao?" Elemental Wine Laozu smiled bitterly. "Are you sure you want to fight with the old man?" Xiao Baiyu coldly snorted. He naturally understood what it meant for 2 cultivators who had just reached the true spirit realm to fight, so he observed his expression and said in surprise, "From the looks of it, could it be that my Lu Xiaoyu escaped from your hands?" The bitterness on Yuan Jiu Laozu's face deepened, and the curiosity on Xiao Baiyu's face grew. Just as he was about to inquire further, he heard a clear whistle, which was closely followed by the buzzing of flying swords. Xiao Baiyu's expression tightened. He was a swordsmanship expert, so he naturally knew what the sword cries that filled the sky meant. Only a top-notch swordsman with a top-notch flying sword could have such earth-shattering power. The 2 of them looked in the direction of the sound. Xiao Baiyu found that the color of the sky poison wall, which had always been dark, was much lighter at this time. He could even vaguely see the scene of the fallen secret area through the wall. What surprised Xiao Baiyu even more was that there were many cuts on the heavenly poisonous wall at this time. Each cut was at least a mile long, and the length of the heavenly poisonous wall was more than 10 miles. These huge cuts were like shocking scars on the heavenly poisonous wall. There were so many cuts on the shield, but there was no poisonous mist that was imprisoned by the shield leaking out. Xiao Baiyu had to turn around and look doubtfully at Yuan Jiu Laozu on the side. Yuan Jiu Laozu smiled bitterly and said, "The spiritual treasure is broken in 2. That Lu Tianping seems to want to break the sky poison wall." "What?" Xiao Baiyu was shocked and said, "You didn't stop him?" Yuan Jiu Laozu glanced at Xiao Baiyu and said, "Mr. Xiao, it may be too late to stop him now." Xiao Baiyu naturally would not be fooled by Yuan Jiu Laozu. He said with a smile, "If you can't stop him, how can I? Lu Xiaoyu is my ally Skyrend. What's more, something has obviously happened in this fallen secret area. The sky poison wall is riddled with holes, but there is no poisonous mist leaking out. It seems that even if Lu Xiaoyu breaks the sky poison wall, it will not be a big deal." Yuan Jiu Laozu's eyes twitched fiercely and he said, "I'm not afraid to tell Mr. Xiao that there is probably an existence hidden in this fallen secret area that is not inferior to you and me. This Lu Tianping probably has some secret agreement with that existence to let him out. Mr. Xiao, you have to think about it carefully. This is an unknown threat." Xiao Baiyu was slightly startled and then he sneered and said, "So what? Can you and I go up and fight to the death with that unknown existence, and then rush to the North Ice Field together?" Yuan Jiu Laozu said with a strange expression, It is naturally not appropriate to fight with that mysterious existence, but it is not impossible to stop Lu Tianping. If that is the case, why didn't you stop him? Xiao Baiyu sneered and said, or you have already made a move, but you can't do anything to Lu Xiaoyu. Without waiting for Yuan Jiu Laozu to explain, Xiao Baiyu flung his sleeve and said unhappily, Mr. Xiao, don't stir up trouble again. Although Yuan Jiu Laozu looked embarrassed, his eyes were deep, as if he had already sensed something from Xiao Baiyu's words. As everyone was speaking, a beam of sword light soared into the sky from the myriad poison sky wall. It pierced through the top of the myriad poison sky wall, which was high in the clouds, and disappeared into the void. The sword light wandered in the clouds, and the top of the sky poison wall was cut open. A desolate, distant, but vigorous aura suddenly burst out from the sky poison wall, causing the aura of the two real spirits Laozu, who were watching from afar, to stagnate. Xiao Baiyu looked up at the soaring sword Qi and said doubtfully, this sword technique is very similar to the Heavenly Gate sword formation of the Koi clan. But as for its power, the old man was ashamed of his inferiority in the past. Yuan Jiu Laozu looked solemn and said, with such an aura, how long has the existence sealed in the sky poison wall lived in the cultivation world? Xiao Baiyu's expression changed and he said, oh? It seems that Yuan Jiu Laozu knows a lot about the so-called mysterious existence? Yuan Jiu Laozu snorted coldly and did not answer. At this time, a loud roar shook the entire sky poison wall, which enveloped the secret land violently. A pure yang dragon chased after a pure yang flying sword and broke through the sky poison wall. In the void, the dragon and the flying sword merged into one, and it slashed down at the sky poison wall below. Previously, the sword that cut through the myriad poison sky wall from the fallen star secret land was from the west to the east. But now, the sword that slashed down from outside the myriad poison sky wall was from the south to the north. It just happened to cut a huge cross on the top of the myriad poison sky wall. In the Phantom Palace, Skyrend and Songyu Laozu were actually the most powerful. Although Yuan Feng Laozu was filled with hatred, Xiao Baiyu had advanced to true spirit, and the situation was stronger than him. Even if the Crystal Palace could still suppress Skyrend with its deep foundation, and even if Xiao Baiyu, who had lost his natal flying sword, had lost his strength, true spirit Laozu was true spirit Laozu. There was no doubt that Skyrend had established a complete true spirit inheritance, so it was inevitable that the East Sea would welcome the two holy lands. In any case, the Crystal Palace was bound to suffer the greatest impact. Yuan Feng Laozu couldn't do anything to Songyu Laozu at this moment, but he vented all his resentment on Jinling. Xiao Baiyu could advance to true spirit under the suppression of Danju Laozu. Could it be that Lu Tianping, who had just advanced to pure yang, also had this ability? If not, how could he escape from senior brother Yuan Jiu? If he couldn't escape, without Lu Tianping, Jinling in the North Sea would be nothing. The Crystal Palace could immediately invade the North Sea before Skyrend. The North Sea was not as barren as before. Whether it was the large spiritual stone mine on the Frost Island, the huge cultivation resources on the Scarlet Mist Island, or the wealth that Jinling had accumulated in the North Sea, they were all delicious cakes that even the Crystal Palace would covet. However, at this time, Songyu Laozu, who was originally an ally of Jinling, chose to be a bystander and watch Yuan Feng Laozu suppress Jiang Tianlin. Even the three medium-sized sects in the North Sea chose to remain silent at this time. Only the Luoxin sect, a medium-sized sect that had risen in the East Sea in the past 100 years, still stood firmly on Jinling's side. However, right at this moment, the firmament of the Thousand Poisons, which was hundreds of miles away from the Phantom Island, was undergoing a series of huge changes. Even the Dharma adepts from the various sects in the Phantom Palace were alarmed. However, none of the people present had their divine will that far away. Fortunately, the firmament of the Thousand Poisons had caused a large enough commotion that the Dharma adepts from hundreds of miles away could see what was happening. Two purple-gold blade beams kept opening and closing up in the sky. Every time they did so, they would create a large hole on the firmament wall of myriad poisons. The cultivators from the various sects cried out in shock as thick poisonous fog surged out. Next, however, the poisonous fog would strangely retract back into the firmament wall. This purplish gold blade light broke the spiritual treasure in two? Finally, some cultivators recognized the blade light that kept closing in the sky. Now, this spiritual treasure in two was a famous pure yang spiritual treasure in the cultivation world. More importantly, this item's reputation was mostly built by the hands of the North Sea Water Sword Immortal. The various sects cultivators looked at Jiang Tianlin with all sorts of shocked and inexplicable expressions. Among these gazes, there was one thing that was the same. This guy actually did not die under the pursuit of the real spirit Laozu. Not only did he not die, but looking at the power of the pure yang spiritual treasure in two, it seemed that the North Sea Water Sword Immortal had been attacking the real spirit Laozu in the Crystal Palace. How could the North Sea Water Sword Immortal be so ferocious? At this time, compared to Jiang Tianlin, who was smiling and calm after letting out a sigh of relief, Yuan Feng Laozu was not as calm. Everyone could see that Yuan Feng Laozu's face was full of gloom. The real spirit Laozu was shameless enough to attack a junior pure yang cultivator. Not only did he not manage to finish him off, it also looked like he was being suppressed. Such a scene was enough for the Dharma adepts of the various sects to re-evaluate the situation before them, such as Laozu. From the looks of it, this guy from Zhenling sect is going to shatter the firmament poison wall. Many people also noticed the clues. If he was really going to fight the real spirit Laozu of the Crystal Palace, there was no need to make such a big scene. If the sky wall of poison is destroyed, what if the poisonous fog inside breaks out? I'm afraid the entire East Sea cultivation world will suffer. This was obviously a Dharma adept who was close to the Crystal Palace. His words were full of accusations against Lu Ping. Old Ancestor Azure Feather's expression changed at this moment, and he snorted coldly. Fool, don't you see that this myriad poison sky wall has already been riddled with holes by fellow Taoist Lu Tianping? Yet the poisonous mist hasn't dispersed from the beginning to the end. Chapter 1486. In the illusionary spirit palace, Sangyu Laozu, who had been silent ever since the news of Xiao Baiyu becoming a celestial spirit, suddenly rebuked others for Lu Ping. Jiang Tianlin understood, but he still thanked Sangyu Laozu for his generosity. However, before everyone could recover from the Water Sword Immortal's tyrannical strength, they first saw a sky-piercing sword light cut a huge hole in the sky wall of myriad poisons from the east to the west. Then they saw a strange Dharma manifestation dragon chasing after a pure yang flying sword as it flew out of the hole. Then, the two strangely combined into one and fiercely slashed at the sky wall of myriad poisons from the south to the north. One with the sword? Sangyu Laozu cried out in shock. His expression changed and no one knew what he was thinking. On the other hand, when the other great cultivators heard Sangyu Laozu say, "One with the sword," they were obviously shocked. One with the sword. Xiao Baiyu also exclaimed, but his tone was much more certain than Sangyu Laozu's, and his expression was also much more solemn. One with the sword. Yuanjiu Laozu first sighed, then said with a hint of inexplicable meaning, "Legend has it that Jiao Daoren once said, if one wants to break 10,000 laws with a single sword, one must first become one with the sword. I wonder what fellow Taoist Xiao thinks of this sword move of the Water Sword Immortal?" Xiao Baiyu's expression also made it impossible to tell what he was thinking. Hearing this he said, "Fellow Taoist Yuanjiu, you are wrong. One with the sword is already one sword to break 10,000 laws, but one sword to break 10,000 laws is not necessarily one with the sword. The Water Sword Immortal sword move has indeed reached an extremely high level of swordsmanship. It can be called one sword to break 10,000 laws." Yuanjiu Laozu laughed dryly and said, "I am too shallow. Fellow Taoist Xiao and Lu Daoyu are the real masters of swordsmanship in the cultivation world." Xiao Baiyu showed a rare trace of regret on his face and said, "Unfortunately, even though my natal flying sword is already a pure yang spirit treasure, it is still no match for Taoist whose heaven-opening overlord hammer. Otherwise, I might have a chance to experience Lu Daoyu's swordsmanship in the future." But then a powerful momentum surged around Xiao Baiyu again and said, "But Jiao Daoren didn't have a natal flying sword back then, but he still dominated the world with his swordsmanship. Only Peng Daoren suppressed him with his cultivation and heaven-opening first divine weapon, Seven Thunder Treasures Calabash. If Jiao Daoren can do that, I may not be inferior to Jiao Daoren in the future." Yuanjiu Laozu was very uncomfortable with Xiao Baiyu's momentum, but he still smiled apologetically and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, I admire you very much for your lofty ambitions." Xiao Baiyu did not appreciate his kindness and said coldly, "Fellow Taoist Yuanjiu, you should pay more attention to the mysterious existence you just mentioned. If I am not mistaken, it should be coming out soon." When Lu Ping broke the heavenly poison wall from the inside out with his swordsmanship for the first time, the breath of Longhuai ancestor's body leaked out, and Lu Ping had already noticed the great changes in the hollow. When the second sword move completely entered the realm of one sword to break all things, with the momentum of man and sword as one, the hollow was instantly covered with thunderclouds, and the breath of the tribulation thunder had increased to the point that even Lu Ping's heart palpitated. The aura of the tribulation thunder directly affected the area within a radius of 1,000 miles. Very soon Xiao Baiyu and Yuanjiu Laozu felt the huge aura of the tribulation thunder, and both of them retreated at the same time. At the same time both of them were bewildered. How could there be thunderclouds? It seemed unlikely that the mysterious existence was about to face the tribulation thunder, but the aura of the tribulation thunder in front of them was really too huge. Even the pure yang tribulation thunder that they had experienced before seemed to be far inferior to the current situation. But before the two of them could retreat too far, the heavenly poison wall, which had already been cut by Lu Ping at the top of the heavenly poison wall, finally began to collapse. Then they saw vigorous branches and green leaves that were almost covered by clouds fluttering in the sky. Is this a tree? The two true spirits, Laozu, who had retreated to avoid the aura of the tribulation thunder, revealed looks of bewilderment again. Then, as the heavenly poison wall continued to collapse, the figure of a towering tree that covered a radius of tens of miles became increasingly clear in front of the two true spirits, Laozu. What a towering tree! Could it be that there is such a towering tree hidden under the heavenly poison wall? The body of the Longhuai ancestor was so huge that the cultivators of the various sects in the Phantom Palace, who were hundreds of miles away, could see this towering tree, but not its crown. The heavenly poison wall, which had existed since Jiao Daoren opened up the East Sea cultivation world, actually had such a divine existence. At this time, the cultivators of the various sects in the Phantom Palace were not in the mood to discuss the distribution of spirit stones. If it were not for the powerful aura of the tribulation thunder sweeping over at this time, the various sects cultivators would have long rushed to the fallen secret land to observe this divine tree that had existed for an unknown number of years. Moreover, when the heavenly poison wall was covered in poisonous fog, it was a famous treasure land in the East Sea. Now that the heavenly poison wall had collapsed, who knew how many years of treasures had been hidden in it? However, at this time, the powerful aura of the tribulation thunder swept over thousands of miles. Even if the Dharma adepts of the various sects tried their best to suppress their aura, they could only watch the heavenly tree from hundreds of miles away from the Phantom Five Islands as it welcomed the tribulation thunder. They could not take a step forward. But at this time, what made the hearts of the various sects Laozu bleed was that when this unprecedented tribulation thunder fell, who knew how many of the treasures in the fallen secret land that had been nurtured for thousands of years would be destroyed and how many would be left? At this time, the various sects Laozu released their orders, ordering the disciples of their sects who had not advanced to the Dharma stage to take the risk to go to the fallen secret land. The cultivators who had not condensed their Dharma power would not be noticed by the tribulation thunder. As long as they were not too unlucky and were hit by the scattered power of the tribulation thunder, or deliberately set up by the person undergoing the tribulation, they would not be in too much danger if they went deep into the area covered by the tribulation thunder. However, if the various sects cultivators could think of this, how could Lu Ping, who had long planned to break the heavenly poison wall, not think of this? Although Lu Ping did not expect such a powerful tribulation thunder to fall after breaking the heavenly poison wall, there was no doubt that without the heavenly poison wall, the treasures in the fallen secret land would inevitably be crazily fought over by the various sects cultivators. Therefore, despite the tribulation thunder, Lu Ping immediately released Debao and the descendants of his treasure-seeking mice and the purple crystal bees. Although Debao had been running around with Lu Ping all these years, he had still given birth to more than a dozen treasure-seeking mice descendants on Huangli Island. These descendants multiplied on their own, and now Debao was the first patriarch of a huge treasure-seeking mouse family with 5 generations under the same roof, with a number of hundreds of treasure-seeking mice. However, without Lu Ping's support, with the treasure-seeking mice's low aptitude, and only with the help of Debao, these treasure-seeking mice had only been cultivated by Debao to the early core forging stage. There were more than a dozen treasure-seeking mice in the blood condensation stage, and the rest were just shrimp soldiers and crab generals in the blood refining stage. However, at this time, the treasure-seeking mice army formed by the younger generations of the treasure-seeking mice under Debao's command became Lu Ping's capable helpers in collecting the cultivation resources in the secret burial ground. Under Debao's command, the treasure-seeking mice army all burrowed underground after entering the secret burial ground. More than a dozen treasure-seeking mice in the blood condensation stage had a huge storage bag hanging around their necks. The treasures found by the other treasure-seeking mice were all handed over to these blood condensation stage treasure-seeking mice. Then, the two early core forging stage treasure-seeking mice took the more precious items from the treasure-seeking mice's storage bags for Debao to choose from, and the items Debao selected naturally had to be handed over to Lu Ping. As for the amethyst bees, Lu Ping hoped that the amethyst bee king could seize this opportunity to advance to the late Dharma stage. Otherwise, unless Lu Ping paid attention to the grotto heavens of the other holy lands where spirit herbs were cultivated, the amethyst bee king might not be able to advance in this world. However, at this time, Lu Ping had already left the secret burial ground where the tribulation clouds were condensing in the void. After all, as a pure young practitioner, he did not dare to stay too long under the lightning tribulation. Moreover, at this time he already knew why the Longhuai ancestor's lightning tribulation came so quickly. The Longhuai ancestor had been sealed in the firmament wall of poison for an unknown number of years, but it had been completely isolated from this world. However, the Longhuai ancestor did not know what kind of legacy it had cultivated, but it had not been affected by the lightning tribulation at all. However, the moment the Longhuai ancestor came into contact with the shackles, 3 lightning tribulations that it had never experienced since it was in the Dharma stage came at the same time. The power of this lightning tribulation was even many times stronger than the pure young lightning tribulation that Lu Ping and his natal flying sword had summoned at the same time. Lu Ping broke through the void and accurately arrived at the edge of the largest area that the lightning tribulation could reach, and very quickly found Xiao Baiyu and Yuanjiu Laozu, who were also at the edge. At this time Lu Ping was still fearless and smiled at the two. Xiao Baiyu responded with a smile while Yuanjiu Laozu seemed a little stiff. Lu Daoyu, do you know the background of this giant tree spirit demon? Xiao Baiyu asked. Lu Ping did not hide and answered with a smile, this is the Longhuai ancestor. Back when I entered the firmament wall of poison, I was taken care of by him and promised to help Laozu escape when I advanced to the pure yang stage in the future. Longhuai ancestor? Xiao Baiyu and Yuanjiu were obviously very unfamiliar with this name, but the information revealed in Lu Ping's words let the two know that Lu Ping did not come here by accident, but had planned for this long ago. Yuanjiu Laozu couldn't help asking, Lu Daoyu, do you know the origin of this thing and what is its cultivation? Lu Ping looked at Yuanjiu Laozu and said in a light voice, this one is not too clear on the origin of the Longhuai ancestor. As for its cultivation, you two are true spirit cultivators so you should be able to sense it. Xiao Baiyu smiled and said, this giant tree spirit demon's cultivation is higher than ours, but this lightning tribulation is a bit strange. Lu Ping did not respond to Xiao Baiyu's words, but said meaningfully, we are fighting in full swing, and I don't know how the cultivators of various sects in the Phantom Hall are discussing. Xiao Baiyu knew what was going on. Lu Ping had already shown his strength, so at this time, Skyren still needed to work with Jinling to restrict the Crystal Palace, so he said, I have to ask Yuanjiu to give up something this time. Chapter 1487. Yuan Tong Tian and the others watched as 3 late Dharma adepts from Tianling Island flew towards Jianghu Island. After a while, several more beams of light rose from Tianling Mountain. They were all late Dharma adepts from Jinling, and they also flew towards Jianghu Island. Yuan Tong Tian laughed and said, looks like Lu Tianping values the 7 stars cave heaven so much that Jinling does not dare to be careless. Although they did not send out all their forces, they sent all their elites. However, just as we expected, there is no one in charge of Tianling Mountain right now. Once the sect protecting formation is broken, Jinling will be like a stray dog waiting to be slaughtered. Yuan Feixiang also said, if that's the case we still need to end this quickly. Lin Yu Laozu has been forced by us, and he may not be willing to give his all. Yuan Dao Tian said directly to Yuan Feixiang, you don't need to go. Go and keep an eye on the Jinling adepts on Jianghu Island. If they notice that something is wrong and return, you can harass them along the way. Remember not to get surrounded. Yuan Feixiang was anxious and was about to argue, but unexpectedly Yuan Tongtian also said solemnly, this is your 7th great uncle's and my idea. Although we have a high chance of success this time, it may not be without risks. With your strength it doesn't matter if you go or not. However, the future of the Yuan family cannot be without you. You should understand your 7th great uncle's painstaking efforts. You don't need to go this time. Deng Tianming had used the purple gold scale left behind by Lu Ping as the core of the entire formation on Jianghu Island. While it had isolated and suppressed Lin Yu Laozu's natal spiritual treasure, it had also used the power of the formation to trap Lin Yu Laozu. He had attempted to use Lin Yu Laozu to activate the sacrificial secret technique and use Jianghu Island as a fulcrum to summon Failing Island to the surface. Originally, the formation on Jianghu Island was used to coordinate with Lu Ping's technique of changing seas and mulberry fields. According to Lu Ping's previous estimation, after he attained the pure Yang realm, he would indeed be able to use the power of the technique of changing seas and mulberry fields to free Failing Island from the seabed with the help of the formation. Although Lu Ping would definitely be exhausted after this and would probably need several years to recover, it was all worth it when compared to obtaining a huge and fertile island. However, after Lin Yu Laozu came to the North Sea and Lu Ping sensed that something was wrong, Lu Ping and Deng Tianming secretly set up a formation trap on Yankun Island and hid a sacrificial formation inheritance from Jioshuan Tower. With Lin Yu Laozu's strength, it was naturally impossible for him to activate the entire formation on Yankun Island. However, if the sacrificial secret technique was activated, Lin Yu Laozu, a pure Yang cultivator, would naturally be able to activate the formation. Although Lin Yu Laozu was a pure Yang cultivator and had obtained the inheritance from Jioshuan Tower, his strength had greatly increased over the past 100 years. However, his natal spiritual treasure was suppressed. He was also affected by the formation, and he had to deal with the siege of 3 great Jinling cultivators. He was already overwhelmed. When he heard Deng Tianming say sacrificial, he was even more terrified. Lin Yu Laozu had also obtained the inheritance from Jioshuan Tower, so he naturally knew the power of this sacrificial secret technique. Although he had not been able to see through the sacrificial formation that Jinling had secretly set up, he now understood everything. However, it was all too late. The enormous power of the formation had already completely engulfed Lin Yu Laozu. Under the siege of the 3 great Jinling cultivators, Lin Yu Laozu increasingly did not have the strength to break free from the sacrificial formation. The essential vitality in his bloodline, using the suppressed natal spiritual treasure as a medium, was continuously absorbed into the formation along with all the vitality in his body. The entire Yankun Island began to shake violently. The surrounding seawater was turbulent, and wave after wave surged towards the shore. Gradually it began to affect the inner parts of the island. The entire Yankun Island was slowly sinking. Do you think that you can obtain the 7 stars grotto heaven by scheming against the old man? Ah, you are too naive. I'm afraid that your nest has already been raided by others. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Lu Tianping may not have calculated everything perfectly. Lin Yu Laozu knew that he could no longer turn the situation around, so he simply let loose and cursed. However, he did not mention a word about the Yuan clan. At this moment he actually hoped that the Yuan clan would succeed. At the very least, they could not let these people in front of him have an easy time. Humph, who said that we are scheming against the 7 stars grotto heaven? Mei Tianqin had long been annoyed by Lin Yu Laozu's satisfied expression even at the brink of death. She snorted coldly, causing Lin Yu Laozu's expression to change. At this moment, Lin Yu Laozu could no longer maintain his body in the air. Under the pull of the formation's power, he continued to descend. More and more of the qi around his body was getting out of his control. Mei Tianqin and the other 2 great cultivators had already stopped. At this moment, even if Lin Yu Laozu wanted to self-destruct, he would not have the strength to do so. Lu Tianling smiled and said, I'll let Senior know that our sect is after Failing Island and not the 7 stars grotto heaven. The reason why my disciple told Senior that this island is related to the 7 stars grotto heaven is to confuse the Yuan clan behind Senior. Lin Yu Laozu's expression stiffened. It took him a while to figure out the cause and effect. It turned out that he had fallen into the other party's trap from the very beginning, but he didn't know it. Instead, he thought that he had succeeded. From beginning to end, Lin Yu Laozu, a dignified pure Yang cultivator, was merely a pawn in the game between the Jinling clan and the Yuan clan. Lin Yu Laozu couldn't help but laugh bitterly at the sky. He no longer resisted the formation's refinement, and in an instant his entire body was swallowed by the sacrificial formation. Just as Lin Yu Laozu was swallowed by the formation, huge waves suddenly appeared on the sea far away from Failing Island. Failing Island had already floated up from the depths of the sea and started to move towards Sky Spirit Island without leaving a trace. Along the way, the sea within a radius of several hundred kilometers was shaking and the sea was boiling. While the battle on Yankuan Island was raging, the 2 pure Yang cultivators from the Yuan clan suddenly arrived outside of Sky Spirit Island's sect-protecting formation. Half of the sky was covered by dark clouds, and lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the clouds. It was as if Junling would welcome a baptism of thunder and lightning in the next moment. Lu Qinyuan's figure floated above the sect-protecting formation as he shouted, "Which fellow Taoist has come to Junling to make such a joke? Please show yourself." Humph, Immature Dharma minor repairs. Is there no one left in Jinling? Call your elders out. A loud shout was like a thunderclap rumbling in the sky. Then a bolt of lightning fell from the sky. Fortunately, Lu Tianyuan had fallen from the sky, and the lightning was blocked by the sect-protecting formation. Otherwise, with the power from before, Lu Tianyuan knew that he would not have been able to withstand it. You run pretty fast, but if the old man breaks this turtle shell, I'd like to see where you can run to. After falling into the sect-protecting formation and dodging the bolt of lightning, Lu Tianyuan shouted, "Activate the sect-protecting formation at full power and send out a signal to summon the Dharma adepts of our sect. There's an enemy invading with lightning spells. I suspect it's the pure Yang cultivator Laozu. He must be from the Yuan clan of the Central Plains." As soon as Lu Tianyuan finished speaking, another 2 bolts of lightning fell from the sky like 2 centipedes crawling in the sky. Junling's sect-protecting formation was lit up by the lightning, and a huge amount of spiritual power was released from the formation. The entire formation looked as if it had been weakened by the lightning spells that fell from the sky. I didn't think that a mere North Sea Jinling could produce so many talents. A small mid-Dharma adept actually has such knowledge. It looks like there's a reason why Jinling rose to power in the North Sea. The one who spoke was another voice. The shock on Lu Tianyuan's face deepened, but he still tried his best to suppress the shock in his heart. He tried his best to use a calm tone to send a message to the high-level adept of Jinling on Tianling Mountain. 2 pure Yang cultivators from the Yuan clan have come to attack. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts fell, and the entire sky above Tianling Island had become an area of raging lightning. Although Jinling's sect-protecting formation was supported by a huge amount of spiritual energy, the core of the formation was only controlled by a few late Dharma adepts and a few second-generation adepts at the mid-Dharma stage. Among the third-generation disciples, other than Lu Ping, even Yin Tianchu did not know the true secret of Jinling's sect-protecting formation. Under the sudden attack of the 2 pure Yang cultivators, even though Jinling had adepts watching over the sect-protecting formation at all times, in a situation where there was no one to control it, the sect-protecting formation could only unleash a fraction of its power. Under the premeditated attacks of the 2 pure Yang cultivators, the sect-protecting formation was soon in danger. In the end, it's just the foundation of a medium-sized sect. Although they've put on the shell of a large sect and are even trying to covet the status of a Holy Land sect, this sect-protecting formation is the face of a sect. I don't know where Jinling gets his confidence from with such a sloppy sect-protecting formation. Yuan Dao Heaven had a sarcastic look on his face. He nodded at Yuan Tongtian and said, "There's no time to lose. Now that Jinling and the other great adepts have received the news and are rushing back, I'll go ahead and attack the formation first. Third brother, get ready to support me." Yuan Tongtian said, "Be careful." Yuan Dao Heaven laughed and said, "Without Lu Tianping, Jinling is nothing more than this." There was an explosion of thunder in the sky, and the whole world fell silent in an instant. In the void, a huge ball of lightning broke through the void and landed on the sect-protecting formation. As the huge ball of lightning fell, the layers of the formation's shields were like layers of wax that had come into contact with heat, and they were pierced through one after another. At this moment Lu Tianyuan shouted, 3 talents 5 elements Dao soldier formation rise. With Lu Tianyuan, Tianyong, Tianfeng, Li Tianru and Zhu Tianmeng as the leaders, 108 Jinling adepts joined forces to set up the Dao soldier formation on Tianling Mountain. They launched a joint attack and a giant ape formed in the void at the top of Tianling Mountain. It roared at the sky and then punched out. With a loud bang, the whole sky above Tianling Island was covered by a white light. The ball of lightning was destroyed by the giant ape before it could break through Jinling's sect-protecting formation. However, the moment the giant ape destroyed the ball of lightning, it also disappeared. The Dao soldier formation that Lu Tianyuan and the others had set up also collapsed, and many Jinling core forging adepts were even seriously injured by this attack. Chapter 1488. Yuan Dao Heaven's ball of lightning was unable to break through Jinling's grand spell formation. At that moment, another ball of lightning descended from the sky, transforming into a majestic lightning rock. Shockingly, it was none other than Yuan Heaven Span. Seeing that Yuan Dao Heaven had failed, he immediately rushed over to assist. With the 2 pure Yang experts working together, Jinling's grand spell formation had no chance of surviving. In the blink of an eye, Yuan Tongtian's Thunder Rock had already rushed into the sect-protecting array. The two pure yang experts instantly joined forces and were about to break Jinling's sect-protecting array. But at this critical moment, the sect-protecting formation shone brightly, and endless spirit qi flowed freely in the sect-protecting formation like a river that had been dredged. The Jinling sect-protecting formation, which had not been under anyone's control before, suddenly became smooth and came to life. Everyone in Jinling cheered. Clearly, some of the great cultivators from the sect had stepped forward to take charge of the sect's great defensive spell formation. Yuan Dao Heaven, who was hovering in midair, was shocked as well. Hadn't the great cultivators from Jinling already left Sky Spirit Mountain? How could there still be someone here to take charge of Jinling's great defensive spell formation? However, Yuan Tongtian snorted coldly and said, "Now that we have already broken into the formation, it is too late even if someone is in charge of the formation." The two pure yang experts raised their hands at the same time, and the thunderclouds in the sky churned and condensed, forming a huge gourd-shaped lightning calabash in midair. It looked quite similar to the Seven Treasures lightning calabash. However, the moment the thunder calabash formed in the void, a figure rose from Tianling Mountain. It was heavenly phenomenon Laozu, who was holding the second tribulation spiritual treasure left behind by Laozu, the Milky Way tablet, and headed towards the two pure yang cultivators from the Yuan family who had fallen into the sect-protecting array. "It's a celestial phenomenon. How could it be him? How did Jinling hide from our detection? Weren't the three rays of flowing light from before all at the late Dharma stage? Could it be that another grand cultivator has appeared in Jinling?" The appearance of celestial phenomenon made the two pure yang experts somewhat flustered and exasperated. The two of them were not afraid that celestial phenomenon Laozu could control the sect-protecting formation, but they were afraid that Jinling had once produced a true spirit Laozu. If Tai Laozu had really left behind some trump card for Jinling, then celestial phenomenon Laozu would definitely be the one who grasped this trump card. In fact, other than celestial phenomenon Laozu, all the other grand cultivators in Jinling were out. This indicated that the lifeline of Jinling was in his hands. "Third brother, break through it," Yuan Daotian said anxiously. "As long as you and I work together to break through the sect-protecting formation, Jinling will be at our mercy." Yuan Tongtian hurriedly pulled him back and said, "This time we're in trouble. Jinling must have already sensed this beforehand. Something must have happened at Jianghu Island. Be careful, they might have some backup plans. Feixiang is still near Jianghu Island. Let's retreat first, then we'll plan again later." The two of them worked together and used their lightning techniques to open a path out of the formation. When the two pure yang experts left, everyone in Jinling heaved a sigh of relief. But before they could regain their composure, they saw celestial phenomenon Laozu smiling coldly. He tossed out the Milky Way tablet in his hand, which was even higher than the lightning calabash. A door in the shape of the Milky Way tablet opened up, and a boundless flood descended from the sky, extinguishing the lightning calabash that was floating in midair. Then, like the Milky Way tablet, the flood crashed down on the heads of Yuan Tongtian and Yuan Daotian, who were rushing out of the formation. The Milky Way tablet that descended from the sky was like a flood that wanted to destroy the world. Its towering might caused the expressions of the two pure yang experts to change. How could a late Dharma adept use such a powerful divine ability? The two pure yang experts from the Yuan clan had no choice but to retreat in the face of the flood that descended from the sky. The two pure yang experts who had originally wanted to rush out of the formation, had no choice but to retreat back into the formation. Since they could not go out, they could only rush into Tianling Mountain. The two pure yang experts stared at the Milky Way tablet in celestial phenomenon Laozu's hand. This was definitely a treasure left behind by a celestial phenomenon. Even Lu Tianping would not be able to seal such a powerful divine ability on a treasure. This must be a trump card left behind by the only person in the history of Jinling, Laozu, who had achieved the celestial phenomenon. But at this time, although the two pure yang experts had no choice but to break through the protective formation to enter Tianling Island, they knew that celestial phenomenon Jinling had used a treasure left behind by a celestial phenomenon to force them back. It was definitely not a chance for them to rush into Tianling Mountain. Jinling must have prepared other trump cards that he was confident could hurt the two pure yang experts. Sure enough, under the nervous gazes of the two pure yang experts, celestial phenomenon Laozu held a feather that shone with a seven-colored brilliance in his hand. This was the life feather of Wan Daoist. One of the seventh patriarch Wan Daoist had personally sealed the heaven-splitting divine ability within it. Originally, The divine ability sealed in this life feather could only be forcibly opened by a cultivator with the Yuan bloodline who had been recognized. Celestial phenomenon Laozu did not have the Yuan bloodline, so it was naturally impossible for him to obtain the recognition of the feather. However, celestial phenomenon Laozu's cultivation level at the late Dharma stage could not forcibly open the divine ability sealed in the feather. But before Lu Ping went to the East Sea, he had left the two-life feather of Yuan Taoist in the sect. In this way, Mei Tianqin, Lu Tianling, and celestial phenomenon each had a life feather in their hands. This was also an important reason why Lu Ping was so confident in going to the North Sea. The feather flew up from celestial phenomenon Laozu's hand. But before the feather could change, celestial phenomenon Laozu's expression changed. The spiritual yuan around his body rushed out like a flood from a broken dam. Celestial phenomenon Laozu's face instantly turned pale, and he suddenly bent over and spat out a mouthful of blood. At this moment, the feather seemed to have been given life. A mysterious aura began to grow in the feather, as if an ancient existence was awakening. This mysterious existence made the two pure yang cultivators of the Yuan clan feel an unusual sense of fear. Then, in the eyes of the two pure yang cultivators, there was only the boundless sea of fire that shot up into the sky. The sect-protecting formation of Tianling Island was instantly burned through, and the surrounding space melted in the sea of fire released by the feather. The two pure yang cultivators of the Yuan clan tried their best to dodge, and they did not even hesitate to rush back into the Milky Way descending from the sky. However, the trump card that celestial phenomenon Laozu had left behind was instantly swallowed up by the sea of fire that shot up into the sky. Only thunderbolts were left in the sea of fire that filled the void, but in the end, they still could not break through the shackles of the sea of fire. The two dignified pure yang cultivators, who were like the pillars of the number one clan in the cultivation world, could not fight back at all in the face of this seemingly ordinary sea of fire. They were drowned in the sea of fire that shot up into the sky from the feather just like that. If the two pure yang cultivators were said to feel extremely aggrieved as they silently perished in this seemingly ordinary sea of fire without any struggle, they could clearly feel the power of the fire that burst out from the feather when they looked at the sky again. The surging Milky Way was also a trump card that celestial phenomenon Laozu had left behind for Jinling in the past, but in the face of the sea of fire that shot up into the sky, the entire Milky Way was instantly roasted into white fog that filled the sky. If celestial phenomenon Laozu had not woken up from the power of the sea of fire at this time and did not hesitate to use up his natal essential essence to retrieve the Milky Way in time, this second tribulation spiritual treasure that celestial phenomenon Laozu had left for Jinling would also have perished in the sea of fire. The immense power of the natal plume made all the thousands of Jinling cultivators on Tianling Mountain speechless. Everyone was shocked by the power of the heaven and earth displayed by the heaven-splitting remarkable power. The two pure yang cultivators were burned into nothingness without any struggle. The Milky Way left behind by celestial phenomenon Laozu was instantly burned into nothingness. The area where Jinling's sect protection formation was pierced by the sea of fire was burned into nothingness along with the void. Even now, it could not recover on its own and could only be rearranged and repaired after the space stabilized. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the rainbow-colored plume that floated down leisurely after the sea of fire in the sky subsided. The plume landed in celestial phenomenon Laozu's hand. The originally smooth and mysterious feather was still rainbow-colored, but that was only the original color of the plume. The originally mysterious aura also became obscure, making it look like an ordinary feather. Even if the heaven-splitting remarkable power sealed within such a treasure could not recover, the plume itself was still a top-notch heavenly treasure in this world. Celestial phenomenon Laozu carefully kept the plume. Only then did he realize that Jinling had not yet recovered from the shock. His expression immediately darkened as he said, "What are you still standing there for?" Tianling Mountain was instantly in an uproar. It took Yuan Feixiang quite some time to sneak to the vicinity of Yankuan Island. Jinling seemed to not care about the sea from Tianling Island to Yankuan Island, but in fact he was very cautious on the inside. Although Yuan Feixiang was a top-notch great cultivator in the cultivation world, it was not easy for him to avoid Jinling's hidden guards without making a sound. However, when he arrived near Yankuan Island, everything that unfolded in front of him shocked him greatly. Lingyu Laozu, a dignified pure yang cultivator, was now completely trapped in a formation. His whole body was wrapped in the brilliance of the formation, turning into a huge cocoon that was at the mercy of others. There were only two great cultivators in front of him. One was Jinling sect master Lu Tianling, and the other was Mei Tianqin. However, he clearly saw the escape lights of 3 great cultivators before, but now there was no trace of the 3rd great cultivator. Could it be that the 3rd great cultivator died in the battle just now? At this moment, Yuan Feixiang suddenly noticed that Yankuan Island below him, a medium-sized island with a circumference of more than 100 miles, was actually slowly sinking into the sea. Yuan Feixiang suddenly felt his heart palpitate. At this moment, a sharp murderous intent suddenly enveloped Yuan Feixiang. I've been discovered. Yuan Feixiang was not shocked but happy. The 3rd great cultivator has finally appeared. Could this person be celestial phenomenon Laozu? As expected of the person who pushed Jinling's rise behind the scenes. This kind of murderous intent is really ruthless. But why does this person's aura feel so familiar? Chapter 1489. Yuan Feixiang quickly retreated. That attack that was filled with killing intent landed on empty air, revealing the figure hidden in the void, causing Yuan Feixiang to be greatly shocked. Yin Tianchu, it's actually Yin Tianchu, not celestial phenomenon Laozu. Where did celestial phenomenon Laozu go? Yuan Feixiang instantly thought of the crux of the matter. Celestial phenomenon Laozu definitely didn't participate in the siege of Jinkuan Island. That beam of light that attacked Linyu Laozu was actually Yin Tianchu. Celestial phenomenon Laozu was definitely still guarding Sky Spirit Island. Yuan Feixiang had already guessed the cause and effect in an instant. It was just that he didn't expect that Yin Tianchu wasn't among the 3 beams of light. Instead, it was Deng Tianming who used the aura of the violet gold scales to confuse the senses of Yuan Feixiang and the others. Not good. With celestial phenomenon Laozu guarding, Jinling's sect protecting formation would definitely be impregnable. If that Grand Ginseng Laozu of Jinling left behind some trump card, it wouldn't be easy for the 2 granduncles to break Jinling's sect protecting formation. If the battle dragged on, there might even be an accident. No, he must return to Sky Spirit Island as soon as possible. The moment Yuan Feixiang thought of this, he immediately tried to retreat. However, at this time, the dust of Jinling's sacrificial formation had already settled. Linyu Laozu would no longer be able to escape death. Once Jinling Island and Sky Spirit Island merged into one, Linyu Laozu's pure yang body would transform into an artifact spirit similar to the artifact spirit on Jinling's treasure ship. He would then be used to guard Jinling's new training ground. Other than Deng Tianming, who still had to maintain the formation, Mei Tianqin, Lu Tianling, and Yin Tianchu immediately joined hands to catch up to Yuan Feixiang. Although Yuan Feixiang was one of the few young elites in this world, he was powerless against the joint attack of 3 powerful cultivators. Fortunately, he had decided to retreat from the beginning, so he did not fall into the encirclement of the 3 powerful cultivators. Moreover, the Yuan clan's lightning escape technique was also very powerful, so he managed to escape. And this escape was not just limited to escaping from Yankuan Island. In the East Sea, the secret graveyard had also turned into a land of thunder. Not only were the illusionary spirit island's dharma characteristics Laozu shocked, even Lu Ping, Yuan Jiao, and Xiao Baiyu, the 2 true spirit cultivators hiding hundreds of kilometers away, had solemn expressions on their faces. Even the double pure yang lightning tribulation that Lu Ping had undergone in the abundant jade swamp could not compare to such a tyrannical lightning tribulation. The 3 of them looked at the scene in front of them with different thoughts in their minds. At the Dharma characteristic stage, there is no lightning tribulation, but it does not affect the growth of one's cultivation at all. Once the sky poison wall is broken, all the lightning tribulation will descend at the same time. What a strange cultivation method. Since the creation of the 7th patriarch, has there been such a magical cultivation method passed down in the cultivation world? Xiao Baiyu said to Yuan Jiao Laozu with half a sigh and half a question in his voice. The ones who had the most secrets in the cultivation world were probably the Holy Land sects that had been passed down since the creation of the world. Yuan Jiao Laozu shook his head and said, I have never heard of such a magical cultivation method, but the power of this lightning tribulation is not as simple as the sum of the 3 Dharma lightning tribulations. Mr. Xiao, you and I are now true spirits. What are the chances of us winning against such a lightning tribulation with our current strength? Xiao Baiyu's face showed a contemplative look, but he did not give an answer. His expression was extremely ugly, and after a long time he said, Mr. Yuan Jiao, you mean that the spirit tree demon that summons the lightning tribulation is not weaker than you and me? Yuan Jiao Laozu shook his head and said, it can only be stronger. At this point there is nothing for the old man to hide. 8,000 years ago, there was an existence like you and me who had just become true spirit in our sect. He once secretly sneaked into the secret graveyard, and then there were 2 pure young cultivators who helped him. Oh? What was the result? Xiao Baiyu was startled and he could not help but ask. Even Lu Ping showed a solemn expression. Yuan Jiu Laozu looked bitter and said, "They did not come back, all 3 of them did not come back. You have to know that that was 8,000 years ago. What about now?" 8,000 years ago, the Longhuai ancestor mentioned by Lu Ping had killed a true spirit existence, plus 2 pure young cultivators. 8,000 years later, to what extent would the strength of the Longhuai ancestor grow? After a long time, Xiao Baiyu could not help but say, "Lu Xiaoyu, do you know the background of this Longhuai ancestor? Do you understand what it means for such a person to suddenly appear in the cultivation world?" Lu Ping's expression was calm and no one could tell what he was thinking. He just said lightly, "It is too late to say anything now. However, such an existence has been in the cultivation world for countless years. I am afraid there are more secrets hidden in his body than the Holy Land. Why would he set his eyes on this world?" Xiao Baiyu and Yuan Jiu Laozu's expression relaxed. To put it bluntly, with their current status and knowledge, they no longer set their eyes on this world. If it was not for the concern of their sect, they were afraid that they would have gone to the North Ice Field long ago. This world was no longer a challenge for them. Instead, it had become an obstacle that hindered them from going further. The Longhuai ancestor had lived alone in the sky wall of infinite poison for countless years. Even though he had been freed from the shackles, his tyrannical strength would not allow him to stay in this world. If there was no spirit space for him to hide in, and now that the sky wall of infinite poison had been broken, he would probably have gone to the North Ice Field much faster than Xiao Baiyu and the others. As the 3 of them spoke, the 7th tribulation lightning bolt had already descended from the sky. However, after the 7th tribulation lightning bolt, the silhouette of the Longhuai tree could still be vaguely seen amidst the sea of lightning that filled the sky. Clearly, the 7 mighty tribulation lightning bolts did not cause too much damage to Patriarch Longhuai. The 8th tribulation lightning fell. It was also a celestial river of lightning. However, this celestial river of lightning was even more majestic. From afar, the giant tree seemed to reach straight into the sky. From the beginning, the celestial river of lightning descended along the giant tree, like a majestic waterfall of lightning. Not to mention the cultivators from the various sects who were hiding in the illusionary spirit palace. Even Lu Ping and the others were dumbfounded by this scene. As the celestial river of lightning crashed down, they could occasionally see countless branches and leaves that were no weaker than the trunk of an ordinary tree. They were surrounded by lightning as they fell from the giant tree. However, before they could land on the ground, they would ignite into a raging fire and be reduced to ashes after a while. Although the branches and leaves that were struck down by the heavenly river of lightning were huge, in the eyes of Lu Ping and the others who were watching from a few hundred miles away, they were nothing more than inconspicuous branches of a giant tree that had been struck down by the heavenly river of lightning. They were nothing more than a few sparks in front of the heavenly river of lightning. In the blink of an eye, the heavenly river of lightning destroyed the branches and leaves. In the end, the 8th lightning bolt had managed to damage the ancient dragon scholar tree to a certain extent. After the celestial river of lightning dissipated, the ancient dragon scholar tree, which had been green and brimming with life force, was now in a state of disarray. Its massive and plump treetop was now filled with holes and the raging flames gave the ancient dragon scholar tree a blackish-gray color. Every now and then, rotten branches and tendrils would fall from the giant tree. Suddenly, however, a surging wave of vitality burst out from the ancient dragon scholar tree. The flames that were burning on the treetop were gradually extinguished. After the rotten branches and tendrils fell, the greenery hidden beneath the branches and tendrils were revealed once more. Moments later, the ancient dragon scholar tree still appeared to be in a wretched state. However, despite the lack of a plump treetop, more powerful branches could be seen. The largest branches that extended out from the main trunk looked like a massive wood WRM that was ready to pounce. The Longhuai ancestor was born in the fallen secret land, which has a lot to do with Jiao Doran's injury in the cultivation world when he opened up the overseas cultivation world by himself. In this case, is the Longhuai ancestor really inextricably linked with Jiao Doran? Xiao Baiyu was asking Yuan Jiu Laozu as well as Lu Ping. The Crystal Palace should have the clearest insight into the legend of the fallen secret land since the beginning of the world, while Lu Ping had a close relationship with the Longhuai ancestor. Naturally, Xiao Baiyu had to ask them for confirmation. Yuan Jiu Laozu hesitated for a moment before nodding slightly. Judging from the secret books handed down by our sect, it seems that Taoists who had some scruples and speculations about the fallen secret land. However, I don't know why, even when Jiao Daoren went north to open up the North Sea cultivation world, Taoist who did not personally enter the fallen secret land to investigate. Compared with Yuan Jiu Laozu's hesitation, Lu Ping was much more straightforward. Although Senior Long Huai was born as a spirit demon, he has the bloodline inheritance of the WRM. After saying this, Lu Ping seemed to have expected the two's reaction and immediately said, "Don't ask me, I don't know why. Maybe Senior Long Huai really has a close relationship with Jiao Daoren, but I have never asked about this." As the three of them spoke, the last tribulation thunder was ready to be launched. The tribulation clouds in the sky had shrunk into a ball, and finally, a huge lightning droplet was squeezed out in the sky, swaying and hanging under the tribulation clouds that had condensed to the extreme, undulating and shrinking in all directions, constantly changing shape as if it would fall at any time. In the end, the lightning bead fell to the ground. Even though the dragon scholar tree looked as if it was connected to the sky, when the lightning bead fell to the ground, it expanded to a size that was large enough to swallow the entire dragon scholar tree. Huge explosions of thunder rose and fell, shaking the area within 1,000 miles. The legendary roar that came from the thunder bead made all the cultivators above the Dharma manifestation stage in this area feel a kind of fear that came from their bloodline. This feeling was very familiar to Lu Ping, but the moment the giant Long Huai tree let out the roar, it emitted a kind of domineering and excited feeling. Compared to the mysterious and wonderful feeling of the Dharma power of the dragon, although it was more powerful, it lacked a trace of mystery. At this time, in the space of Lu Ping's core, because of the roar coming from the thunder bead, the Dharma power of the dragon circled around, as if it also wanted to rush out of the body and let out a roar, as if it wanted to echo the existence that was trapped by the thunder bead. Chapter 1490. With a loud roar, the huge thunder ball exploded in an instant, and a green flood dragon hovered in the sky. The weather changed, and the lightning in the secret permafrost gradually dissipated. However, the giant tree that stood there had disappeared at this time. No one thought that the mysterious existence had failed to pass the tribulation. Everyone looked at the green flood dragon that was flying up and down in the void, swallowing a huge amount of pure yang qi. At this time, the heavenly flower dew that fell from the sky was like a light rain, but the green flood dragon did not absorb it. Instead, it let the heavenly flower dew fall into the secret permafrost. Its body was like a snake, its horns like a rhinoceros, its eyes like an eagle, its feet like a crocodile, its head like a camel, and its scales like a carp. This green flood dragon itself had many similarities with Lu Ping's dragon Dharma form. However, it was still different in essence. Long Huai ancestor might not even be aware of this, but Lu Ping knew it in his heart. It has broken away from the shackles of the body and directly transformed into a real spirit. Yuan Jiu Laozu sighed, but there was a flash of fear in his expression. As soon as Yuan Jiu Laozu's voice fell, the green flood dragon in the void had finished absorbing the pure yang qi, and the heavenly flower dew that fell from the sky had all melted into its body. At this moment, Yuan Jiu Laozu, Lu Ping, and Xiao Baiyu all changed their expressions. First, the broken sword that was smashed by Danju Laozu hovered around Xiao Baiyu, but it was quickly suppressed by Xiao Baiyu and then taken back. Then Yuan Jiu Laozu seemed to be unable to suppress the riot of the Overlord Hammer. The crystal hammer head was raised high, and it was eager to try in the direction of Long Huai ancestor's green flood dragon. It seemed that the hammer would fall at any time. Although Yuan Jiu Laozu tried his best to control it, the Overlord Hammer had just been obtained, and it had not been refined by him yet. Moreover, it was not his spiritual treasure, so he could not completely control this Overlord Hammer. Only Lu Ping maintained a calm expression after a moment of shock. Then he looked at the two people beside him with a hint of surprise. However, at this time in Lu Ping's core space, not only was the Jinling sword humming, but the dragon Dharma form was also tumbling up and down. The light on the surface of the two colorful feathers was constantly flickering, and at the same time, a handkerchief wanted to fly out of the core space. However, the dragon Dharma form was ultimately Lu Ping's Dharma form, and the sword of true soul was also Lu Ping's natal flying sword. At this time, although both of them wanted to fly out of Lu Ping's body to respond to that familiar existence, under Lu Ping's strong suppression, they obediently stayed in the core space. Although Taoist Luan's ability to split the heavens was sealed in the two natal plume feathers, just like the handkerchief, the strength of the plume feathers was clearly too inferior. Before they could break free from the core space, they were suppressed by the primary time bead and the white jade lotus flower formation. This feeling was very familiar to Lu Ping. Back then, when Lu Ping used the Horn of True Soul to refine his natal flying sword on Kongming Island, the moment the sword was formed, the world responded. At this time, facing the green flood dragon whose body had completely transformed into a true soul, this feeling was no different from when the Sword of True Soul was formed. At the same time, when the Longhuai ancestor transformed into a flood dragon, the strange large whirlpool in the depths of the East Sea appeared again. 3 skin-like flood dragon phantoms were thrown into the air, but this time they were a little more agile. The dragon sculpture hidden on the 9-dragon bell in the void of the North Sea's Huangli Island suddenly swam on the bell's wall as if it had gone crazy, and even wanted to completely break away from the 9-dragon bell's body. In the void, the vast sound of the bell resounded throughout the world. All the cultivators on Huangli Island looked up, but they saw nothing. Only the sound of the bell continued to ring. At this time in the South Sea's illusory land of 5 elements, Skyward Pavilion, Lingyun Valley, Endless Mountain, Wuxing School, Spirit Beast Sect, Yuan Clan's Ancestral Land, Purple Sun Palace, and the Northern Ice Plains Great Spiritual Ape Clan's Towering Peak, there were similar vast phenomena appearing. It seemed to be echoing, welcoming, or warning something. After wasting 30,000 years, I still can't become a dragon. A long sigh rang out from the void, and the green flood dragon turned into a middle-aged man with an elegant appearance. He slowly descended from the void, walking towards Lu Ping and the others. The Longhuai ancestor's gaze skipped over Lu Ping and landed on Yuanjiu Laozu. Yuanjiu Laozu felt as if he had been seen through in an instant. The crystal palace floating above his head seemed to have a natural hatred for the Longhuai ancestor. It would smash down from time to time in an attempt to intimidate him, but it also seemed to be rather fearful of him. The Longhuai ancestor looked at the Overlord's hammer, and a trace of deep nostalgia flashed through his eyes. However, he immediately frowned as if he wanted to completely dispel this feeling. He said, "The Mother Insect's hammer? It's a pity that you, as an inheritor, seem to be lacking. You can't even use 30% of its power. It seems that you took a shortcut to become a true soul?" Yuanjiu Laozu's expression changed. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but after the Longhuai ancestor finished speaking, he seemed to lose interest in Yuanjiu Laozu. Instead he looked curiously at Xiao Baiyu and said, "Oh, you're a little interesting. A true soul that you worked so hard to become has some potential. As the inheritor of the mixed hairy bird, you actually learned the sword techniques of his old enemy. And you've learned it quite well. Even your natal flying sword is broken." Xiao Baiyu seemed to have heard something from the Longhuai ancestor's words. He immediately asked, "May I ask what relationship Senior has with the 7th Patriarch?" Yuanjiu Laozu was worried for Xiao Baiyu. It was a taboo to directly ask about someone else's background. The person in front of him was an existence that could even kill a true soul. Now that he had broken through to become a true soul, his strength had increased to an unknown level. What would happen if he killed someone in a fit of rage? It was fine if he killed Xiao Baiyu, but what if he dragged him into it? He never thought that the Longhuai ancestor would not hide this at all. He said, "He, the 7th Patriarch of the Sky Creator, you've endured 30,000 years of glory, but what happened to you? It's true that the old man's background originated from Jiao Daoren, but the old man is not him. He only carries a part of his memories." Even so, the information and identity revealed by the Longhuai ancestor was enough to shock Yuanjiu and Xiao Baiyu. Could it be that the 7th Patriarch of the Sky Creator had never left this world? According to the Longhuai ancestor, it seemed that the situation of the 7 Laozu was not good. The Longhuai ancestor seemed to have been given life by Jiao Daoren and even directly inherited Jiao Doran's memories. However, he was different from Jiao Daoren and had independent thoughts and consciousness. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. He thought about the doppelganger secret technique that the Longhuai ancestor had passed on to him, and a bold idea popped up in his mind. Could it be? At this moment, the Longhuai ancestor suddenly turned around and looked at Yuanjiu Laozu with a faint smile. "You seem to be afraid?" At the end of the day, the Origin Wine ancestor was a peak existence in this world, so he naturally had his pride and dignity. He only smiled and said, "Your existence and strength seem to exceed what this world can bear by far too much. In truth, you can be said to be an accident of this world. May I ask, which peak existence and faction in this world would not be afraid of you?" The Longhuai ancestor ignored Yuanjiu Laozu's words. Instead, he seemed to recall something and suddenly came to a realization. The old man remembers now. 8,000 years ago, there seemed to be a practitioner of the same origin as you who broke into this secret perished place and tried to cut down the old man's body. In the end, he was suppressed by the old man and used as fertilizer. You are afraid because of this. Yuan Jiu Laozu's expression changed. When he was about to explain, he saw that the Longhuai ancestor had turned his head and ignored him. Instead, he looked at Lu Ping strangely and said, "You are an anomaly. I didn't expect that the legacy left by that person who enlightened the creatures in this world could create an existence like you who is comparable to the old man. You have that person's breath on you. It seems that you have inherited that person's item. But why do you still have the breath of that sparrow?" At this time, Lu Ping had figured out what the Longhuai ancestor called the sky-opening Laozu. The female insect should be Taoist Hu, and the sky-opening artifact in his possession had always been kept in the Crystal Palace. The mixed-haired bird should be Jiao Doran's sworn enemy, Ping Daoran. After all, the Longhuai ancestor was a creature personally created by Jiao Daoran. Although Lu Ping suspected that Jiao Daoran had long been the original intention of the Longhuai ancestor, it was obvious that the Longhuai ancestor also hated Ping Daoran. Xiao Baiyu was of the rock bloodline, but he was addicted to the swordsmanship inheritance of Jiao Daoran, so obviously the Longhuai ancestor did not like him either. As for the cake, it must be referring to the Luan Daoist. Lu Ping had the Luan Daoist's natal feather and the handkerchief with Jiao Doran's handwriting on it. It was inevitable that the Luan Daoist's breath was detected by the Longhuai ancestor. In the beginning, the 7 of them were ambitious and wanted to create a new world. However, there were still some shortcomings. The spiritualist clan was weak and neglected, and became the meat of the 2 races. The K-er was the most merciful, leaving the Wood Luan bloodline to take care of the spiritualist clan's growth in an attempt to make the 2 races mutually beneficial. Unexpectedly, the 2 races almost suffered a disaster. As the Longhuai ancestor spoke to the 3 people, he reached out and lifted his hand towards the secret perished land. The heavenly poisonous wall that had been smashed by Lu Ping rose up again and gradually closed. He said, "It is difficult for the spiritualist clan to grow, and it is even more difficult for them to communicate. The old man intends to let the secret perished land become the habitat of the spiritualist clan again, and neither the human nor the demon race can invade it. What do the 3 of you think?" Yuan Jiu Laozu said, "With senior's protection, no one dares to enter the secret perished land." Lu Ping saw that although the heavenly poisonous wall had risen again, the poisonous mist that had originally filled the secret perished land did not appear again. He pondered for a moment and said, "I also have 2 cultivators of the spiritualist clan under my command. I have no objection to opening up a habitat for the spiritualist clan. However, as Senior Yuan Jiu said, with Senior Longhuai's protection, the secret perished land is naturally impregnable. However, if Senior leaves, although the heavenly poisonous wall can block Dharma forms, it cannot block pure yang." Xiao Baiyu said, "However, I'm afraid that the 3 of us agreeing is not enough. The spiritualist clan has always been a rare treasure in the eyes of the human and demon races. We can at most restrain the cultivators of the North Sea and East Sea, but the cultivators of the other regions are powerless." Chapter 1491. The Longhuai ancestor wanted to open up a pure land for the spirit demon clan. To be honest, several people including Lu Ping, did not agree with it. It was not that Lu Ping did not support it, but as the 3 people had said before, Lu Ping did not think that without the Longhuai ancestor, everything in the perished secret land could still be preserved. Unless the perished secret land could establish a perfect spirit demon inheritance system like the human clan sections. However, the spirit demon clan was different from the human clan and the demon clan. The human clan and the demon clan could awaken their spiritual wisdom on their own, but the spirit demon clan could only rely on luck to awaken their spiritual wisdom on their own. Therefore, it was extremely difficult for the spirit demon clan to achieve this. The Longhuai ancestor obviously understood the meaning of the 3 people's words. He smiled and said, "I want you to restrain the disciples of the sect not to protect the spirit demon clan, but to avoid the deaths and injuries of the cultivators in your sect." Seeing the slightly stunned expressions of the 3 people, the Longhuai ancestor smiled and said, "The old man has been in the perished secret land for more than 30,000 years. Because of the existence of the sky wall of poison, he could not summon the thunder retribution, so he could not completely break away from the shackles of his body. In order to pass the boring time, the old man has also taught many of the younger generation in the secret land. Their cultivation has accumulated enough, and the only thing they need is to experience the thunder retribution to break away from the shackles of their bodies." Lu Ping had entered the perished secret land and saw the original body of the Longhuai ancestor, but he had never seen the existence of other spirit demons. Now that he thought about it, it was obviously deliberately done by the Longhuai ancestor. But now that the sky wall of poison has completely fallen into the control of the old man, some of the younger generation who have received guidance from the old man can summon the thunder retribution at any time and transform into human form. Although the old man's original body could not leave the sky wall of poison, he once traveled the world with his incarnation. Within 100 years, the perished secret land can produce more than 20 Dharma adepts, many of whom are at the pure yang level. In this world, this is equivalent to an existence close to a holy land. It can completely establish its own clan in the East Sea. What do you think? The three of them were all shocked. Within 100 years, the perished secret land could produce more than 20 Dharma adepts. If it had been anyone else, the three would have scoffed. If it had been someone else, they would have been disdainful. However, from the existence in front of them, they would have been convinced. However, after thinking about it carefully, it seemed that what the Longhuai ancestor said was not impossible. The spirit demon clan was originally a plant, wood, bamboo, and stone that absorbed the spirit chi of heaven and earth and gained sentience. Although the speed of cultivation was far inferior to that of humans and demons, the spirit demon clan also had a long lifespan that humans and demons could not compare to. The Longhuai ancestor had been operating in the perished secret land for 30,000 years, and he said that he was a creature that Jiao Daoren had personally created and even inherited Jiao Doran's own memories. To a certain extent, the Longhuai ancestor could even be considered a clone of Jiao Daoren. It was just that this clone now seemed to have its own sentience and consciousness, and had broken away from Jiao Doran's control. It was naturally not surprising that such an existence could plot such a situation. However, when the three of them heard what the Longhuai ancestor said, although they were all shocked, their expressions were different. Lu Ping's own surprise was more than his other thoughts. Although the rise of the spirit demon clan would have a major impact on Donghai, and even the entire cultivation world, for Jinling who dominated the North Sea cultivation world, this impact was not strong. Moreover, with the friendship between Lu Ping and the Longhuai ancestor, the rise of the spirit demon clan would have a minimal impact on Jinling. Compared to Lu Ping, the expression on Yuan Jiu Laozu's face was somewhat ugly. For a long time, the Crystal Palace had dominated Donghai. Although there were several sects that hindered them, the situation in Donghai had always been firmly in the hands of the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace's control of the situation had also reached its peak after the collapse of the Northern Alliance. At this time, the Crystal Palace had destroyed the Northern Alliance, split the sky, invaded North Sea, and entered the central mainland with monstrous power. Even the Holy Land of the central mainland was very afraid of the Crystal Palace and did not dare to confront it head-on. They could only support the coastal sects behind the scenes to stop the invasion of the Crystal Palace. However, after the collapse of the Northern Alliance, Xiao Baiyu, who had been dormant for 200 years, suddenly returned with a pure yang body. Soon, the Crystal Palace suffered a series of setbacks in North Sea, and the expansion of the central mainland also stagnated. After that, the 5 major sects joined forces. Not only did the Crystal Palace's influence in the central mainland suffer a great setback, even the Donghai, which was regarded as the backyard of the Crystal Palace, was invaded one after another. Tianxian sect, Tianyue sect, and Jinling's influence entered Donghai one after another. Even so, the Crystal Palace still had the upper hand in Donghai. Until the 10 pure Yangs joined forces to destroy the 9 mystical tower, the situation of the entire cultivation world changed drastically. Only then did the Crystal Palace realize the coming crisis when the 9 mystical towers' inheritance of the real soul was leaked. Skyrind, Jinling, Tianxian sect, and Tianyue sect all obtained the inheritance of the 9 mystical tower. However, these 4 sects all had incomparable advantages compared to other large sections. Especially when Skyrind obtained the 9 mystical towers mini-kiliacosm. Seeing that a new Holy Land sect was about to be born in Donghai, the Crystal Palace had no choice but to take the risk. They took advantage of the opportunity when the Yuan Wine Laozu achieved the real soul and tried to kill Xiao Baiyu and Lu Tianping with the help of 2 real soul cultivators. Unexpectedly, the Crystal Palace's plan still failed in the end. Not only was Xiao Baiyu forced to achieve the real soul, but Lu Tianping also broke through the sky poison wall and released an even more terrifying existence. Moreover, this Longhuai ancestor wanted to build another force in Donghai that could rival the Holy Land. The rise of the spiritualist clan was bound to weaken the Crystal Palace's interests in Donghai. Even so, it had a direct impact on Skyrend. However, this was the most unacceptable for the Crystal Palace, which had always regarded Donghai as their own backyard. Compared to the Yuan Wine Laozu's ugly expression, Xiao Baiyu's expression was also full of solemnity. However, they both knew that in front of such a powerful Longhuai ancestor, they had to accept this condition. At least when the Longhuai ancestor was still in this world, no one could stop the rise of the spiritualist clan. Could it be that this Longhuai ancestor also had a mini-kiliacosm or other means to escape from the exclusion of this world? Xiao Baiyu's heart skipped a beat. If the Longhuai ancestor was really a bloodline clone of Jiao Daoren, then this person should be treated as an immature Jiao Daoren. Therefore, it was not surprising that the Longhuai ancestor had such means. While the cultivation world of the East Sea was similarly vast, compared to the Central Plains, it was already at its limit to withstand the combined forces of the three Holy Lands, Water Crystal Palace, Jade Sea Spirit Serpent and Heavenly Splitting Sword Sect. If the Spirit Yao clan, which was on par with the Holy Lands, were to be added to the mix, then the rich East Sea would become lacking in various cultivation resources. Under the pressure of the five sects previously, the Crystal Palace seemed to be restrained everywhere. However, most of the important resources that were related to the lifeblood of the cultivation world of Donghai were still controlled by the Crystal Palace. After Xiao Baiyu became a true spirit, Skyrend was bound to be unable to get help from the other four sections. It could only rely on its own strength to compete with the Crystal Palace. But now, with the addition of the spiritualist clan, Xiao Baiyu also had a resentment towards Lu Ping for no reason. Why did he break the heavenly poison wall for no reason? Xiao Baiyu also knew that this resentment was really unreasonable. Not to mention that Lu Ping was on the verge of death when he was chased by the Yuanjiu Laozu. He had no choice but to seek the help of the Longhuai ancestor. Even if Lu Ping did not break the heavenly poison wall in the end, there would be people like Zhang Ping and Li Ping who would break the seal later. Perhaps Donghai was still too small for the Sky-Splitting Sword Sect. Perhaps it was time for the Sky-Splitting Sword Sect to turn its attention to the Central Plains. The Sky-Splitting Sword Sect was originally a sect from the Central Plains. Even though it had moved overseas for many years, the Sky-Splitting Sword Sect had never forgotten its origins. Otherwise, Xiao Baiyu would not have attacked the Purple Sun Palace alone. However, if it entered the central mainland now, although there was a power vacuum after the destruction of the Nine Xuanwu Tower at this time, whether it was Tianshan Sect, Tianyue Sect, Wuxing School, Skyward Pavilion, Lingyun Valley, or other forces of the central mainland, they were all constantly infiltrating the power vacuum of the Nine Xuanwu Tower. At this time, if Skyrend intervened forcefully, if it did not seize the opportunity, it was very likely that it would backfire. Not only would it fall out with Tianshan Sect and Tianyue Sect, it might even cause the forces of the central mainland to give up fighting and unite against the foreign forces. A few words from Longhuai ancestor had caused the two celestial spirits, Laozu, to think so much. It might even cause a huge upheaval in the cultivation world in the future. However, at this time, Longhuai ancestor obviously would not consider the feelings of Laozu and Xiao Baiyu. Longhuai ancestor informed the two celestial spirits of his plan. Then he said to Lu Ping, Lu Xiaoyu, please come to the fallen secret land for a chat. Since the two of you have become celestial spirits, come and listen. Lu Ping smiled at the two of them and casually threw out a talisman. The talisman flickered and disappeared into the void. Both Laozu and Xiao Baiyu looked at each other and each sent out a talisman. Then they followed behind Lu Ping and Longhuai ancestor to the thousand poison sky wall that had risen again. In the Phantom Palace, the expressions of Yuanfeng Laozu, Sangyu Laozu, and Jiang Tianlin changed. They each stretched out their hands to receive a talisman. After reading the contents, the three of them had different expressions. Just as the cultivators of the various sects in the hall were secretly speculating about the reason behind these three decrees, Ancestor Tsangyu was the first to sigh and said, I believe the two of you understand the whole story of today's matter. Do you have any objections? Who could have any objections to the tone set by two celestial spirits, Laozu and a pure Yang? Who dared to have any objections? Everyone cursed in their hearts. Jiang Tianlin smiled and said, in that case, let's do as the three of you said. Yuanfeng Laozu snorted coldly. His face was extremely pale, but he did not dare to say anything in the end. The Crystal Palace's plan to hunt them down eventually failed. This time, the Crystal Palace had undoubtedly suffered the greatest loss in the distribution of the Spirit Stone mine on the Phantom Island. The distribution plan was finalized. The 10 sects, including the Crystal Palace, divided the giant Spirit Stone mine on the Phantom Island. Among them, the Crystal Palace's share was reduced from 40% to 30%, while Skyrind and Jinling each took 10% of the original share of the Crystal Palace. However, Skyrind's strength was originally above Jinling's. Although they each got 10%, Skyrind's total share was still more than Jinling's. These three sects occupied 60% of the giant spirit stone mine in one fell swoop, while the remaining 7 large sects divided the remaining 40%. Originally, Jinling and Skyrind's plan was to gain the support of the other large sections. They only wanted to take 20% of the Crystal Palace's share, while the 3 sects only wanted 50% of the entire mine. Of course, the Crystal Palace strongly opposed it. In the end, they were only willing to give up 10% of the share. However, how could that satisfy the appetite of the other 2 sects? Helplessly, the 3 sects could only cooperate with each other to take away 10% of the share from the other 7 sections. The other 7 sects dared not to say anything even though they were angry. In fact, the 3 sects, including the Crystal Palace, were quite scrupulous about this blatant way of bullying the 7 sections. At the beginning, none of the 3 sects wanted to be the bad guy. Jinling and Skyrind insisted that their respective 10% share should be taken from the Crystal Palace. If the Crystal Palace wanted to keep 30% of the share, they had to get 10% from other shares. The implication was that they wanted the Crystal Palace to be the scapegoat for offending the 7 sections. Of course, Yuanfeng Laozu would not let the 2 sects succeed. He insisted that the Crystal Palace voluntarily give up 10% of the share, and the 2 sects would ask for the remaining 10% from the 7 sects themselves. In the end, after a series of intrigues, the 3 sects finally chose to cooperate with each other and put pressure on the 7 sects together. Together, they occupied 60% of the entire giant spiritual stone mine. In the secret burial ground, as the 4 of them entered the heavenly poisonous wall one after another, Longhuai Ancestor took the opportunity to reveal the breath of a spiritual monster with a mysterious space power. The sky was suddenly covered with tribulation clouds. However, the momentum was quite different from what Longhuai Ancestor had done before. It was a pine tree that was 1,000 feet tall. Lu Ping carefully watched the process of the tribulation. 9 bolts of tribulation lightning fell in a row. The pine tree spirit managed to resist the tribulation, but Longhuai Ancestor quickly closed the heavenly poisonous wall. The breath of the pine tree spirit was covered, and the tribulation clouds in the sky gradually dissipated. Qing Song, who had survived the first thunder calamity, was now at the mid-dharma stage. His true form was also beginning to take on a human form. A tall and thin middle-aged man broke away from Qing Song's true form and looked around himself excitedly. Only then did he remember to thank Patriarch Longhuai. In fact, Lu Ping and the others could see that the pine tree in front of them had accumulated a lot of energy. It was no weaker than a late Dharma adept. However, Longhuai Ancestor was obviously protecting the pine tree spirit and did not allow it to continue summoning the tribulation lightning to advance directly to the late Dharma stage. However, what Lu Ping found strange was that this pine tree spirit did not seem to be able to transform after advancing to the core forging stage like Lu Taohua. Thinking about how Longhuai Ancestor's original body had also undergone the tribulation lightning, Lu Ping secretly guessed, could it be that the Longhuai Ancestor's ability is not weaker than a Dharma adept's even though it is not yet a Dharma adept? Could it be that its original body could not transform before the tribulation? Compared to Lu Ping's attention to the spiritual monster's tribulation in the secret burial ground, Spirit Wine Laozu and Xiao Baiyu were obviously more concerned about other things. Spirit Wine Laozu asked with a shocked expression, "Senior, you can actually control the time when the tribulation lightning strikes?" Longhuai Ancestor laughed and said, "Although the old man has inherited the memories of Jiao Daoren, he is not the creator of this world. There is no way he can change the rules of this world. All the old man can do is take advantage of a loophole. Once these juniors do not have the old man's heavenly poisonous wall to conceal their aura, they will immediately be punished by the tribulation lightning." Xiao Baiyu sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "This heavenly poisonous wall can conceal the cultivator's perception of the tribulation lightning. Doesn't this mean that this formation is equivalent to a lesser kiliacosm? Senior will not have to worry about being excluded by this world?" Longhuai Ancestor seemed to have seen through the two's thoughts. He shook his head and said with a smile, "The heavenly poisonous wall is not comparable to a lesser kiliacosm, but it is still personally arranged by Jiao Daoren in the past. The old man has said before that the heavenly poisonous wall still needs the old man's method to conceal the junior's aura. Without the old man's ability to conceal it, Even the heavenly poisonous wall will not be able to block the thunder tribulation's perception of the spiritual monster's aura. As for the old man, the old man's existence is too special. If the seal of the heavenly poisonous wall has not been broken, the old man will not have to worry about being excluded by this world. But since the old man has turned into a true spirit, the heavenly poisonous wall will no longer be able to conceal the old man's aura. In the end, he will still be excluded by this world. It's just a matter of time. Chapter 1492. Although Yuanzhou Laozu and the others knew that the Longhuai ancestor would leave this world in the future, when they heard it from the Longhuai ancestor, they secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The Longhuai ancestor did not seem to know what they were thinking. He just said, "This time the old man asked the three of you to come here. In addition to visiting the secret parish site of the spiritual demon clan, the most important thing is to tell you about the North Ice Fields." The thunder tribulation above the poisonous sky wall had not stopped since the three of them entered the secret parish site a few days ago. Until now, at least 7 or 8 thunder tribulations had fallen, which meant that the spiritual demon clan had gained 7 or 8 mid-dharma adepts in just a few days. And looking at the momentum, the thunder tribulation above the poisonous sky wall would continue. Moreover, in the past few days when the three of them had toured the secret parish site, they had at least discovered several auras that were not weaker than the late dharma adepts. These spiritual demons had the ability to summon the second thunder tribulation at any time. Lu Ping and the others even felt 2 auras that were comparable to pure young adepts. It was just that the spiritual demons that these 2 auras belonged to did not let the three of them see their true forms, whether intentionally or unintentionally. After a few days, the three of them turned into light and left the secret parish site, but it seemed that they all had a lot on their minds and even had a look of disbelief. Obviously, the three of them had received a lot of incredible news from the Longhuai ancestor. And after the three of them left the secret parish site, the Crystal Palace, Skyrend, and Junling began to send messengers to the major sects and demon tribes in the Central Plains, overseas, the North Ice Fields, the West Wilderness, the Endless Mountains and other places. A shocking news began to spread among the high-end forces of the cultivation world, and a storm began to slowly brew. As Lu Ping and the others entered the secret zone and the cultivators from the illusionary spirit palace were fiercely fighting over the distribution of the spirit stone mine, a violent spatial turbulence spread out in all directions hundreds of kilometers northeast of Huangli Island in the North Sea. A spatial entrance slowly opened up and the 7 stars grotto heaven opened up once again. "Elder sister, I heard from the seniors in our clan that there will be a big confrontation between Father and the Crystal Palace and other sects when he goes to the Phantom Island this time. Why do you think Father doesn't want us to go there to help him? Instead, he sends an edict to ask us to return to Huangli Island as soon as possible?" Lu Hai, who now looked like a young man of 16 or 17 years old, grumbled unwillingly as he rode on the light. "Exactly." Lu Linger was eager to see the world in chaos. She said, "We have now completely accepted all the inheritance of the Green Sea Snakes, and there will be no obstacles to our cultivation in the future. Even now, we have passed the first thunder calamity and consolidated our cultivation. With the power of the three of us, even if 2 great practitioners at the late Dharma realm join forces, they will be defeated by us. Do you think the seniors in our clan are forging Father's edict to deceive us?" Lu Bai's face darkened and she said, "Linger, don't talk nonsense. We have all seen Father's edict. Can't we tell whether it is true or not?" Lu Linger pouted and said, "I'm just kidding. Elder sister is always so serious." Lu Bai said seriously, "Father is now a pure yang practitioner. How many people in the world can be his opponent? But Junling's foundation is shallow now. If Father is in the North Sea, everything will be fine. What I am afraid of is that someone will take advantage of Father's absence to make trouble." Lu Linger's eyes lit up and she said, "Elder sister, you mean there must be a reason why Father asked us to go back to the North Sea?" Lu Bai nodded and said, "It is very likely. Otherwise, Father is now in the North Sea. Why did he ask us to go back to the North Sea first?" Lu Hai rubbed his fists and said, "I hope there are some ignorant people who can provide us with entertainment." Lu Bai, who was flying at the front, suddenly stopped. Lu Hai and Lu Linger did not understand and quickly stopped together. Lu Hai asked in confusion, "Elder sister, what's wrong?" Lu Bai pointed to the front and said, "Look there." Lu Linger was surprised and said, "Hey, fog? No, that is the sea near Huangli Island. Did something really happen?" Lu Hai took a deep breath and the surrounding spiritual qi vibrated. He seemed to have performed some kind of magic. Then he licked his lips and said, "Poisonous, there is poison in the fog. Something really happened. But the taste of this poisonous fog is really good. Let's go, we have work to do." Lu Hai called out the Taishan halberd in his hand. At this time, the Taishan halberd had been upgraded to a first calamity spirit treasure. Lu Hai held the spirit treasure and plunged into the sea, heading in the direction of Huangli Island. Obviously he did not care about the poisonous fog in the distance. Lu Linger giggled, turned around beautifully, and turned into a cloud of sparkling snowflakes fluttering up and down. Lu Bai swung her hand, and a long whip made of spirit treasure directly shattered the nearby void with a crisp sound. Then it turned into a cool breeze, rolled up the snowflakes and disappeared into the sea. At the same time, in the waters near Huangli Island, a few cultivators were secretly gathered together, watching the mist that was gradually rising from the surface of the sea. If Lu Ping were here, he would have seen one or two familiar faces among them. This fog was originally the magical method of the head elder of the family. It is a pity that the head elder died in the Battle of Jiushuan Tower against Mara. Otherwise, the family would not be so anxious to find the source potion of all poisons. The person who spoke was Lu Runjian, a mid-Dharma adept of the Lu family, the #1 alchemy family in Central Plains. "Brother, now that Junling is like the sun in the sky in the North Sea, aren't we provoking Lu Tianping by openly setting up the fog near Huangli Island? It is said that Lu Tianping has the 1,000 Wonder Dew and has mastered the 1,000 Poison Meteorite Power Shield. These are all methods to restrain the fog. Now that Lu Tianping is a top expert in the world, if he makes things difficult for the Lu family, wouldn't it be a disaster?" Liao Ruanjia, the former head of the Liao family of the North Sea and now a Dharma adept of the Lu family of Central Plains, said with some worry after hearing this. Lu Runjian smiled and said, "Brother, don't worry. Junling can't even take care of himself now, and Lu Tianping's fate in the East Sea is unknown. Our Lu family has never wanted to fight with the Yuan family for the 7-star cave heaven. All we want is the source potion of all poisons in the 7-star cave heaven. At this time, the Yuan family can't wait for us to cause trouble for Junling." Another Lu family practitioner also nodded and said, "Cousin, you are right. Huangli Island is closest to the 7-star cave heaven and has always been the base for Junling to send his disciples into the cave heaven. Now, with Junling's power in the East Sea, if we don't stop it, the 7-star cave heaven will definitely belong to Junling's disciples. At that time, it will definitely affect the disciples of the family who enter the Golden Valley. In fact, the previous 2 times the 7-star cave heaven opened, it was because of the obstruction of Junling's disciples that the disciples of the family were unable to find out the whereabouts of the source potion." Lu Ruanjia was obviously still worried and said, "Then what if the Junling practitioners stationed at Huangli Island want to force their way in? It is said that there are at least 3 Junling Dharma adepts stationed at Huangli Island. If they force their way in, it will be troublesome." Force their way in? Lu Runjian was amused when he heard this. Then, his words were filled with murderous intent as he laughed coldly and said, "If that Junling doesn't know his place, then we might have to offend Junling." Seeing Lu Ruanjia's hesitant expression, Lu Runjian laughed and said, "Brother, your disciples have already moved back to Central Plains. This North Sea has nothing to do with the Lu family from now on. What are you still worried about?" Lu Ruanjia forced a smile when he heard this. The haze in his heart still lingered, but seeing that the few Dharma adepts of the family all looked like they had victory in their hands, he could only keep his mouth shut. On Huangli Island, Sky Fox was not far from giving birth. Many matters on Huangli Island were handled by Green Fox. However, at this time, things had happened so suddenly that even Sky Fox did not have time to rest and came out of the cave to investigate the situation. "Is there any news from Tianling Mountain?" Sky Fox saw that Green Fox and 6th Brother Lei, the 2 mid-Dharma adepts, were there and could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. However, Green Tiger and Green Wolf had already been sent to Central Plains by Lu Ping and were not on Huangli Island. Not yet. Green Fox's expression was slightly solemn, but she still comforted him. However, since he had already predicted this before going to East Sea, he must have set up a backup plan. "You should be fine. You should rest in peace." However, 6th Brother Lei said, "Since the 7-star cave heaven has opened recently, Junling has not sent any blood condensation disciples to Huangli Island this time. Did Brother Lu predict this beforehand?" Sky Fox signaled to Green Fox that he was not in the way and then nodded at 6th Brother Lei. He said, "My husband's plan for the 7-star cave heaven is imminent, so there is no need for our sect to send disciples into the 7-star cave heaven to take the risk. However, my husband originally thought that the Liu family would not take such a risk. After all, they have always wanted to enter the 7-star Cave Heaven's Golden Canyon. Although our disciples have competed with them in the Cave Heaven, we have never prohibited them from entering. I did not expect them to make a move. Sixth Brother Lei said thoughtfully, if that is the case, it seems that Brother Liu's encounter in the East Sea is not too good. The Liu family must have sensed it beforehand. Otherwise, with the Liu family's strength, they would not take such a big risk. However, Green Fox said, with his ability, even the true spirit Laozu might not be able to do anything to him. What I am curious about is, did he not set up a backup plan for the Liu family? Sky Fox smiled and suddenly 2 jade essence bottles appeared in his hands. He said, Huangli Island's protective formation is strong enough. It is almost impossible for the Liu family to attack Huangli Island by force. However, if they really go to the extreme with the things in these 2 bottles, they will not have to worry about the poisonous fog. Moreover, if I am not wrong, Samling should be back by now. Green Fox opened the bottle and took a sniff. She raised her eyebrows and smiled. Ha, it is a drop of wonder dew. With this item, one can indeed be immune to all poisons. However, Sixth Brother Lei said, so those 3 little guys are coming back. After obtaining the inheritance of the green sea snakes, the strength of those 3 little guys will definitely soar. The Liu family is really courting death. Not long after Sixth Brother Lei's voice fell, as if to verify the truth of his words, there was a sudden explosion in the fog above Huangli Island. At the same time, there were loud rebukes and exclamations. Sixth Brother Lei and the others could clearly hear that it was Samling and the Liu family's cultivators fighting. Chapter 1493. The battle for spiritual stone resources in the East Sea's illusionary Spirit Island had eventually evolved into a 3-way battle between the Water Crystal Palace, the Heaven-Splitting Sword Sect and the Zhenling Sect. The Water Crystal Palace still seemed to have an obvious advantage, but anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the current Water Crystal Palace was no longer as good as before. A Holy Land had 1 true spirit cultivator, Laozu, and 2 or 3 pure yang cultivators. Even this kind of strength could not occupy an absolute advantage in front of Zhenling, a newly rising large sect with only 1 pure yang cultivator. After 100 years, Zhenling's strength would increase again, and Skyren would also be fully fledged. By then, the Crystal Palace would be more and more helpless in the face of the 2 sects' pressure. However, the 3-way battle was eventually overshadowed by the strong rise of the spiritual demon clan. Longhuai Ancestor, who was born in the spiritual demon clan, became a true spirit cultivator in one fell swoop in the Fallen Mountain secret place. His strength and cultivation shocked Yuan Jiao, Xiao Baiyu and Lu Tianping. He personally turned the Fallen Mountain secret place into the overseas residence of the spiritual demon clan. The 3 powerful cultivators did not dare to have any objection in front of Longhuai Ancestor. For a time, Longhuai Ancestor's reputation was unparalleled in the cultivation world. Some busybodies even made Longhuai Ancestor the #1 cultivator in the world. However, only the top cultivators of the human and demon clans in the cultivation world would be entrusted by the Crystal Palace and the other 2 sects to pass a message to the Longhuai Ancestor. Did the soul lamps of the cultivators who achieved the true spirit in your sect go out after they went to the North Ice Field? It was a simple sentence. It seemed that the major forces in the entire cultivation world had not paid much attention to the rise of the spiritual demon clan. However, only those who were really discerning could detect the great strangeness in the indifferent attitude of the human and demon clans. The birth of a true spirit cultivator and the rise of a race that had never been paid attention to, this was a power that could change the entire cultivation world. How could the large sects, tribes and races of the cultivation world not care about this? This kind of unusual calmness was the strangest thing about this. After Yuan Jiao Laozu returned to the Crystal Palace, Yuan Fengli Laozu came to apologize with a face full of shame. Unexpectedly, Yuan Jiao Laozu didn't care about it at all. Instead, he changed the topic and asked, Master's uncle's soul lamp went out? Yuan Fengli Laozu didn't react for a moment. Only when Yuan Jiao Laozu asked again did he know that he was talking about Danju Laozu. He said in an unconcerned manner, of course it's gone out. After the true spirit cultivators went to the northern ice plains, didn't their soul lamps all go out? Didn't the ancestors say that after the true spirit cultivators went to the northern ice plains, their soul lamps would automatically go out because they were completely separated from this world? At this time, Yuan Fengli Laozu could see that Yuan Jiao Laozu's expression wasn't right. Yuan Fengli Laozu didn't understand, so he asked in a probing manner, "Senior brother?" The Yuan Jiao ancestor let out a long sigh. His tone was filled with bewilderment as he said, "That's just the speculation of our ancestors regarding the extinguishing of their soul lamps. Moreover, this speculation seems to be the common understanding of all the Holy Lands. Even though the sects that have produced true spirit cultivators don't know the background of the Holy Lands, this matter is probably kept a secret out of fear." Yuan Fengli Laozu said in a puzzled voice, "Since all the sects are like this, what is there for senior brother to worry about?" Yuan Jiao Laozu said with a bitter smile, "The so-called common knowledge is just a guess that all the Holy Lands agree on. In fact, after the founders of the Holy Lands went to the northern ice plains, the extinguishing of their soul lamps caused the Holy Lands to panic. Even the second, third, and fourth generation true spirit cultivators would rather die in their sect's small worlds than go to the northern ice plains. However, these people can't stay in the small worlds for more than 500 years. Yuan Fengli Laozu subconsciously asked, "Why?" If what Yuan Jiao Laozu was talking about was normally a secret that only the pure yang cultivators of the Crystal Palace were qualified to know, but for some reason Yuan Jiao Laozu said it all in one breath in front of Yuan Fengli Laozu. What else could it be? How many years would it take for a pure yang cultivator to reach the true spirit realm? How much lifespan would he have left after 500 years? How many geniuses like Xiao Baiyu and Lu Tianping do you think are there in this world? After 500 years of reaching the true spirit realm, after leaving this world, is it possible to raise their cultivation to a higher realm than reaching the true spirit realm before their lifespan runs out? Origin Wine Ancestor continued, "The most important thing is that true spirit sect cultivators hiding in a minor thousand world doesn't mean they can sit back and relax. After becoming a true spirit sect cultivator, even if they don't deliberately cultivate, their cultivation will still grow at an extremely stable rate. In about 500 to 800 years, a true spirit cultivator's cultivation will automatically rise to a new bottleneck. At that time, even if a true spirit cultivator hides in a minor thousand world, they will not be able to escape the rejection of this world. This time, a true spirit cultivator will have to face the heavenly punishment." Heavenly punishment? Yes, heavenly punishment. The heavenly punishment of certain death. So the true spirit cultivators of the Holy Lands will change every 300 to 500 years. There are very few true spirit cultivators that will stay in this world for over 500 years. After all, there is no true spirit Laozu that dares to joke around with their own lives. At this time, even Yuan Feng Laozu could feel that Yuan Jiao Laozu's mood wasn't right, but Yuan Feng Laozu couldn't do anything at this time. He could only continue listening to Yuan Jiao Laozu. So they can only go to the northern ice plains and choose to believe in the passage the seventh patriarch left for them to leave this world. Moreover, the fear of their soul lamps extinguishing has turned into a guess that they will naturally cut off their connection to this world after leaving this world. As time goes on, this guess will become inevitable. Yuan Jiao Laozu's heart skipped a beat and cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He carefully asked, "What does senior mean?" Yuan Jiao Laozu bitterly smiled. The Longhuai ancestor sent a message to the cultivation world, saying that the true spirit cultivators that went to the northern ice plains to leave this world did not actually leave. Instead, they have all died. What? Yuan Jiao Laozu was shocked at first, but then he laughed involuntarily. How is that possible? However, seeing Yuan Jiao Laozu's expression, Yuan Jiao Laozu stuttered, "Senior, this can't be true, right?" "It's hard to say." Yuan Jiao Laozu's expression actually had a trace of viciousness as he said, "Looks like I have to go to the northern ice plains after 500 years. At the same time, on the East Sea's Jade Sword Island, a pagoda-shaped spatial treasure appeared in the sky above the island. It was the spirit space that Xiao Baiyu had taken from the 9 mystical tower. In the spirit space, Xiao Baiyu and 8 Sister Zhu sat opposite each other. Xiao Baiyu asked, "How much do you believe in the words of the Longhuai ancestor?" 8 Sister Zhu's expression changed. It was obvious that she was shocked by the news that Xiao Baiyu had told her about the Longhuai ancestor's death of all the true spirit cultivators that went to the northern ice plains. After a long time, 8 Sister Zhu finally calmed down and said, "After the 9 mystical towers true spirit cultivators went to the northern ice plains, the soul lamps that were kept in the sect were indeed extinguished." Xiao Baiyu had an expression as if he had expected it. He said, "Looks like this Longhuai ancestor does know something that others don't. Could it be that he's really a clone of Jiao Daoren that has developed a consciousness of his own, and he really possesses the memories left behind by Jiao Daoren?" 8 Sister Zhu said, "If what the Longhuai ancestor said is true, then this is truly a monstrous conspiracy." Since the world was split open until now, not a single true spirit cultivator has left this world, and all of them have perished in the so-called passageway to leave this world set up by the seventh patriarch when the world was split open. This is practically able to shake the beliefs of all the cultivators in the entire cultivation world. What do you intend to do? Xiao Baiyu pondered deeply for a moment before he said with a solemn expression. Long Huai shook the world with a single word, and he even invited all the true spirit cultivators in the world to gather in the northern ice plains 500 years from now. No matter if what he said is true or false, he has to make a trip to the northern ice plains 500 years from now to get to the bottom of this. If what he said is true, then at least a few true spirit cultivators will head there 300 years from now, and they'll be able to join forces to break this restriction. If what he said is false, then everyone will surely join forces to attack him at that time. 8 Sister Zhu said with worry, could it be that the Longhuai ancestor has some sort of scheme? If he really possesses the memories of Jiao Daoren, then he'll surely have something to rely on in the northern ice plains. Have you ever thought that perhaps this was a scheme that he'd planned all along? Xiao Baiyu had a pondering expression, yet he said in the end, it's not that I haven't thought about all of this, but it's difficult for me to be at ease if I don't get to the bottom of it. Not to mention that Long Huai has the ability to prove that what he said isn't false. Oh. Xiao Baiyu chuckled and said, the Yuan clan. 8 Sister Zhu still wanted to ask more, but Xiao Baiyu raised his hand to stop her. He said, in order to prove the doubts in my heart, the top existences of the human and demon clans in this world will definitely gather in the Yuan clan. Whether it's true or not, the Yuan clan will not be able to escape the calamity of destruction this time. However, these are all small matters. The crux of the matter is what our sect should do in these 500 years. 8 Sister Zhu said, what are your plans? The Middle Earth. Xiao Baiyu said resolutely and decisively, the Crystal Palace is deeply rooted, and we can't compete with the Longhuai ancestor behind the Spirit Demon clan. The East Sea is only so big, but the Middle Earth now still has room to expand. 8 Sister Zhu said, you're talking about the 9 Mystical Tower? Xiao Baiyu glanced at her and said, that's right. 8 Sister Zhu frowned and said, but in that case the various sects along the coast of the Middle Earth will not easily agree, especially since the Heavenly Moon sect is an ally of Skyrend. Xiao Baiyu said coldly, that was then and this is now. The current Skyrend is no longer worried about external enemies. What it is worried about is its sphere of influence and cultivation resources. This can only be fought over from the old land of the 9 Mystical Tower. If the Heavenly Moon sect obstructs, for the continuation of the sect's legacy, they can only turn against each other. 8 Sister Zhu nodded and said, all right, I'll go. No, you can't go. Looking at 8 Sister Zhu's surprised expression, Xiao Baiyu said, you have to follow me to cultivate. After 500 years, you will take over this mini Kiliacosm from me. 8 Sister Zhu was startled and said with some disbelief, you want me to take over Skyrend? Xiao Baiyu's eyes flashed and said, that's right. I don't want Jinfei to take a shortcut to become a celestial spirit, but I want him to try with his own strength first. However, Jinfei's aptitude is not as amazing as that of Lu Tianping. So after 500 years, he may not have the ability to become a celestial spirit. This will require you, as his mother, to transition for a period of time. After he becomes a celestial spirit, you can hand over the sect to him. This way, you will also have the opportunity to become a celestial spirit, and the other cultivators in the sect will not dare to say anything else. Chapter 1494. Lu Ping did not expect that Longhuai ancestor would promote the rise of Spirit Demon clan after escaping from the sky wall of poison. Therefore, when Longhuai ancestor was crossing the tribulation, he took the opportunity to let Debao and the Amethyst Wasp stay in the secret site, which made Lu Ping feel quite embarrassed afterwards. Fortunately, Longhuai ancestor was able to escape because of Lu Ping's help. Naturally, Longhuai ancestor would not care about Lu Ping's intention to take advantage of him. Debao and the Amethyst Wasps were released by Spirit Demon clan, but the appearance of the Amethyst Wasps still made Longhuai ancestor quite happy. Lu Xiaoyu, are you willing to part with the Amethyst Wasps? What Longhuai ancestor was interested in was naturally not the natural treasures such as honey and royal jelly brewed by the Amethyst Wasps, but the significant help of the Amethyst Wasps to the growth of Spirit Demon clan. If Lu Xiaoyu is willing to part with it, you can give Xianqin a few natural treasures in this secret site. After Yuanjiu Laozu and Xiao Baiyu left, Lu Ping and Longhuai ancestor had a secret meeting. Lu Ping did not expect that Longhuai ancestor would make such a request at the beginning. Lu Ping smiled shamefully. I'm really sorry, the amethyst wasps are of great significance to me and my sect. Forgive me for not being able to agree, but if Spirit Demon Clan needs them in the future, I will send disciples of my sect to escort the amethyst wasps to the secret site. Longhuai ancestor seemed to have expected that Lu Ping would do this, so there was not the slightest disappointment on his face. He just said, that's good. The amethyst wasps were obtained by Chan Wan from the outer world to create the Spirit Demon Clan. Unfortunately, she and Wan Ke did not get along well in the end. Under the poisonous gas, the amethyst wasps were not endowed with enough bloodline aptitude. In the end, only a limited number of wasps were left. To be honest, when the old man was in the secret site, he was surprised that they had not gone extinct. Please treat these wasps well, little friend. Only the amethyst wasps can continue to exist. Lu Ping could tell from Longhuai ancestors' words that the so-called Chan Wan should undoubtedly be Chan Taoist, so the one that Longhuai ancestor called Ke was naturally Luan Daoist. Longhuai ancestor was originally a doppelganger that Jiao Daoren had set up for himself. But now this doppelganger had given birth to its own consciousness and became Longhuai ancestor. However, the Longhuai ancestor, who had received many of Jiao Daoren's original memories, would put himself in the role of Jiao Daoren from time to time. This made Lu Ping's heart churn as he listened, as if the person in front of him was really Jiao Daoren, the world-renowned Jiao Daoren. However, rumor had it that Chan Taoist and Luan Daoist were at odds with each other among the seventh patriarch of creation. It seemed that it was true, and there was even a rumor that the source of their discord was originally Jiao Daoren. No one knew how the Longhuai ancestor would feel at this moment after receiving Jiao Daoren's memories. The Longhuai ancestor seemed to be immersed in his memories and did not notice Lu Ping's expression. However, Lu Ping felt a little guilty for taking advantage of the Longhuai ancestor. He wanted to make up for it, so he asked in a low voice, this junior once heard from senior that the seventh patriarch of creation had once tried to support the spirit Yao race, and the Luan Daoist had even purposely passed down the Wood Luan bloodline? The Longhuai ancestor smiled and said, indeed. Of course, the Wood Luan bloodline was not created just for the spirit Yao race. However, the Wood Luan bloodline was indeed of great help to the spirit Yao race. The old man has also seen the Wood Luan bloodline beside you. Unfortunately, the Wood Luan bloodline has almost disappeared in the cultivation world. Although the old man has now advanced to the true spirit realm, he cannot compare to the seventh patriarch of creation. Even if he wants to, he cannot. Lu Ping smiled and said, this junior was fortunate enough to find a few Wood Luans in the 9 Profound Tower. After hundreds of years of meticulous support, there are now 20 to 30 of them. If senior does not mind, this junior can recommend some volunteers to come to the fallen secret land. Senior has also said that the spirit Yao race and the Wood Luan bloodline can complement each other in cultivation. Now that there are so many spirit Yao race in the fallen secret land, I believe it will be of great help to the Wood Luan bloodline to recover. The Longhuai ancestor's eyes lit up and he clapped his hands and said with a smile, that's great, that's great. The old man still has to thank little friend for your generous help. Lu Ping quickly waved his hand and said, I'm ashamed, I'm ashamed. The Longhuai ancestor smiled and said, it's no problem. Now that the old man is the patriarch of the spirit Yao race, I naturally have to make some plans for the children under me. Little friend has helped the old man a lot, so the old man will naturally repay you. This jade slip records the insights that the old man has gained from the formation that Jiao Daoren personally laid down while trapped in the myriad poison sky wall. Lu Ping was shocked. Looking at the jade slip in the Longhuai ancestor's hand, he was lost in thought for a moment. No one understood the value of this jade slip more than Lu Ping. Seeing Lu Ping's expression, the Longhuai ancestor smiled and said, I believe that Lu Xiaoyu also understands the true value of the myriad poison sky wall. Jiao Daoren is the master of the Tao of formations in this world, and the myriad poison sky wall can be considered as Jiao Daoren's pinnacle work. Although this world can no longer produce a powerhouse like the seventh patriarch of the heaven-splitting era, nor can they lay down such a heaven-defying formation, it doesn't prevent us from studying this formation. Although the old man's comprehension is shallow, if Lu Xiaoyu can understand it, it will be another trump card for your noble race. Lu Ping took the jade slip with both hands and said solemnly, thank you, Elder, for your generous gift. The myriad poison sky wall had been guarding the secret fallen site since the heaven-splitting era was created, and its defensive capabilities were naturally unparalleled. However, the true value of the myriad poison sky wall was that it could conceal the aura of a practitioner and delay the arrival of the thunder trial. This was the reason why Lu Ping thanked the Longhuai ancestor so solemnly after receiving such a secret teaching from him. However, it is a pity. Perhaps because the old man's cultivation is not as high as Jiao Doran's, the essence of the formation that the old man understood from the myriad poison sky wall can only conceal the aura of a Dharma adept from being detected by the thunder trial. However, if he wants to conceal the aura of a true spirit adept like this formation in front of us, the old man will not be able to do so. Lu Ping was slightly stunned, and there was some disappointment on his face. He did not know whether what the Longhuai ancestor said was true or false, but if he could conceal the aura of a Dharma adept from being detected by the thunder trial, it was already an extremely impressive achievement. However, the Longhuai ancestor continued at this moment. It is said that Jiao Daoren condensed the essence of his entire life's formation into 9 fundamental formations. These 9 fundamental formations can be considered as the complete inheritance of Jiao Doran's formation. If these 9 fundamental formations can be set up, supplemented by the essence of the formation that the old man understood from the myriad poison sky wall, he may be able to set up a formation that can even conceal the aura of a true spirit adept. At that time, as long as this formation is set up, a true spirit adept will not need to be trapped in a mini kiliacosm. It is a pity that the inheritance that the old man received from Jiao Daoren is not complete. Otherwise, it may be able to help you become the cornerstone of the Holy Land. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. The inheritance of the 9 fundamental formations was now in the hands of Lu Ping. Now Deng Tianming and the Sky Fox, the 2 formation masters of Zhenling, were both proficient in it. If not for this, Zhenling would not have been able to set up such a shocking formation and seek Fei Ling Island and the 7-star grotto heaven. Senior's help is enough for Zhenling to remember. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat and he asked, I wonder if Senior knows about the 7-star grotto heaven? The Longhuai ancestor was stunned, and then a blurry look flashed in his eyes, as if he was searching for a distant memory. After a long time, he seemed to remember something and said, 7-star grotto heaven? 7-star gentleman? It seems that when Jiao Daoren gave the heaven-splitting speech, there were 7 followers who were siblings of different surnames. It was said that Jiao Daoren was grateful for their friendship, so he used the names of the 7 famous stars in the starry sky as their Taoist names. However, I only heard about the 7 stars from Jiao Daoren, and it's very difficult to see them in this world. Are you talking about these 7 people? However, when this world was first discovered by the 7th patriarch, the heaven-splitting speech, it was still very weak. In order to not be discovered by the enemies in the starry sky, and to protect its growth, the 7th patriarch worked together to hide this world in the starry sky. Therefore, in this world, even the stars are rarely seen in the night sky, not to mention the 7 famous stars that Jiao Daoren mentioned. Lu Ping's mind was in turmoil. There were very few stars in the night sky of this world. Even if there were a few shining, they were blurry, and the defense was obscured by a layer of fog. Therefore, when Lu Ping first entered the center of the 7-star grotto heaven, he was surprised that the 7 palaces were named after the Big Dipper. Lu Ping had once entered the 7th patriarch's Taoist altar. It was said that it was a minor kiliacosm that the heaven-splitting speech, the 7th patriarch, attached to the surface of this world. In the night sky there, Lu Ping saw the starry night sky, and saw the bright Milky Way that traversed across the sky. Although there had long been a legend in the world of cultivation that the 7th patriarch, the heaven-splitting speech, had to hide it in the starry sky in order to protect this world, so it was always covered by a layer of haze when looking out from this world. This time, the Longhuai ancestor seemed to have confirmed this legend even more. The Longhuai ancestor suddenly realized something and said, Why, little friend, are you looking for the 7-star grotto heaven? Is the 7-star grotto heaven also a minor kiliacosm? If this matter was to succeed, it would cause a huge commotion, and it would be impossible to hide it. Moreover, Zhenling had probably already begun to succeed in the North Sea, so there was no need for Lu Ping to hide it. He only said, it should be a minor kiliacosm, hidden in the void. It opens on its own every 100 years and only blood condensation cultivators can enter. The Longhuai ancestor's eyes flashed rapidly, then he calmed down and said, This 7-star grotto heaven is in the North Sea? Yes. After Lu Ping left the secret graveyard, the Longhuai ancestor looked in the direction in which Lu Ping left, as if he wanted to see Lu Ping's shadow through the void. He murmured, Could it be that Jiao Daoren didn't only have the old man as a backup plan? What's so strange about this young man? Why can't even the old man see through him? But there's always a sense of closeness that comes from the bloodline. There's also the 7-star grotto heaven, the 7-star gentleman. I wonder if the others also have a plan. In 500 years, everything will be clear. But before that, the old man must first cut off one of Peng Doran's arms. Yuan clan, Yuan clan. Chapter 1495. Lu Ping did not expect that the secret meeting with the Longhuai ancestor in the secret perished ground would yield such a great harvest. After returning to the North Sea, he even temporarily summoned the 2 formation masters of Jinling, Deng Tianming and the Sky Fox, who were in charge of the migration of Failing Island and the capture of the 7-star grotto heaven, to Tianling Mountain. How is it? What are the possibilities? Lu Ping asked Deng Tianming, who first looked at the formation understanding jade slip left behind by the Longhuai ancestor. Among the formation masters of Jinling, Deng Tianming and the Sky Fox had the highest achievements. The original formation master of Jinling, perfected Xianxin, did not manage to achieve Dharma in the end. He had already passed away decades ago when his lifespan was exhausted. Between the two of them, Deng Tianming was more talented in the art of array formations. He was the true number 1 array formation grandmaster in Zhenling sect. In Lu Ping's long-term plans for Zhenling sect, Deng Tianming was involved in almost all the plans related to the art of array formations. On the other hand, Sky Fox was slightly less talented in the art of array formations, but she had the support of the current pillar of Zhenling sect. This allowed Sky Fox to receive the greatest amount of funding from Zhenling sect for her research in the art of array formations. Hence, Sky Fox's knowledge in the art of array formations was also extremely high. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been tasked with the task of finding the exact location of the 7-star grotto heaven in the void. Deng Tianming frowned slightly and said in a low voice, "According to the records in this jade slip, if it is truly combined with the 9 fundamental formations, it is indeed possible to set up a formation similar to the myriad poison sky wall. It also has the effect of concealing the aura of a true spirit cultivator." Lu Ping's face lit up with joy and he said, "So this method will work." Deng Tianming shook his head, and his expression seemed to be somewhat helpless. What? Lu Ping's expression froze, but he still maintained his calm and asked. The Sky Fox also looked at the contents of the jade slip and answered, "It's because our cultivation is not enough." Seeing the confusion on Lu Ping's face, the Sky Fox continued to explain, "With our cultivation in the early Dharma stage, we are not up to the requirements of setting up such a formation. In fact, even a late Dharma adept would find it difficult to set it up. Only a pure Yang or true spirit adept can do it." Deng Tianming continued, "This lack of cultivation refers to our lack of cultivation in the path of formations. The Longhuai ancestor has studied the myriad poison sky wall for tens of thousands of years and has yet to crack it. Even though we have Jiao Doran's 9 fundamental formations in our hands, each of the 9 fundamental formations can be said to be broad and profound. In fact, it is enough for a formation master to spend his entire life studying and trying to understand them. To want to simultaneously open up the essence of the 9 fundamental formations, unless we have the lifespan and talent of Jiao Daoran." Lu Ping was very disappointed. If this formation was successfully set up, then Lu Ping could still extend his footprint to the limits of Jinling's sphere of influence after attaining the immortal soul. After Lu Ping, as long as Jinling could protect the immortal soul, then Jinling could be under the protection of this formation and not be afraid of any sex provocations. But if this formation was not successfully set up, then after Lu Ping achieved the immortal soul, he could only be trapped in the 7 stars cave heaven. If Jinling was attacked by various sects in the future, he could only be trapped in a corner of the North Sea. Actually, it is not impossible to set up this formation. Deng Tianming wanted to say something but stopped. Lu Ping was stunned, but he calmed down and said, "Brother Deng, please say it." Deng Tianming nodded and said, "It is extremely difficult to control all 9 fundamental formations, but if one person focuses on one, it is not impossible. But that requires at least 9 formation masters, and each of them has to understand a fundamental formation. At the same time, the 9 of them have to have a tacit understanding when setting up the formation. Let's not talk about the last 2. Just training 9 formation masters in one sect at the same time, even the Crystal Palace and the Purple Sun Palace combined might not be able to do it." This was obviously not feasible. Lu Ping shook his head and was a little dejected. Now, Lu Ping was also confident that he could achieve the immortal soul in 200 years, but when he thought about how he would have to stay in the Seven Stars Cave Heaven for at least 300 years after achieving the immortal soul, he shuddered. Although this kind of formation could only restrict Lu Ping to a few important places after achieving the true spirit realm, he would at least be able to look around. Not to mention he could use this to deter the other sects, especially in the area Jinling had opened up outside the North Sea. However, Lu Ping was not an array master, but the Heavenly Fox already understood Deng Tianming's meaning. He said with a smile, "What Senior Brother Deng means is to first create a part of the formation that we can completely control. In the future, when our sect's formation masters thoroughly study the other fundamental formation, they will be able to create another part that they can control. Like this, as long as the inheritance of our sect's array masters doesn't end, the 9 fundamental formations will be completely studied by the array masters of the past generations. At that time, we only need a true spirit cultivator to combine the 9 parts of the formation into one. Then, this formation that can protect a true spirit cultivator from the small thousand world can be successfully laid down, but," Lu Ping said in a dejected manner, "but this process can't be completed in one go. At least, I'm afraid I won't be able to catch up in this lifetime." The Heavenly Fox giggled and seemed to be taking pleasure in Jinling's misfortune. The current Jinling inheritance had already reached 6 generations and Lu Ping's prestige was growing. Not to mention Jinling, even in the entire cultivation world, there weren't many people who would take pleasure in the North Sea Water Sword Immortal's misfortune. After Lu Ping established Huangli Island, he traveled the world. Huangli Island had always been guarded by the Heavenly Fox, so the two of them didn't spend much time together. Now that the formation couldn't be laid down, Lu Ping could only guard the Rejoice Heavenly Cave when he became a true spirit cultivator, so the two of them spent more time together. Lu Ping was a bit dispirited. He gave the Longhuai ancestors knowledge of arrays to the two of them and said, "You two can do as you see fit. The foundation of Jinling isn't something I can lay down by myself. I'll leave some things for the future disciples to do and let them understand how difficult it is for a senior to start a business." 1/3 of Fei Ling Island had already floated out of the sea, while 2/3 of Yen Kuan Island, which was the fulcrum of the array, had already sunk. However, it would still take several years for Fei Ling Island to completely merge with Tianling Island. Originally, this process could be greatly shortened. Lu Ping had once planned to use the vast seas and mulberry fields technique with the help of Deng Tianming's array, but in the end, it was rejected by celestial phenomenon Laozu. Now, almost the entire North Sea was under Jinling's control, and the eventual merger of Fei Ling Island and Tianling Mountain was unstoppable. It was just a matter of prolonging the time, and there was no need to hurt himself at this time. Outside Huangli Island, the Central Plains Lu family had been annihilated by the combined forces of Samling, Sixth Brother Lei and Green Fox. The Central Plains Lu family was known as the top alchemy family in the world, and the few Dharma adepts of the Lu family were all alchemy masters or above. Even Lu Runjian and Lu Ruanjia were alchemy gurus, and they carried with them 2 magic treasure-level alchemy furnaces and several types of fire seeds that were beneficial to alchemy. The other high-grade magic treasure-level alchemy furnaces and fire seeds were also quite plentiful. This time, the Lu family could be said to have sent out all their elites to obtain the 10,000 poison source liquid in the 7-star cave heaven. Almost 1/3 of the Lu family's strength was gathered. Now that the entire army had been destroyed on Huangli Island, the Lu family had suffered a great loss, but Jinling had gained a lot, including a large number of the Lu family's alchemy secrets. The 7-star cave heaven had been firmly caught in the void by the formation that Celestial Fox had set up on Huangli Island. However, in order to completely capture it, Lu Ping had to do it personally. However, the price was also extremely high. Other than the flying rainbow cauldron, which was used to hold the 7-star cave heaven, the sea bell, the cloud sail, the sea transfer order, and the double swords that had followed Lu Ping for a long time, a total of 5 spiritual treasures, all had to be sacrificed. Even Lu Ping felt pained, but for the sake of the mini Kiliacosm he could not care too much. After repelling the Yuan family, celestial phenomenon Laozu was seriously injured because he had activated the heaven-splitting divine ability sealed in the Wan Daoist 7-colored tail feather. This made Lu Ping very vexed. Originally, Lu Ping had already discovered this problem. Therefore, although he had given the 3 tail feathers to Mei Tianqin, Lu Tianling, and celestial phenomenon Laozu in case of emergency, he still hoped that Mei Tianqin would be able to activate the heaven-splitting divine ability sealed in the tail feather. Although Mei Tianqin's strength was not comparable to celestial phenomenon Laozu, her Luan bloodline and the recognition of one of the tail feathers could minimize the backlash after activating the heaven-splitting divine ability. However, Celestial Phenomenon Laozu stubbornly refused. This old man had protected Jinling all his life. When Jinling was at its most critical moment, he was unwilling to leave Tianling Island no matter what. In the end, although the two pure yang experts of the Yuan family fell under the heaven-splitting divine ability, Celestial Phenomenon Laozu was also seriously injured by the backlash. Even if he recovered in the future, his lifespan would probably be greatly reduced. As for advancing to the pure yang realm, there was no hope at all. After Lu Ping returned to the North Sea, Jinling was once again busy. Today, Jinling's foundation was getting stronger day by day. There were no internal and external troubles, so it was the best time to expand their forces and accumulate their foundation. Since the Longhuai ancestor had announced to the various holy lands, sects, and tribal demon kings that he would destroy the Yuan family, Lu Ping naturally did not mind pushing the boat along with the current to take revenge for the Yuan family's sneak attack on Tianling Mountain. However, before that, Lu Ping had to return to Huangli Island first. Ever since Lu Ping returned to the North Sea, he could sense that the dragon statue seemed to be eager to see him, as if it had something important to tell him. This time I've made a great contribution. Without my protection, Huangli Island's great formation might not be able to block the Lu family's morning fog. As soon as it saw Lu Ping, the dragon statue first showed off its contribution. Cut the crap. I'm in a hurry to go to Middle-earth. Why are you so eager to see me? What's the matter? Hurry up and say it. You're going out? The dragon statue on the 9-dragon bell cheered and said, "This time, you must bring me along. Are you going to say it or not? Hey, don't be angry. I'll say it. The dragon statue said mysteriously, "It's the Soaring Dragon Galaxy Technique. The complete Soaring Dragon Galaxy Technique." Chapter 1496. It's the Soaring Dragon Galaxy Technique, the complete Soaring Dragon Galaxy Technique. There was a buzzing sound in Lu Ping's head. Although Lu Ping was used to life and death situations, and there were few things in the cultivation world that could truly shake his heart, the news of the dragon statue truly shocked Lu Ping from the bottom of his heart. Immediately after, he felt his entire body being enveloped in boundless joy. You mean the complete Soaring Dragon Galaxy Technique? The follow-up cultivation technique after cultivating the Soaring Dragon Galaxy Technique to the true spirit level? Lu Ping suppressed the shock and surprise in his heart with great difficulty. He said in a deep voice, "Didn't you say that you didn't know about these things?" Back then, Jiao Daoren only passed down the cultivation technique to the true spirit level. Heaven-splitting 7th Patriarch didn't teach anyone what to do after reaching the true spirit level. How did you suddenly inherit the complete Soaring Dragon Galaxy Technique? The dragon statue shook its head on the surface of the 9-dragon bell, as if it was also a little confused. It said, "I'm not too sure either. It was as if I sensed something in that instant. That feeling was similar to when I met you in the Tao altar of the 7th Patriarch. It seemed to be a power that originated from the bloodline. However, it seemed that a memory buried in this dragon's body suddenly emerged. This memory originally existed in this dragon's body, but it was so cleverly sealed that even this dragon didn't realize it." At this point, the dragon statue suddenly said angrily, "Damn it, this must be Jiao Daoren's doing. He actually did so many things behind this dragon's back." Lu Ping glanced at it in surprise and said, "What's so strange about that? You were originally created by him. I'm afraid that his understanding of you is deeper than your understanding of yourself." The dragon statue snorted twice but did not say anything else. Lu Ping asked again, "When did the follow-up cultivation technique of the Soaring Dragon Galaxy Technique appear?" "It suddenly appeared in your memory not long after you went to the East Sea." Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Not long after he went to the East Sea, that should be after the Longhuai ancestor broke through the sky wall of poison with my help and transcended the thunder tribulation to become a true soul. Could the subsequent cultivation techniques of the Soaring Dragon Galaxy art have something to do with this? However, the Longhuai ancestor was a spirit demon and naturally cultivated a wood-based cultivation method. The Soaring Dragon Galaxy technique, on the other hand, was a typical water-based cultivation method. From this point of view, the two did not seem to have much of a relationship. However, even so, Lu Ping had made up his mind that he would not bring the dragon sculpture with him when he headed to the Middle Mainland to annihilate the Yuan family. Lu Ping knocked on the 9-dragon bell and said, "Give me the complete cultivation technique first." In order to complete the Soaring Dragon Galaxy art, Lu Ping did not hesitate to postpone his trip to Middle-earth. The complete Soaring Dragon Galaxy art not only recorded the complete cultivation technique, but it also had an extremely detailed description of the infinite starry sky outside this world. The starry sky was infinite, the races were infinite, the cultivation techniques were infinite, the cultivation methods were infinite, and the cultivation resources were infinite. Compared to the infinite starry sky, the world that Lu Ping was in only had 7 inherited bloodlines and the various cultivation techniques and supernatural powers that evolved from the 49 types of heaven-splitting techniques. Not only was it narrow, but it was also an extremely weak world compared to the infinite starry sky. And from this point, it also showed that the heaven-splitting 7th patriarch of the world that Lu Ping was in was not a living being of this world. They should be cultivators who came from the starry sky and accidentally discovered this new world. Thus, they joined hands and began to open up the heavens and earth in this world, spreading Taoism and becoming known as the heaven-splitting 7th patriarch. From the contents of the Soaring Dragon Galaxy art, becoming a true spirit was just the first stage of a new beginning. Far above the true spirit was the existence of a divine spirit. If a cultivator wanted to live forever, they could only advance towards a higher level of divine spirit. Only by becoming a divine spirit could they truly be immortal. However, on the path from the true spirit to the divine spirit, cultivators had to go through 9 stages, known as the 9 divine spirit transformations. The process of these 9 transformations was to gather the essence of the 5 elements in wind and ice. After that, the 7 great essences would merge into one and become the source of thunder, which would then evolve into primal chaos. This was the future cultivation path of the true spirit cultivator. Until one day when the true spirit cultivator broke through the primal chaos and became a true divine spirit, they would be able to stand at the peak of the entire starry sky and become an immortal existence, looking down on all the worlds in the starry sky. Amongst the 7th patriarch, the one with the strongest cultivation was Peng Daoren. Amongst the 7th patriarch, only Peng Daoren had controlled the 7 great origins of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and ice. Even though Peng Daoren's cultivation had already touched the 8th stage after becoming a true spirit, and he had also grasped the inheritance of thunder, he had not evolved the 7 great origins into the source of thunder, and had truly reached the 8th stage after becoming a true spirit. However, with the help of the number 1 divine artifact, the 7 treasured thunder gourd, Peng Daoren could completely compare to the 8th stage of the true spirit realm, transforming into the source of thunder. This allowed Peng Daoren to firmly occupy the position of number 1 amongst the 7th patriarch. In the cultivation process after becoming a true spirit, each of the 7 great origins of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and ice could become a true spirit first, and then they could supplement the other 6 origins. Therefore, the first 7 realms after becoming a true spirit cultivator did not matter, and only depended on how many origins a true spirit cultivator could gather. Therefore, each bloodline cultivation technique could be passed down to 7 different origins. However, the 8th stage of transforming into the source of thunder could only be done after gathering all 7 origins. Because he had not truly cultivated the source of thunder, Peng Daoren did not pass down the complete thunder path inheritance in the cultivation world. He could only rely on the Peng bloodline to create the Yuan family, hoping to use the purer bloodline to inherit the thunder bloodline inheritance. Although the cultivation process after the true spirit realm also required 9 transformations, there were only 3 thresholds. Gathering all 7 origins was the first stage, and it was also the easiest stage to climb to the undying realm. Forming the source of thunder was the second stage, and transforming into primal chaos was the third stage. From this point of view, the 7th patriarch of the world where Lu Ping came from, including Peng Daoren, were only at the initial stage after becoming a true spirit. Apart from Peng Daoren, Jiao Daoren had the highest cultivation base among the 7th patriarch of the world of the Creator, gathering 6 of the 7 origins. Even so, Jiao Daoren could rely on his incomparably sharp sword arts to compete with Peng Daoren, whose cultivation base was higher than his own. If it was not for the 7 treasures thunder calabash that allowed Peng Daoren's cultivation base to cross the second threshold and become an existence no weaker than transforming into the source of thunder, it would be debatable who the first person to open the sky would be. Apart from these 2, Taoist Tiger, Taoist Ape, and Yuan Daoist should all have gathered 5 origins, while Taoist Chan and Taoist Turtle were relatively weak, and seemed to only have 4 origins. These were all speculations that Lu Ping got from the Soaring Dragon Galaxy technique, which naturally came from Jiao Daoren's inheritance. After coming out of seclusion, Lu Ping looked a little disappointed but also a little glad, but more than that he was deeply puzzled. What disappointed him was that it had been more than 30,000 years since the seventh patriarch opened the world, but it was still a new world. In this world, the cultivators who could become true spirits had already reached the limit that this world could bear. Even if they hid in the spirit space, the true spirit cultivator's cultivation would still grow on its own, but they would never be able to condense a second origin. On the contrary, when the true spirit cultivator reached the limit of the first stage, they would incur the heavenly punishment of this world, and at that time, even the spirit space would not be able to protect them. What made Lu Ping glad was that although this world could not bear the true spirit cultivator condensing a second origin, it did not prevent Lu Ping from finding another way to condense the origin in the future. And if he wanted to do this in this world after becoming a true spirit, the first thing he needed was a complete follow-up cultivation technique, and the Soaring Dragon Galaxy technique in Lu Ping's hands was a complete cultivation technique that led straight to the Divine Spirit realm. This was a complete cultivation technique passed down by the Divine Dragon clan in the infinite starry sky, and only the direct disciples of the Divine Dragon clan and the outstanding members of the Dragon clan who were recognized by the Divine Dragon clan had the qualifications to pass down this cultivation technique. From this, it could be seen that Zhao Doran's background was probably not a small matter in the infinite starry sky. And the second thing he needed was something that made Lu Ping overjoyed. According to the Soaring Dragon Galaxy technique, although it was impossible to condense a second source in this world, it did not prevent cultivators from laying the foundation for condensing a second, third, or even seventh source. And this required a type of rare treasure called the Starry Sky Spiritual Object. And Lu Ping just so happened to have this kind of Starry Sky Spiritual Object on him, and not just one. Samling 5 Elements Leaf. It was actually the Samling 5 Elements Leaf. This kind of natural treasure that Lu Ping originally thought could only be used to heal the injuries of Dharma adepts, but it was extremely expensive to make. It was actually the Starry Sky Spiritual Object that Zhao Daoren had recorded in the Soaring Dragon Galaxy technique, and it was a natural treasure that did not originally exist in this world. Chapter 1497. Before Lu Ping had obtained the follow-up to the Soaring Dragon Galaxy technique, the legends about the Samling 5 Elements Leaf had only been passed down from Taoist Gui that it could be used to heal a practitioner's injuries. Other than that, there was nothing else. All this while, Lu Ping had always felt that it was a waste to use the Samling 5 Elements Leaf to heal the injuries of Dharma adepts. In order to cultivate a mature Samling 5 Elements Leaf, Lu Ping had to pay a huge price. He had used a late Dharma stage wood Phoenix Golden Core to shorten the growth period of the Samling 5 Elements Leaf. Apart from that, he had also needed 5 elements of heaven and earth treasures ranging from low-grade profound level to high-grade heaven level to support the growth of the Samling 5 Elements Leaf. And the end result of such a huge expenditure was just to recover the injuries of a few Dharma adepts. In reality, the 45 types of heaven and earth treasures used to cultivate the Samling 5 Elements Leaf were enough for a sect to cultivate close to 10 Dharma adepts. No matter how one looked at it, the loss did not seem to outweigh the gain. Even with Lu Ping's initial wealth, when he had used 5 types of heaven and earth treasures to cultivate the 7th leaf of the Samling 5 Elements Leaf, it had already been beyond his capabilities. If not for the fact that he had absorbed enough 5 elements spiritual chi from the 5 elements tortoise vault to directly mature the Samling 5 Elements Leaf, Lu Ping might have even had to give up on the possibility of continuing to cultivate this mysterious spirit herb. But now Lu Ping only felt fortunate. He was fortunate that he had in his hands a spirit herb that was extremely rare even in the infinite universe, and that he had succeeded in growing it. Lu Ping opened his mouth and spat out a pure yang pearl. Now, under the nourishment of the pure yang Dharma power, the pure yang pearl had already become the source of the dragon Dharma power. And within this pure yang pearl, the Samling 5 Elements Leaf that Lu Ping had successfully cultivated was sealed. When Lu Ping achieved the true soul stage, he would be able to use this spirit herb to establish the foundation of his origin. Once the 7 origin foundations were established, although Lu Ping would still be unable to break through to the first stage of the true soul stage in this world, he would be able to establish a solid foundation for his future cultivation. Once he successfully broke free from the shackles of this world, Lu Ping's cultivation would once again usher in a violent growth. Moreover, with the 7 origin foundations established, Lu Ping's cultivation would not encounter too many bottlenecks before he cultivated the 7 origin foundations to perfection and fused them into the Thunder origin. More importantly, because of the 7 origin foundations established, after Lu Ping achieved the true soul stage and established the Water origin, he could simultaneously cultivate the other 6 origin foundations to perfection. He did not need to be like other true spirit cultivators. Because they did not have any starry sky treasures to establish the other origin foundations, they had no choice but to cultivate each origin foundation one by one. This would naturally greatly delay their cultivation speed. In other words, after Lu Ping achieved the true soul stage, all he needed to do was to cultivate the 7 origin foundations to perfection. In fact, after Lu Ping advanced to the pure yang realm, he could already feel that the Samling 5-element leaf in the pure yang pearl had a faint resonance with his dragon law idol. Lu Ping had always thought that this resonance should come from the Samling 5-element leaf's healing effect on origin injuries, but now it seemed that it was not just that. Now that his true soul had not become a true soul, this resonance should be based on the water origin that Lu Ping had not yet cultivated to perfection and the Samling 5-element leaf's water spirit leaf. Staring at the Samling 5-element leaf sealed in the pure yang pearl, Lu Ping's eyes flashed with a fiery light. He never thought that such a small spirit herb would actually be an extremely rare starry sky spiritual treasure in the endless starry sky. It was just that this world was not a place where such a spiritual treasure could be born. Where on earth did the Samling 5-element leaf seed that Lu Ping obtained from the 7-star grotto heaven come from? According to the Longhuai ancestor, after the creation of the 7th patriarch, the passage to the outside world opened by the 7th patriarch in the northern ice field became a dangerous place. Since the creation of the world until now, not a single true spirit cultivator had truly left this world. Therefore, the Samling 5-element leaf seed that should not have appeared in this world could only have been left behind by the 7th patriarch. According to the records of Longhuai ancestor, after Jiao Daoren mistakenly took Taoist Gui's poisonous pill and his origin was damaged, the 7-star gentleman once asked Taoist Gui for advice. It seemed that Taoist Gui did not have the Samling 5-element leaf seed. Then, why did the Samling 5-element leaf seed appear in the 7-star grotto heaven? And why did he leave such a clear record about the Samling 5-element leaf? In the past, Lu Ping would naturally be confused. However, after obtaining the complete Soaring Dragon Galaxy technique, Lu Ping set his eyes on Taoist Gui again. Back in the South Sea's 5-elemental tortoise vault, if it weren't for the 3 spirits' 5-elemental leaf absorbing enough of the 5-elemental origin energy to fully mature, Lu Ping didn't know where he would have found 5 mid-grade and 5 high-grade elemental origin treasures of the 5 elements. According to the description of the cultivation realm after reaching the true spirit in the Soaring Dragon Galaxy technique, as Taoist Gui's dojo in the South Sea, the rich and majestic 5 elements origin chi in the 5 elements tortoise vault seemed to indicate that Taoist Gui should be in existence like Taoist Hu and Taoist Ape, who had gathered all 5 kinds of origin foundation and cultivated them to perfection. However, in the Soaring Dragon Galaxy technique, Jiao Daoren clearly recorded Taoist Gui's cultivation, but he had only gathered 4 kinds of origin chi, which made him one of the 2 people with the lowest cultivation among the 7th patriarch. So, was Taoist Gui at the 4th true spirit realm or the 5th true spirit realm, or did he pretend to be at the 4th true spirit realm in front of Jiao Daoren when he was at the 5th true spirit realm? If it was the latter, then what was the purpose of Taoist Gui hiding his cultivation? Back then, when Jiao Daoren mistakenly took a poisonous pill from Taoist Gui and damaged his origin foundation, was Taoist Gui intentional or unintentional? If these things happened in the past, even if Lu Ping had some doubts, he would not have looked into it. How could he be qualified to intervene in the conflicts and schemes between the 7th patriarch? However, when Longhuai ancestor broke out of the heavenly poisonous wall and released the news that none of the true spirit realm cultivators have ever left this world since the beginning of the world, to all the cultivators above the pure yang level, which almost shook the entire cultivation world, Lu Ping suddenly realized that he had to think about these things. Because according to ancestor Longhuai, this world seemed to have fallen into a great scheme that had been going on since the heavens were split open, and only the 7th ancestor of creation had the ability to weave this scheme and gather all the cultivators that had advanced into the true spirit realm since the heavens were split open in the last 30,000 years. So, was it one of the 7th patriarch who set up this shocking conspiracy? How many? Or all of them? Could it be that the 7th patriarch, who had always been regarded as the creator and revered by the entire cultivation world, used the creatures of this world as some kind of sacrificial tool to achieve some unspeakable purpose? Then what was the purpose of setting up this shocking conspiracy? Why hadn't the 7th patriarch appeared in this world in the past 30,000 years? Where did they go? Did they still exist in this world or in the infinite starry sky? Of course, all of this was based on the news of Longhuai ancestor that could be regarded as complete nonsense. However, Longhuai ancestors' strength and identity made those who scoffed at this news restrain their attitudes. The fact that the soul lamps of the true spirit realm cultivators in the various sects extinguished after they went to the northern ice plains also made many of the sects in charge of the Laozu clan anxious and doubtful. It was a good thing that Longhuai ancestor still had evidence in his hands, and this evidence pointed to the number one family of the cultivation world, Pringdoran's one and only human bloodline inheritor of the heaven's seventh patriarch, the Yuan family. Under the pressure of shaking the foundations of the entire cultivation world, it seemed like everyone kept silent on Longhuai ancestors' proposal to destroy the Yuan family. Even the powerful cultivators that were on good terms with the Yuan family did not secretly inform the Yuan family. It seemed like everyone wanted to use the Yuan family to verify something. But it seemed like everyone forgot that if the Longhuai ancestors' words were not trustworthy, or if they couldn't obtain strong evidence after the destruction of the Yuan family, then wouldn't the Yuan family, the number one family that had made great contributions to Mara's calamity, be sacrificed for nothing? However, the strange thing was that it seemed that no one in the entire cultivation world had ever raised any doubts about this. Chapter 1498. When Yuan Daotian and Yuan Tongtian, the two pure yang cultivators of the Yuan clan, were burned into nothingness by celestial phenomenon Laozu's heaven-splitting divine art sealed in the Yuan Daoist's natal feather, Yuan Feixiang quickly realized that something was amiss and immediately fled Tianling Island's waters. However, Junling's reaction was much faster than Yuan Feixiang had expected. He even immediately realized that this was a trap set by Junling against the Yuan clan. Although Yuan Feixiang was filled with grief and indignation, he could only sigh helplessly in the face of Junling's blockade of the entire North Sea and the subsequent search for him. The current Junling was different from the past. His control over the entire North Sea was even greater than the Crystal Palace's control over the East Sea at its peak. After all, compared to the vastness of the East Sea, the North Sea was much narrower, and Junling's current strength was much stronger than the other sects in the North Sea. Ever since the Blue Sea sect was destroyed, Shuiyan Pavilion and Haiyan sect were brutally suppressed by Mei Tianqin, and even the North Sea demon clan suffered losses, there was only one voice left in the entire North Sea, the voice of Junling. Perhaps there should have been another sect's voice in the North Sea, but ever since Junling's treasured ship went to the Heartland, Xianling's sect began to take the initiative to show weakness to Junling, even to the point of fawning over Junling, so Xianling's sect's butcher knife never fell on Xianling's sect. Just when Yuan Feixiang felt that he was almost at his wit's end, a person appeared in front of him and finally let him know that there were people in the North Sea who dared to oppose the increasingly powerful Junling. It was just that in front of the tyrannical Junling, all the voices of opposition had been hidden. Ouyang Weijian, who hadn't appeared in the North Sea for a long time, and even the Junling cultivators who were monitoring Xianling's sect were certain that the most outstanding third-generation disciple of Xianling's sect had left the North Sea a long time ago. He was either in the East Sea or the Middle Earth, cultivating and avoiding Junling's detection. At this moment, Ouyang Weijian was standing in front of Yuan Feixiang. What surprised Yuan Feixiang even more was that the future hope of Xianling's sect had already passed through the second lightning tribulation and reached the late Dharma stage. However, it was obvious that the entire North Sea did not know that Xianling's sect had produced a second late Dharma adept. In an instant, Yuan Feixiang understood that the former number one sect in the North Sea did not want to be under anyone for long. Their concession to Junling was probably more of a hidden strategy. This gave Yuan Feixiang a glimmer of hope for revenge. I didn't expect. Ouyang Weijian grinned and said, "You shouldn't perish just like that. Your esteemed sect also has great ambitions." Yuan Feixiang laughed coldly. "It's just that I don't understand why Senior Dao Xing didn't join forces with us back then?" Ouyang Weijian laughed and said, "If even two pure young masters couldn't destroy Junling, what's the point of Xianling's sect getting involved? It's better to hide behind the scenes and leave a way out for your family. In fact, this way out is exactly what you need right now." Yuan Feixiang's expression instantly turned ugly. "You've already predicted that we would fail." The underlying meaning was clear. If that was the case, then Xianling's sect would be deliberately watching the Yuan family's pure young adepts die. That would be the beginning of a feud. Ouyang Weijian shook his head and laughed. "Why do you think so? Is my appearance not enough to show my sincerity?" Naturally, Yuan Feixiang didn't believe that Xianling's sect had already predicted that Yuan family would fail, or that no matter how bad the situation was, they wouldn't have lost two pure young masters on Sky Spirit Island. Compared to that, Yuan Feixiang believed Ouyang Weijian's explanation more. Moreover, as the most outstanding third-generation disciple of Xianling sect, he carried almost all of Xianling sect's future hopes on his shoulders. Even Ouyang Weijian had heard of his name before. Rumor had it that he had been living in exile outside the North Sea to avoid Jinling's possible persecution. Now he had risked being discovered by Jinling to rescue Yuan Feixiang. This was already enough to show his sincerity. Xianling sect clearly wanted to borrow the strength of Yuan family. Similarly, Yuan family had suffered a great loss in the North Sea, so they wouldn't let it go easily. However, in the face of the rising Jinling, they also needed a spy. At this point, both of them had clearly realized the situation. Although Yuan Feixiang still had some reservations, he knew that both sides had already reached an agreement on how to deal with Jinling. Initially, Yuan Feixiang thought that Ouyang Weijian would bring him out of the North Sea through a secret channel. Unexpectedly, Yuan Feixiang had been hiding in the North Sea for several months. According to Ouyang Weijian, once Jinling couldn't find him in the North Sea, he would naturally think that he had escaped and let his guard down. Yuan Feixiang thought that Ouyang Weijian made sense. Moreover, after the battle at Tianling Mountain, even if Yuan Feixiang returned to the family, he would probably face the wrath of the entire family. The death of two pure young masters was a disaster for the Yuan family. As a person who was determined to break the bloodline shackles and become the leader of the Holy Land, he would inevitably be hit by his brothers who coveted his position in the family. Therefore, it was better for him to hide outside and observe the situation before making any plans. Moreover, after he was hidden by Ouyang Weijian, Xianling sect did not cut off his contact with the outside world. On the contrary, news about the North Sea, Jinling and Lu Tianping were continuously sent to him through Ouyang Weijian. Yankan Island sank, and Failing Island floated to the surface and slowly moved towards Tianling Island. Yankan Island was not a medium for Jinling to search for the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven, but a fulcrum to remove Jinling's forbidden formation. I've been tricked. Yuan Feixiang instantly understood that Jinling had long noticed Lin Yu Laozu's abnormality. From the beginning, the Yuan family had already fallen into Jinling's trap. Immediately after that, the Lu family of Central Earth took the opportunity to surround Huangli Island with the morning fog in an attempt to prevent Jinling from sending his disciples into the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven. Instead, they were killed by Lu Tianping's followers, 3 Green Sea Snake descendants at the mid-Dharma stage. Immediately after that, news spread that even though Jinling had foiled the Lu family's plot, in the end, he did not send a single disciple into the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven. Yuan Feixiang let out a long sigh. He finally knew that his failure was not a fluke. Jinling had given up on this trip to the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven because Jinling had absolute confidence in obtaining the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven. This time, the disciples from the various sects of the North Sea who had entered the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven would probably all be captured. Until now, when Ouyang Weijian finally told Yuan Feixiang that he could leave, Yuan Feixiang did not feel the slightest bit happy. This was because the continuous news over the past few months had made Yuan Feixiang feel that the outcome had been decided. Would he really have the chance to take revenge in the future? Yuan Feixiang bid farewell to Ouyang Weijian with a tinge of melancholy. However, he did not notice that Ouyang Weijian was also looking at him with a tinge of pity and confusion. The void shook and Dao Xing Laozu slowly appeared. Ouyang Weijian looked at his own grandmaster and said rather unwillingly, "Grandmaster, are you really not going to tell him this news even if it's just a little hint?" Dao Xing Laozu's face was as cold as ice. He glanced at him and said, "What's the point of saying all this?" Dao Xing Laozu sighed slightly and said, "The Yuan family has gotten into big trouble. Otherwise, the Crystal Palace would not have given such a strict warning. But what exactly is the reason? There must be an explanation. But how can such a warning be convincing? Wrong. Only this kind of warning is scarier." Dao Xing Laozu, who had a stern look on his face, had a look of insight in his eyes. He said, "That means that we are not qualified to know. Do you understand? What right do you have to be unconvinced about something that even the adepts of the late Dharma stage are not qualified to know?" Ouyang Weijian was stunned at first, and then his expression changed. But in the end, he sighed and said quietly, "We are sending him to his death." Dao Xing Laozu snorted coldly and said, "You are the future hope of our sect, but now you are so depressed. Do you still have the courage to revive the sect?" "Of course I have the courage." Ouyang Weijian suddenly raised his head, but then his eyes flashed with a hint of sadness. He said, it's just that you can't see any hope?" Dao Xing Laozu's gaze seemed to penetrate Ouyang Weijin's heart, so much so that he did not dare to look directly at him. Chapter 1499. Shang Mountain was located in the heart of the Central Plains. This mountain range was located to the east of the West River, between the Yulon River and the Green Nether River. It was the closest area between the two great rivers after the West River, and Shang Mountain had always been a mysterious and unfathomable place, because the number one family in the world, the Yuan family, had lived here for generations. And now this family, which was known as the direct descendant of the first person to open the heavens, was facing the greatest crisis since the establishment of this family. Even though the world-shocking words of ancestor Long Huai had caused all the great experts of the cultivation world above the pure Yang realm to remain silent when they obtained the news, but since the Yuan clan had been able to pass down their inheritance since the creation of the heavens until now, how could they not notice the strange situation in the cultivation world in the slightest? However, even though the Yuan family had operated in the cultivation world for tens of thousands of years, their power could be said to be deeply rooted and intertwined. Naturally, they could sense that something was wrong from the clues in the cultivation world. However, no matter what, they would never have thought that there would be a true spirit-level cultivator who would dare to risk the wrath of the heavens to personally destroy the Yuan family. Ever since the beginning of the world, it wasn't that the Yuan family had never experienced the moment when their family was on the verge of extinction. They had even been visited by a cultivator who had just advanced to the true spirit level. That was the most dangerous moment the Yuan family had encountered since the beginning of the world. However, it was also at that time that the Yuan family was about to be killed by the true spirit-level cultivator. Unexpectedly, the entire space around Shang Mountain turned into a sea of lightning, and in the center of the sea of lightning, a gigantic gourd formed from lightning forced back the cultivator who had just become a true spirit-level cultivator. It was only at that time that the great practitioners of the cultivation world found out that Peng Doran's number one divine artifact, the Seven Thunder Treasures Gourd, actually existed in this world, and had always been in the hands of the Yuan family. Although the true spirit-level cultivator had been able to retreat under the threat of the Seven Thunder Treasures Gourd, at the last moment, he had no choice but to use all of his potential after becoming a true spirit-level cultivator. As a result, he had been rejected by this world. This true spirit-level cultivator had already done his best to reach the northern ice plains, but in the end, he was still unable to escape the descent of the heavens. From Shang Mountain to Ying Mountain, this true spirit-level Laozu had withstood the heavens' punishment, but in the end he had still been unable to reach the northern ice plains and had disappeared from this world. The fate of this true spirit-level cultivator caused all the great practitioners of the cultivation world to keep quiet out of fear towards the power of the number one divine artifact. At the same time, it was at that time that the Yuan family's title as the number one heaven-splitting family was truly established in the cultivation world. Although the Yuan family did not have an unbroken true spirit-level inheritance like the six sacred lands, the Yuan family still had the number one divine artifact that could deter the true spirit-level Laozu. Coupled with the mysterious identity of the Yuan family's descendant of Peng Daoren, as well as their performance in every Mara disaster, the Yuan family had always maintained a transcendent position in the cultivation world. And now, the spirit goblin cultivator Longhuai ancestor, who had just become a true spirit-level cultivator, although this person claimed to have inherited Jiao Doran's memories and bloodline, could this person really break through the Seven Thunder Treasure Calabash's protection of the Yuan family? It must be known that back then, even the Jiao Daoran was slightly inferior to the Peng Daoran who had the Seven Thunder Treasure Calabash, let alone a spirit goblin that had just become a true spirit-level cultivator. Even though the Crystal Palace's spirit Wine Laozu and Skyren's Xiao Baiyu had personally witnessed the power of the Longhuai ancestor, the truly powerful practitioners were still skeptical. Of course, they naturally did not mind coming to Mount Shang at this time to personally verify it. Putting aside what the Longhuai ancestor wanted to prove to the entire cultivation world, just the confrontation between a true spirit-level cultivator and the number one godly weapon of creation was enough to attract people's attention. The sky above the entire Shang mountain range had turned into a sea of lightning, causing the entire sky to be dyed purplish blue. In the center of the sea of lightning that covered the entire mountain range, a huge lightning vortex was formed. The vortex was obviously in the shape of a gourd suspended in mid-air. The Seven Thunder Treasure Calabash, the true number one godly weapon of creation, the Seven Thunder Treasure Calabash. A voice shouted in Lu Ping's mind when he saw the gourd-shaped lightning object that had completely transformed into a lightning gourd in the air. At this moment in Lu Ping's core space, the calabash began to become restless again. Lightning continuously spewed out from the mouth of the calabash, as if the Seven Thunder Treasure calabash also wanted to suppress it. However, it came from the true Seven Thunder Treasure calabash that had turned into lightning in the void, causing the lightning calabash in Lu Ping's core space to be unable to suppress the surging lightning in the calabash. In the end, the Dharma form of the dragon seemed to be very impatient with the calabash. With a swing of its tail, it sent the calabash flying into the suspended sea formed by the triple light sacred water and suppressed it. Only then did it completely stop. When Lu Ping walked in the void and arrived near the Mount Shang mountain range, the auras of the pure yang cultivators from various sects that were hidden in the surrounding void could not escape Lu Ping's detection. Other than the Longhuai ancestor, Lu Ping very quickly discovered Yuanjiu Laozu and Xiao Baiyu. Apart from these two, there seemed to be a faintly discernible aura that caused Lu Ping's heart to palpitate slightly. It seemed that this was also a cultivator that had attained the celestial spirit. However, he did not know if this celestial spirit Laozu was a newly ascended celestial spirit cultivator from the other holy lands or some other genius cultivator in the cultivation world. With the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash as the center, the lightning ocean that covered the entire sky above the Shang Mountain was not only protecting the land of the Yuan clan in the middle of the Shang Mountain, but at the same time, it was also raising endless waves of lightning that crashed down on forefather Long Huai, who was also standing in the sky above the Shang Mountain but was also under the lightning ocean. From Lu Ping's point of view, the power of this concentrated lightning was comparable to the pure yang thunder trial of a Dharma form adept. The only thing it lacked was the kind of pressure that could activate the power of heaven and earth in this world and the pure yang qi that was contained within the lightning. However, this type of lightning that was enough to make the hearts of all the pure yang Laozu palpitate was easily dispelled by the Longhuai ancestor when it landed around him. Other than Lu Ping, Xiao Baiyu and Yuanjiu Laozu, everyone, including the adept that Lu Ping did not recognize who had just become a celestial soul, could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. It must be known that this type of lightning was not weaker than the first 3 lightning strikes of the pure yang thunder trial. It was not like the pure yang thunder trial which only had 9 lightning strikes. Even Xiao Baiyu and Yuanjiu Laozu, who had already become a celestial soul, could not help but feel their scalps go numb. However, in front of the Longhuai ancestor, it did not seem to matter at all. Lu Ping's eyes shone with a strange light, followed by a similarly shocked expression on his face. However, compared to the others, his reaction seemed to be slightly slower. However, at this time, although Lu Ping was initially shocked by the power of the Longhuai ancestor, he soon discovered something else that he could not believe. How is this possible? According to the words of the Dragon Soaring Galaxy art, becoming a true spirit is when a cultivator condenses the first source energy of the cultivation technique attribute and has the qualifications to leave this world. However, once the true spirit cultivator cultivates this source energy to perfection in this world, it would be the time for the heavenly punishment to descend. As a result, in this world, no cultivator can cultivate their source energy to perfection. According to the secret technique that Jiao Daoren left in the Dragon Soaring Galaxy art, not only has the Longhuai ancestor become a true spirit, he has also cultivated his wood source to perfection in one go. But why didn't the heavenly punishment descend? Why is he still able to exist in this world? Isn't this the opposite of what Jiao Daoren said? Lu Ping suppressed the doubts in his heart with great difficulty. When he looked up at the sky above Shang Mountain, the Longhuai ancestor had already braved countless lightning powers that were not weaker than the pure yang thunder tribulation and walked towards the center of the sea of lightning. He was only one step away from the heaven-splitting artifact that had completely turned into lightning. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.